He watched his crown shatter and fled when the world burned. But when he opened his eyes again, time had rewound. Same useless third prince, same doomed destiny. This time, however, he doesn't flinch. He grips his blade, seizes the throne, and carves a path through blood. Step by step, battle by battle. He's forging himself into the legendary knight his kingdom once lacked. He's done running, now he's the one leading the charge. In a tavern, rumors spread of a lunatic haunting the front lines. A soldier asked a madman. The man slammed his mug down, claiming he was a soulless mercenary, with hollow eyes. As soon as the slaughter ended, he'd vanish hunting for the next massacre. The comrade pondered, a merc with no will to live, how bizarre. The man continued, the psycho keeps muttering that he survived again. Word is, he strikes every battlefield, involving the Empire. It's a personal vendetta, not a quest for gold. The soldier took a sip, shivering at the tale. Who is this freak? The man replied. Rumor has it, he's a prince from a fallen realm looking for a grave. Elsewhere, Yuri sat by a cold stone, as a knight unmasked and questioned him. His only thought was finally ending his cursed life. The third prince of Briol, Yuri Briol, a name synonymous with the coward who ruined a kingdom, and the sinner who miraculously survived the purge 10 years ago. Suddenly, a casino erupted, bet it all. Yuri Briole laughed like a maniac, shouting, yes, he's on a heater. Hernando, the royal mage, marveled. How does he clutch every win by such a thin margin? The man stood up, smirked, and said, luck favors the bold. Yuri grinned, ready for another round, let's go. This time he doubled down. Hernando whispered urgently, we need to bounce now. Stay longer, and we'll miss the summit. Suddenly a thug kicked their table over, snarling. Why they hadn't left while they were still breathing. You think we didn't catch you cheating? Absolute cap, Yuri snapped. Cheat. Do you know who I am? The thug scoffed. With that attitude, no noble. Maybe some fake king, Yuri chuckled. A king, huh? If I were royalty, you wouldn't be talking so much. Another man chimed in. What's his deal? He's baiting the empire and escalating the war. All these princes are the same trash. Useless sons like their fathers. What can these sword-swinging meatheads even do? Infuriated, Yuri smashed the table, roaring. The thugs froze in shock. Listen up, peasants. You idiots, I am the third prince Yuri Briol, and today you're all getting a one-way transfer. The men shrieked in terror at his name. Later, Yuri grumbled to himself. Why won't she just believe me? He stood on the street, explaining his father's emergency meeting. He'd already sent word through the comsphere, but Princess Catherine of Arna Granzine just stood there with her arms crossed in icy silence. Yuri pleaded, I'm just saying. Can't you give me a break for once? Catherine fired back. You think I'm not busy? Do you realize the effort it took to sneak out here incognito, just to see you? Yuri sighed, I get it, but my old man is MIA. I have to be low-key. I shouldn't even be here right now. Catherine smirked dangerously. Oh, so I'm just anyone to you? Yuri panicked. No, wait, Catherine scoffed at his lack of trust. Go tell someone you actually trust then. She stormed off, banning him from speaking to her. Yuri reached out, but she was gone. He stared at his pendant, feeling the weight of the mess. Making amends would be a nightmare this time. Meanwhile, a shadow watched them from the alley. From that day, the vibe turned toxic. Relations between Briol and the Empire reached a breaking point. Imperial provocations finally crossed the line, spiraling into a full-blown diplomatic disaster. Tension exploded into a scream. Invasion. The Empire has breached. Briol. Everyone evacuate. Yuri's eyes went wide. He bolted, throwing his jacket aside as the alarms wailed through the city. Clear the castle, he roared. Facing the rising smoke, Yuri realized the real war was here. Eras passed and blood spilled in an eternal war. Suddenly, a desperate scream pierced the air. Brother Joshua. Prince, you have to evacuate now, Yuri snapped back. What about the reinforcements? Are they coming? The House of Brioli stood as the ultimate titan, the continent's most legendary powerhouse. Yet, with Fiore Briole gone, the scales of war shifted toward the Empire's favor. Initially, he brushed it off as mere coincidence, desperately clinging to a dying hope. He was in total denial, but memories of blood-soaked battles forced a cold realization. Catherine sold them out. She was the only person he ever truly trusted with everything. The second his father vanished, the Empire launched their brutal assault. He prayed he was wrong. He risked everything to send Catherine a final message. The response he received was soul-crushing. A messenger bird touched down. As he unrolled the parchment, his world shattered into pieces. Just one word, sorry. Disappointment turned to dread as knights roared, "Get Prince Briol, get him. Kill him and the kingdom falls." Yuri gritted his teeth. These bastards just kept coming. He parried a lethal strike, tossing the soldier aside, but more blades swung from his blind side. After downing another foe, Yuri froze. The sound of heavy metal footsteps echoed behind him. Empire knights surrounded him like predators. As his sword was shattered away, he whispered, "Is this it?" Yuri braced for the end, eyes shut. Blood sprayed everywhere. But when he looked, a knight stood guard. "Laurent," he gasped, trembling. The dying knight begged for the prince's safety. Yuri screamed his name. Don't stop, another shouted. Run, your highness. If you die, Briol dies with you. Run now, Yuri bolted into the shadows as the enemy screamed, don't let Briol escape. They reached a tattered shack. He can't be far. Search every inch of this place. Cowering behind crates, Yuri realized his luck was running out. He needed a miracle to survive this. And his father, still no sign of him. The silence was deafening and ominous. He was likely dead. Suddenly, the door creaked open, a sliver of light cutting through the dark. His heart hammered. If he fell here, the Briol legacy would vanish forever. He prayed for a way out. He couldn't let the sacrifice of his fallen knights be in vain. Clenching his trembling fists, Yuri bowed his head as a knight approached with a strange plea. Forgive me, the knight whispered. The Empire will pay for their sins. Just go quickly. Soldiers were closing in. Yuri vanished into the tree line, his mind racing with one singular thought. Live, restore Briol, and burn the Empire to the ground. He swore an oath of vengeance. But that was just a boy's dream. Reality was a nightmare where everyone he loved died. What was all that blood for? He held his sword, not for glory but for self-punishment, waiting for someone strong enough to end his misery. Then a chilling voice cut the silence. They say he's looking for a grave. Is that why you rush into death's jaws? Picking fights just to feel something. You're just looking for an easy way out. Self-obsessed to the end. Death is far too merciful for a failure like you, the man sneered. The stranger spoke with lethal intent. Yuri Briol, the third prince. Yuri's heart nearly stopped. Who was left that knew his name? The man unmasked himself, his eyes burning with hatred. Laurent Yuri's voice cracked. It was impossible. He had seen that man die years ago. Laurent gripped his blade. Briol burned because of the Flander family's cursed oath of honor. Our faith was a lie. Everything collapsed in a single night because of you, Yuri Briol. Yuri was a ghost, a dead man walking, finally facing the sins of his past. This was not a duel. It was a reckoning, a nightmare he could not escape. He thought death would bring peace, but the crushing weight of guilt followed him. A Briol never surrenders his honor. Then a voice pierced the void. Yuri, wake up. Yuri's eyes snapped open. He lay in bed gasping as the past finally faded. Fiore mentioned I'd been out cold for 3 days. Am I? Okay, I muttered, jolting up. My mind immediately raced to my father, the man who should be dead. Bowing my head, I whispered, so he's in hell too. It made perfect sense for me, but why was he here? But my father, Fiore, looked puzzled. I gripped his hand, thinking of a man who never stopped lecturing me about his unbreakable honor. He lived a pretty comfortable life. Suddenly, Fiore smacked my head, yelling, what kind of crazy talk is coming out of your mouth? Nursing my skull, I groaned, still hitting people in hell. Seriously, I demanded he apologize for that unprovoked strike right now. My eyes drifted to a vibrant leaf by the window. A chilling thought struck me as I gazed outside. Times. They aren't here. Asterisk. Outside, a maid beamed while the fountain glistened. It was too peaceful. I couldn't see any sign of the damned souls. Real hell should have eternal flames and agonizing screams. The devil should be mocking me, tearing my soul apart for my sins. Wait, if not hell, then where? My brothers suddenly appeared by my bedside. Is Yuri finally awake? Darkness claimed me again as they screamed my name, Yuri Briol. I was 13. Back at the very start. I figured it was a vivid fever dream, but I couldn't wake up. The world didn't end. The nightmare just kept looping. Forgotten memories played on repeat in my mind. Eventually, I had to accept the impossible reality standing before me. I had regressed to the spring of my 13th year. Fate had handed me a second chance, a redo at life. Eventually, the servants urged me to rise. I grunted a drowsy reply, only to be hit with a sharp wake-up call. Sword practice. My eyes snapped open. I scrambled to dress, calling out Ina, get in here quickly. I demanded my gear, specifically my bathing supplies. Ina just sighed, telling me to chill out for a second. With a gentle smile, she insisted on washing my face first. Sit down, your highness, she teased softly. The image of Ina's blood-soaked body flashed in my mind. I hung my head, then turned to her. Ina. Yes, Prince, I looked her in the eyes. Slap me. 3 times. Hard. She froze. What is this treason? It's only treason if I don't order it, I countered. She hesitated. You sure? 100%. I, Yuri Briol, would never break my word again. Moments later, I was gripping a practice sword on the dusty field. Asterisk. Man, I forgot Ina had such a heavy hand. Asterisk. Soldiers walked by, but not a single soul offered me any damn ointment. Even Bernard ignored my swollen cheek. My stern instructor stood there, waiting for the first move. He was just going through the motions, not correcting my stance. When did he stop actually teaching me? I remembered Bernard telling Fiore, he's brilliant on paper, but it's such a waste of potential. If the prince actually cared, he'd be our greatest asset. That was the turning point. That's when he gave up. Training became a mindless routine because we stopped seeing eye to eye. I knew exactly why. I'd gotten lazy and just stopped trying. I looked Bernard in the eye and finally spoke up. Train me for real, starting today. I'm serious this time. Bernard studied me, his expression unreadable. He didn't know what changed, but he accepted the challenge. Bernard unleashed his mana. Fine. Let's see what you've got. He lunged and I yelled for a timeout. Asterisk. Wait, before he joined us, wasn't he? Asterisk. He was the legendary sword demon. Soon I was eating dirt. Asterisk. So this is how the demon trains. Brutal. Asterisk. If Bernard hadn't held back his mercenary instincts, I'd be dead. I squinted at the sun through trembling fingers. Asterisk. This is exhausting times, I thought times, but my stats are going to skyrocket if I keep this up. Asterisk. Not bad, Bernard muttered, stunned. I'd actually managed to parry every single one of his strikes. Asterisk. Where did he learn to move like that times, Your Highness? Ina sprinted onto the field, looking panicked. Drop the sword. The king has summoned you immediately. I turned, wiping sweat. The king, now, for what? Count Johannes is here with his son, she replied. My blood ran cold. Asterisk. Johannes's kid. Asterisk. The traitor who sold us out to the Empire in my past life. Got Bavaria, that absolute clown. I faced Ina. That moron. Where is he lurking right now? Soon the two families were gathered. The third prince looks sharp today, Johannes praised. Fiore just scoffed. Maybe he's finally on the right meds. If those pills work that well, I need some for my son, Johannes joked. Your boy is fine, Fiore replied. Gott, meanwhile, was looking at Cedric like he was a god. I shot Gott a look of pure disgust. Joshua nudged me. Hey Yuri, what's your problem? Got beef with him, Joshua smirked. I replied coldly, yeah, he stabbed me in the back. Just what is the great Yuri Briol planning? Frowning, Yuri sensed that behind that ordinary mask lay a serpent. He's still obsessing over blending in with the crowd. Same old coward. Gott's scowl deepened as he glared up at Yuri. He'll stay put, Yuri stated. He just needs restraint. Privately, he knew every move was calculated for the boy's sake. Gott, I won't let this life end in disgrace like before. Looking back on it now, I remember our first clash, a total beatdown. That grudge was the spark that led him to eventually stab me in the back. Striding into the courtyard, Yuri called out, All right, Gott, let's see if those sword skills of yours are legit. Gott snatched the training rod, realizing Yuri wasn't a total amateur. Suddenly, Yuri's voice boomed. Silence. This kingdom has no room for spineless cowards. I'm not even a real knight yet, Gott shot back. Yuri roared. Aren't you sworn to protect this land? Well, yeah. Yuri swung his rod with lethal intent. Then prove it in a duel. Gott parried the strike, yelling, Cheap shot. Yuri just smirked, leaped back, and landed a brutal kick. Gott shrieked, the third prince. Yuri was demanding true nobility. He tossed his stick aside, leaving Gott baffled, giving up. Before Gott could blink, Yuri's boot connected again. The rod flew as Gott hit the dirt, howling in pain. Yuri instantly reclaimed the weapon, pinning it against Gott's throat. Listen up, Gott Bavoir. Yuri recalled how in his previous life this snake traded his father's pride for coin. He leaked secrets to the Empire. Your father is a legendary count and a paragon of knighthood, Yuri growled. Do you even deserve those titles? What's the point of your status? Gott stammered, but Yuri saw the guilt in his eyes. Survival was his only goal back then, but now he would be the unbreakable shield of Briol. Reaching down, Yuri offered a hand. Too much for your brain to handle. Way too much, Gott muttered. The boy was clueless. Yuri vowed he'd never tolerate a single knight falling into disgrace, himself included. Ask yourself this, why is your father a count who granted him that honor? Dig deep and find the truth. Yuri pulled him up, the tension thick. Think long and hard about what happened here today. I will, Gott whispered, retreating quickly. Joshua rushed over, eyes gleaming. Man, that was hype. Your combat is fire, Yuri smirked. Did you actually think I'd lose? Joshua nodded sheepishly. Honestly, yeah. Yuri gave him a deadpan look. Brother, do you realize what people call you? The biggest clown in the kingdom? And a total fraud, Joshua added. I'm done being that guy, Yuri replied. And you need to stop acting out too. Joshua stared. Did you catch a brick to the head? Later, Yuri leaned heavily on his blade, panting. Finished. He collapsed, lungs burning. Impressive work, Bernard noted. Let's call it a day before you break something. Bernard turned to the prince with a serious glint. It's time. You're ready to master mana cultivation. Will you teach me your style? Bernard shook his head. No. My techniques would only limit your insane potential. You must learn the legendary Briol method. Yuri blinked. Why? Because it's the absolute peak of mana mastery. It's flawless and potent. Yuri knew it well. He'd mastered it in his first life. But Bernard sensed his hesitation. Looking for something else, just pondering, Yuri replied. Recommend a knight based on pure potential, not just current skill. He needed raw talent. Secretly, Yuri was eyeing a forbidden technique he'd never dared to touch in his past life. Bernard's grin widened. Potential, huh? If we're talking raw ceiling, Jared is your man. That guy. Strictly speaking of his ceiling, yes. Yuri's mind raced. He remembered Jared from before the rewind. They'd only crossed paths at the war's end. Jared was skilled, but how he survived that long was a total mystery. He recalled Jared's furious outbursts. Yuri wondered why, with potential that special, the world should have been his. Jared used to lament that he could have been a god if he'd actually tried. He just never sharpened his blade. When the war broke out, Yuri realized how nonsensical it all was. They were both just arrogant idiots back then. Yuri dusted himself off. Fine, let's go meet this legendary slacker. He pictured Jared's lazy face in his mind. Maybe this encounter would finally open his eyes. Later, he stepped onto the balcony where Russo greeted him. Your Highness, what's up? Just checking the vibes, Yuri replied. Russo chuckled. Everything is running smooth as silk. The recruits are grinding hard, though they're no match for you. Yuri scanned the training grounds deep in thought. They seemed fired up. Where's Jared? Yuri asked. Russo blinked. The new kid? You mean the rookie over there? That's him. Yuri watched him, and finally got Bernard's point. Proper training requires a hunger to be the best. But Jared was doing the bare minimum just enough to pass. Keep this up, Yuri muttered, and you'll be left in the dust. Sir Rosso, grab a wooden blade. He's joining the duel. Rosso nodded instantly, accepting the command. Who's the target? Yuri smirked. That nosy brat. Soon a knight roared newbie front and center. Don't die out there, Russo warned. Jared scowled as the prince approached. Sir Jared, he started. I've heard whispers of your legendary talent. Care to show me if the hype is actually real? As you wish, Jared replied coldly. Yuri lunged, blade whistling. Then, I hope I don't disappoint you. Jared parried effortlessly. Russo watched, impressed. Asterisk. Just as I suspected. Zero wasted movement in his style. Asterisk. The prince. He's actually keeping up. Jared gritted his teeth, a realization hitting him. Asterisk. No, this is wrong. Asterisk. It felt bizarre. He blocked every strike, yet his mind raced. Asterisk. His rhythm. It's unnaturally perfect. Asterisk. Asterisk. Like he's syncing with my every move. Asterisk. Yuri smirked. Bored. It feels like we're just playing games. Ready to get serious, Jared caught a punch. The prince thought times. He blocked it, just as expected. Asterisk. Those reflexes are pure animal instinct. He lunged again, but Jared vanished, resetting instantly. Yuri clicked his tongue. Asterisk. I wanted to build momentum slowly. Asterisk. Jared countered with a heavy swing. Yuri reeled. Asterisk. A nightmare. No chance. Asterisk. Jared was a monster. Despite his skill, Yuri locked eyes with him and unleashed a fierce flurry. Asterisk. I just need one solid hit times. He grazed Jared's side. Gotcha, he yelled as the knights gasped. Did he actually land that? Someone stammered. His Highness is cracked. The prince took a sharp breath. You're not holding back, right? Jared stared speechless. A cold chill ran down his spine. This is insane. He's the aggressor, yet I'm the one feeling backed into a corner. Jared lunged, but Yuri danced away. What a waste. Jared's knuckles turned white, gripping his hilt tight. Enough of this. A knight screamed, Jared, stop. Suddenly, a violent surge of mana erupted from him. Is he nuts? The crowd shrieked. Mana control in a friendly spar against the third prince. He's lost his mind. Jared stood up, several locks of his hair fluttering to the floor. Yuri watched the trembling, Jared totally confused. Panic erupted. Your Highness, move. He's gone rogue. Is he okay? Yuri waved them off. Relax. Is this your first time seeing a real spar? Someone pointed at his head. Yuri casually tied a rag around his wound. Sword up, Jared. Now it's getting fun, I'm not stopping. He charged, fists flying. Jared realized times. This prince is built different. Asterisk. Asterisk. Is he at his limit? No, he's shattering them. Times Jared's heart hammered violently against his ribs. Asterisk. My blood is literally boiling. Asterisk. It was a sensation he'd never felt, even against legendary opponents. This young prince was stirring something primal. Yuri's sword became a lethal blur of steel, relentlessly hunting for a gap. Oops, he laughed. Jared gripped his hilt, unleashed mana, and swung. Asterisk crack. Times Yuri's wooden blade shattered into splinters. The prince exhaled, a faint smile showing. Game over. Jared stared, paralyzed. I just realized something, the prince muttered. Jared shook his hand. No, that was a hell of a match. Jared was stunned. Asterisk. That grit. That sheer willpower. Asterisk. Asterisk. I've never seen anything like it. How can a kid possess such spirit times? Yuri blinked, confused. What are you doing, Jared? Looked down. He was still death-gripping the prince's hand. He panicked. Planning to crush my hand, Yuri joked. Jared realized he'd drawn blood, yet remained frozen. Jared snatched his hand back, stammering an apology before bolting. Yuri chuckled. Just a slip-up. He collapsed on the grass, lungs burning. Behind him, the knights cheered. The prince was legendary. The captain entered the field. Rosso noticed immediately. Captain, when did you get back? The leader sighed heavily. Just now. His eyes locked onto the exhausted prince on the ground. Days later, Jared was in the garden when a voice stopped him. Shift's over, isn't it? He turned to see Prince Yuri looking thoughtful. Come on, we've got places to be. But I need to train, Jared protested. Yuri glanced back. Seems you finally cleared your head. And you can thank me for that. You owe me one, Jared sighed. Fine, Yuri grinned. Perfect. He smirked. Asterisk. He's finally putting in the work, even if it's still not enough. Asterisk. Asterisk. But for now, this works. Asterisk. Jared asked where they were headed. Yuri just winked. Follow my lead. Jared urged caution, fearing the risk. But Yuri brushed it off, revealing they'd have extra backup for this raid. When Jared pressed for a name, Yuri cupped his hands and roared Hernando Briol's very own royal mage. Hernando spun around, confused by the commotion. Yuri didn't waste time demanding the mage's assistance for their secret mission. The mage initially declined, citing urgent business, but Yuri played his trump card, complete forgiveness of Hernando's gambling debts. That stopped Hernando cold. After a tense pause, he asked for confirmation, and Yuri promised to wipe the slate clean. Questioning Yuri's honesty, the mage crossed his arms. Yuri smirked, knowing he only ever flubbed the truth at the tables. Hernando quipped that he'd actually never seen the prince anywhere else. Yuri simply rolled his eyes at the old mage's sarcasm. Yuri cut the chatter, ordering him to follow if he wanted that debt erased. Reluctantly, Hernando gave in to the deal. Still skeptical, the mage demanded a written contract. Yuri clutched his head in frustration as he grabbed the offered paper. Validating his royal word, Yuri gestured toward Jared. He declared the knight would serve as a witness to this princely vow. Jared's eyes went wide, but he nodded. He would officially witness the pledge made by Yuri Briol himself. With a grin, Hernando joined the fray. But he wondered where a prince, a knight, and a mage were headed. Yuri let the silence hang before dropping the bombshell they were going to the Mountain of Swords. Hernando looked utterly baffled. The plan was simple: rob the progenitor dungeon. Soon the trio was trekking through the dark ancient corridors. Hernando marveled at the secret tunnel hidden beneath the palace. Meanwhile, a curious Jared asked what lay ahead. Yuri explained the path led straight to Sword Mountain. Jared's heart raced at the mention of the legendary peaks. He asked if it was truly the mythical home of the kingdom's founder. Yuri nodded firmly. Memories of his past life surfaced. After the Empire's conquest, they had unearthed the dungeon's hidden entrance right here. He recalled the headlines about the legendary relics of Briol's founder. It was a treasure that changed history. The world had erupted in chaos when those ancient secrets were finally revealed by the Empire's scouts. Back then, Yuri had only used this path to flee for his life. He was too broken to claim his heritage. The Empire had seized everything, but this time he wasn't running away. He was taking what was rightfully his. With a determined heart, he marched toward a brighter future. He would witness the power of his ancestors firsthand. What secrets did the founders leave behind? Stepping out of the darkness, they swung open the massive dungeon doors. Hernando scanned the area, confused. They were on the mountain, but how would they unlock the next gate? Spotted an artifact, Your Highness. Yuri smirked. It was sitting in the corner, exactly like in his previous life. His past self hadn't realized its value until it was too late. He shut down Hernando's questions with a cold reply. The mage yelped as a thorny branch snagged him. Yuri warned him to stay focused and keep his guard up. The terrain was treacherous with razor-sharp flora. As Yuri led the way, Hernando watched the prince's strange, newfound competence. The mage whispered to Jared, asking if the prince had hit his head. Jared just offered a knowing smirk. Apparently so. Yuri's sharp voice cut through their chatter, reminding Hernando that the prince's prickly attitude remained unchanged. Yuri signaled a sudden halt. A pack of dire wolves lurked ahead, their predatory eyes locked onto the intruders. They hunt in a coordinated frenzy. Jared was stunned by the prince's tactical insight, wondering how he knew. Yuri claimed he'd read about them in a book. Hernando's jaw dropped, finding the idea of a studious Yuri hilarious. The prince suggested a stealthy bypass, but Hernando's clumsy foot snapped a dry branch with a deafening crack. The mage's nervous laugh didn't help. Within seconds, the wolves lunged forward, baring their lethal fangs at the group. Jared leaped into action, his blade cleaving through the first beast. Yuri observed calmly, noting the thickness of their fur. He praised Jared's mana control, but the real threat emerged. A colossal alpha wolf now had them in its sights. The alpha's howl shook the cavern. Gripping his hilt, Jared ordered the others to stay close behind his shield. Snarling muzzles charged. Jared narrowed his eyes, meeting the onslaught with a flurry of precise, deadly strikes. Hernando marveled at the knight captain's prowess. Yuri agreed, though he knew the knight was just getting started. He's a prodigy, but still unpolished. As more wolves swarmed, Jared's composure began to fray under the pressure. Yuri turned to the mage, telling him to finally unleash the destructive power the king had bragged about. Hernando chuckled, igniting his mana. He finally let loose, incinerating the monsters in a spectacular wave of fire. Jared watched the explosion in shock before pivoting to strike down another wolf, keeping the momentum going. A searing arc of fire streaked toward them, followed by a thunderous blast. Once the smoke cleared, Hernando muttered, he never imagined finding monsters beyond simple dire wolves. Jared scoffed, noting that's exactly why they were running late. But finally they stood at the summit of Sword Mountain. Scanning the peaks, Jared questioned, Your Highness, are they actually here? This place is a total wasteland, not a legendary treasure vault. Yuri turned his eyes, narrowing. He was certain the secret was close. There had to be something. Suddenly, he pointed toward the shadows, found it. As Yuri approached a glowing stone, Jared let out a panicked yelp. Ignoring him, the prince began unearthing the prize. I have to pull this out. Jared begged Hernando for help, but the mage refused to risk his delicate hands. After a grueling effort, they unearthed a blade with a shimmering hilt. Yuri noted it looked surprisingly untouched by time. It's pristine. Yuri traced the cold steel, reading the chilling inscription. Guilty. Jared chimed in, asking, Is this the progenitor's legacy? Yuri hesitated. Suddenly, a violent tremor shook the floor beneath them. The mountain groaned. Yuri smirked with pure confidence. It looks like we're about to find out. Boulders shattered as the floor vanished, sending them plummeting. Yuri crashed hard, landing directly on top of Jared's body. Did he use mana to shield himself? Impressive. Hernando looked around, stunned by the sheer depth of the cavern. We're way down. Yuri's face darkened. Tell me, did you only think of saving yourself while abandoning your prince? Hernando laughed nervously, claiming survival instinct took over. Suddenly, an eerie rhythmic scraping echoed from the darkness behind them. The sound made their blood freeze. Hernando pointed frantically into the gloom. Your Highness, look, Yuri didn't believe him. That won't work on me. Hernando shrieked. No, I'm serious, there's an actual ghost. Yuri turned, his heart stopping. A knight with glowing red eyes emerged. It was the legendary Death Knight. Yuri snarled, kicking Jared to his feet. Get up now. Jared scrambled up, shaking as he looked around in confusion. Spotting the undead warrior, Jared stepped forward. Stand back, Your Highness. I'll be the one to end this monstrosity. Yuri watched his knight's reaction, quick but reckless. A Death Knight is exactly what the name implies. A warrior reborn from the grave, wielding far more devastating power than they ever possessed while drawing breath. To their shock, Yuri stepped forward. It's fine, he isn't a threat. Jared blinked, asking how he could possibly know. My gut says the sentinel of our ancestral tomb wouldn't dare strike one of its own. Fight me, Yuri Briol. We share the same royal bloodline. It only makes sense, right? The Death Knight gripped his hilt. Careful, Your Highness, the others screamed in absolute terror. The blade flashed, stopping inches from Yuri's face before stabbing the floor. Hernando gasped, certain the prince was dead. The prince's head, it split. Yuri glared back, telling the mage to shut his mouth and show some respect. Only a few hairs were cut. The knight sheathed his blade, noting Yuri's familiar arrogance. Who, Yuri asked. Eric Briol, the phantom rasped. Jared gasped. That name. It can't be. Hernando froze. That's a name every citizen knows. The ultimate swordmaster, who conquered the entire continent with a single blade. The founding father and first king of Briol. Yuri's eyes narrowed. So he was the first to arrive here. Precisely. Without Briol blood, you won't have the strength to even budge this holy blade. So this is the invincible blade of the progenitor. The knight nodded. He had personally used it in battle. The knight looked at Yuri, confused. Why that look? Do you look down on this blade because of its history? No, I just feel like a thief taking another man's pride. The knight loomed closer. State your purpose, descendant. Yuri gripped the hilt firmly. I am Yuri Briol, third prince of this era. I've come to claim my birthright. As Eric's descendant, I demand the legacy be passed to me. The knight turned away, his long vigil finally ending. The hour has arrived. I shall complete my mission and grant you the power you seek. Yuri followed the undead knight deeper. Jared watched, his mind reeling. They were actually talking to a legendary specter. This wasn't the life he expected as a royal knight. Yuri snapped his fingers. Jared, what are you waiting for? Jared's eyes widened in total shock. Did the prince really just ask him to follow him into the unknown? He's coming. Jared gripped his head, convinced the madness of this place was finally rotting his brain. I'm coming. The Death Knight halted near the crystal, sinking into a seated position. Light flooded the chamber. I hope you're worthy of this, the knight rasped. Yuri's eyes sharpened as he scanned the area. Where is he hiding? Yuri muttered. A shadowy figure emerged. Ancestor, wait. No. This wasn't human. The phantom lunged its blade, whistling through the air in a deadly arc. Mana control, Yuri realized. The specter tapped his chest, igniting a pulsing, radiant glow. As the phantom's blade shimmered with energy, Yuri saw it a masterclass in mana manipulation. It was teaching him the fundamentals. The figure gestured, challenging him to replicate the moves mid-clash. Yuri let out a wild laugh. Training mana control during a deathmatch. His ancestor was truly insane. Learning while fighting for your life. Only a second lifer could pull off this kind of madness. Like this, right, dropping low, Yuri let his mana explode outward in a powerful surge. He checked his palms, grinning. It wasn't perfect, but he was hyped to test it for real. The silhouette smirked. Yuri knew he needed more power. The Empire's greed was coming for Brio. He swung his sword, eyes burning. This time he'd crush them and protect his legacy. No more past mistakes. Eric Brio's secret arts, he roared, fully locking in. He claimed the technique, forcing the shadow to dodge. Suddenly, the scene shifted. Jared woke up. Jared gasped, scanning the training grounds. This wasn't a dream, the air felt far too real. Show yourself, he bellowed. Spinning around, he froze. He was staring at his own double. A doppelganger. The Death Knight's trial had begun. What are you, another Jared? He spat. Don't fight fate, the clone droned. Jared scoffed as it urged him to live a lazy life. Quit the prince's side or you'll suffer. Jared exhaled, feeling the weight of those words. The old Jared might have folded. But this one, he just smirked at the fake's audacity. You're just a ghost, Jared taunted. You can't undo my past. Your words are just static. The clone's brow furrowed, sword igniting. Wrong answer, it hissed, charging forward with lethal intent. Pathetic. Jared saw right through the cautious defensive stance. It was far too predictable. Launching off the floor, Jared realized this mirror image was boringly similar to his past self. Terrifying, he mocked, swinging his blade. The impact shattered the clone into a dark mist. But the fight wasn't over. The puddle of shadow began to swell and mutate into something bigger. Jared sighed as the creature loomed over him. Of course. The classic second phase. The beast was massive. Don't lose out there, Prince Jared muttered, readying his combat stance. He gripped his hilt, focus sharpening. Meanwhile, Yuri faced his own relentless Shadow Master. The silhouette's mana-infused strike triggered a massive blast, rocking the entire training area. Yuri reacted instantly, parrying with a burst of mana that sent the figure flying back. Light exploded between them. As the dust settled, Yuri exhaled, standing tall among the debris. How long had he been in this trance? That spar felt dangerously close to the edge. Yet every doubt about mana and swordplay had been burned away in the heat of battle. Through that brutal, endless grind, his mana had finally reached a state of perfect stability. Yuri watched as the Shadow's sword crumbled its form, evaporating slowly into the light. The figure gave a final salute and vanished. Time's up, Yuri whispered with a satisfied smile. Transported back to reality, the world blurred before his eyes until he finally woke up. Feeling okay, Sir Jared? Hernando asked. Jared nodded slowly, his senses finally returning. A vivid dream, wasn't it? The knight remarked. It was Eric's final gift to Brio. Yuri realized in his past life, the Empire had stolen this treasure before anyone could reach it. Did the Ancestor master mana control too? Yuri asked, seeking the truth of the legacy. No, the knight replied. This is the ultimate culmination of Eric's life's work, his final legacy. Yuri was the first true successor. But why me and not the royals? He questioned. This dungeon only opens when the world needs a hero, the knight explained solemnly. The time to use this power is now. Yuri stared, the weight of destiny finally sinking in. You must discover that truth alone, the knight muttered. Yuri focused his gaze on the blade, his curiosity piqued. Name this mana technique, Yuri demanded. The warrior's voice echoed, I call it the strike of heart and soul. Yuri repeated the name in awe. Kneel, Yuri Briol, the knight commanded. Receive the legacy of our ancient progenitor. For the heir of Briol, as Yuri bowed, the knight's palm pressed firmly against his brow. Face your foes without a flicker of dread. Understood, Yuri vowed. Then forge ahead on your chosen path. Yuri nodded. Uphold Briol's honor until your final breath. I will. Suddenly, the knight yanked Yuri upward by his hair. Never forget your bloodline. Even in the jaws of death, maintain your honor. That is our sacred oath. Yuri's gaze lingered on the phantom. Later, back at the castle, Anna swung the curtains wide, letting light flood in. Morning, Your Highness. Yuri exhaled a heavy sigh, dragging himself up. Exhausted. You weren't back until late last night. You look ready to crash into your pillow right now. Yuri stretched his aching limbs, shaking off the sleep. I was just doing some late-night research at the Royal Library. Anna looked puzzled. Why now? Searching for lost archives. The library's genealogy held a secret. King Eric Briol once had a mysterious younger brother, a nameless shadow erased from history for abandoning his pride. Yuri wondered. Was that man the terrifying Death Knight? Was he the original owner of that blade? Your Highness, hurry. You must get dressed immediately. The king has summoned you. Yuri stood alert. Any reason why? I'm not sure, Anna admitted, but the summons came right after Sir Hernando's visit. Yuri's brow furrowed. That snitch Hernando. He recalled the man's smug parting shot. I'll be briefing the king on all your activities today. Yuri had questioned the necessity of it. Hernando's grin was cold. In my professional opinion, absolutely. Yuri rubbed his temples. He spilled everything, didn't he? Soon after, he stood before the throne. Entering the great hall, Yuri approached the king. You summoned me? Father Fiore nodded grimly. Hernando's report was enlightening. Sneaking out of the palace is one thing, but finding our ancestors' hidden dungeon, on Sword Mountain no less. It's true, Yuri confirmed. And is that where you claimed this blade? Yes, father. Fiore stood, his presence looming. Lately I've heard rumors of a massive shift in your character. Anna Bernard, even Hernando, they all say the same. Tell me what triggered this sudden evolution. Yuri's hand tightened around his sword's hilt. Fiore's eyes narrowed, reluctant to speak. Not exactly, Yuri replied. Then why do you pull back? Because your aura is suffocating, Father Yuri stated calmly. And you were clenching your fist. Fiore scoffed. Talk, now. Yuri took a breath. I had a vision, a dream. A dream, yes. One where I was burdened by an unforgivable sin. A sin Yuri Briol named this transgression you committed in your sleep. The sin of failing to protect Briol. Fiore's expression darkened. Yuri pressed on, detailing the vivid nightmare. A great war erupted, slaughtering thousands. I fought to save our kingdom, but I was too weak. The kingdom crumbled as I fled like a coward only to die. Then I woke, and the necklace was gone. Mother's keepsake had vanished. Was it her final warning from beyond the grave? Fiore remained silent. Who destroyed the realm in your dream? Fiore questioned. Yuri hesitated, the truth burning in his mind. He couldn't mention the Empire yet. It was far too dangerous to reveal that card so early. By altering history, perhaps the Empire's invasion would never happen. After a tense beat, he spoke. An unknown dark army brought us to ruin. Fiore's lips curled into a dry grin. I see. Perhaps just a nightmare, or Lily's spirit guiding you. Either way, I'm glad you finally matured. Matured, Yuri scoffed internally. He was simply trying to wash the blood of his past sins away. There's one more thing. Yuri looked up, meeting his father's piercing, expectant gaze. Draw your steel. Fiore Briol, a natural-born monster, had been a master of the blade since birth, a legendary figure decorated with countless titles. His divine swordsmanship ranked him among the continent's elite 10. He was the undisputed peak of that elite circle. Quite simply, the strongest swordsman alive. An absolute powerhouse no one dared challenge. Yuri blinked, stunned. Am I finally allowed here? My father's private training hall. Honestly, Fiore remarked, I never thought my sons possessed any real talent. Yuri claimed he was the exception. His father let out a heavy sigh, whispering talent before unsheathing his blade. Leveling the steel against his son's heart, he questioned, what defines a swordsman's talent? Is it raw power, velocity, lightning reflexes, or a genius mind? Does possessing every trait make one an invincible knight? As Yuri searched for an answer, Fiore cut him off. Incorrect. The sudden rebuttal left Yuri reeling in shock. His father explained that superficial traits are secondary compared to the true fire burning within. It is the force that pushes a warrior past human boundaries, transcending even desperation or a sense of obligation. Suddenly, his eyes blazed with a divine radiance. Yuri froze, paralyzed by the overwhelming presence radiating from him. Sheathing his weapon, his father admitted he lacked a name for it. Perhaps it was the sword's call. Yuri stood there, completely floored by the weight of those cryptic words. Drawing his own blade, he wondered, is this fate? Possibly came, the reply. Yuri scrutinized the cold steel. In his previous life, the blade was a stranger to him. But now Theo broke his trance, asking, what's on your mind, son? Do you feel the sword's pull? Even when death looms, will you hold on? Fiore contemplated the heavy question, but his brow furrowed, as he felt absolutely nothing. He glanced up, meeting his father's predatory gaze. Terror surged through Fiore as he scrambled backward in fear. Panic set in as he realized a sea of mystical eyes was staring him down from the shadows. His jaw hit the floor. Suddenly, a desperate scream pierced the air. Run, the train has to leave. Amidst the pleas for help, a voice cried out for Prince Yuri. Looking up, he saw the palace engulfed in flames. A brutal skirmish raged outside the gates where knights fought tooth and nail until the ground ran red. Thrown back into his agonizing past, Yuri struggled to comprehend the chaos unfolding before his eyes. Seeing Briol in ashes, he heard a shout. There, we found the third prince, the last one. Pure dread washed over him as the Empire's legions closed in. Yuri's mind raced. How was this happening again? Staring at his trembling hands, the grim reality set in. He was back at the dawn of Briol's destruction. Inferno-like flames swallowed the city, as the enemy knights shrieked for his blood, lunging from every direction. Snarling with newfound rage, Yuri bared his teeth and met their charge head-on. With every ounce of his strength, he tore through a knight, spilling crimson across the battlefield. My prince, his men yelled. We'll hold the line. You have to escape. Go now. Yuri watched as his loyal knights sacrificed everything just to give him a fighting chance. Was his peace just a dream? Was Briol truly doomed to be wiped from the map? I can't change this, he whispered, his spirit breaking as he lowered his blood-stained blade. Then he remembered his vow. He would never fear his foes again. It was time to act. He would fulfill his duty to the kingdom until his very last breath. He raised his steel high. Like a god of death, Yuri carved through the horde, obliterating every enemy with a single devastating strike. Drenched in the blood of his enemies, he refused to falter, continuing his lethal dance of destruction. Despite his burning lungs, he parried a lethal blow before driving his edge home, finishing his opponent. He shoved the blade deep into the man's throat, a cold, dark grin spreading across his face. Rumors of his death echoed through the chaos, yet more knights swarmed him, demanding his immediate surrender. Yuri's fury boiled over. Briol will never abandon its honor, not even in the jaws of death. With that declaration, he leveled his sword and lunged forward, a man possessed by pure willpower. Vaulting over the shocked soldiers, he swore to see his mission through, no matter the cost. The vision faded. Back in reality, Yuri smiled, knowing exactly what path he had to walk. Stepping into the light, he approached his companion with a challenge in his eyes. Want to learn the progenitor sword arts? He asked Bernard. The man's eyes widened with intense curiosity. Yuri warned him that the training would be hell-fitting for someone known as the Sword Demon. Bernard didn't flinch, claiming he had already anticipated the brutal road ahead of him. Fair enough, Yuri countered, but that won't save you today. With a metallic ring, he drew his blade. He claimed this legendary blade technique was purely about mana manipulation. Leveling his sword toward the horizon, a vibrant azure aura erupted, flooding the room with light. Bernard smirked, confirming the two were fundamentally one and the same. It was a total revelation that mana control existed solely to amplify one's swordsmanship. Yuri shut his eyes tight, processing the shock, warning that the path ahead was treacherous, especially since the technique was only half-mastered. Bernard pondered the situation, then fired back that it was actually perfect. Yuri's jaw hit the floor. Was this guy seriously for real? Bernard dipped his head, declaring that even an incomplete mastery was sufficient. In exchange, he'd remain stationed in Briolle. Pressing a hand to his heart, he insisted that even fragments of the method held profound ancient secrets. Yuri marveled at the man's sheer audacity, a faint knowing smirk finally tugging at his lips. He finally caved. Fine. You're staying in Briolle as promised, right? Bernard gave a firm, resolute nod. Pivoting sharply, Bernard shot him a challenge. Want to see it in action? Yuri didn't hesitate for a second. I'll show you the whole truth. He unleashed a spell that shook Yuri's very soul. Then Bernard casually noted that he'd left out one tiny detail. Yuri stood there dazed as Bernard let out a sharp, mocking chuckle. He had intended to stay in Briolle from the start. Yuri froze, completely blindsided by the sudden revelation. Bernard added that the king expected them to be side by side for at least another 10 years. Yuri tried to demand an explanation, but Bernard cut him off. Well, aren't you going to strike first? Fine, I'll make the first move. Suddenly, a violent magical pressure surged around his cold steel. He charged at the prince, who was now shaking with pure, unadulterated rage. Yuri's knuckles turned white on his hilt. Why tell me this only now? Exploding with fury, Yuri lunged forward with a devastating high-speed counterstrike. Steel screamed against steel as their blades collided. Later that night, Yuri collapsed onto his bed, exhausted. Staring into the darkness of the ceiling, he realized the entire timeline was finally shifting. Briolle wouldn't fall to ruin because of his past failures this time. Even without drastic intervention, the fact that Bernard was staying was proof enough. The future felt hazy, yet things were undeniably changing bit by bit. But that wasn't all. This time, the Empire had to be stopped. He squeezed his fist, feeling his resolve harden. This time, failure was not an option. Suddenly, a soft rustle broke the silence. Anna the maid had arrived. Yuri raised an eyebrow, and she cautioned him to stay out of trouble. He bolted upright, instantly curious. Is there something else on the agenda? Anna sighed, noting his daily habit of courting absolute disaster. You seriously don't remember, she teased. There was a high-stakes meeting scheduled for the following morning. A meeting, Yuri blinked. Anna confirmed it was the Council of Elders, and the king insisted that his presence was mandatory. Had he really forgotten? Yuri's mind began to race as he came to his senses. He groaned, scratching his head in total frustration. Anna warned they had to leave at dawn to face the council. Clasping his hand with a worried look, she warned him about the stubborn, terrifying figures waiting there. Just please don't start a war, she pleaded. Yuri assured her he'd keep his cool and stay quiet. Was she actually that concerned about him? Is that a real promise? She pressed him, eyes wide. I already gave you my word, he replied. As the sun rose, a new day of reckoning began. Tension filled the hall as a duke slammed his fist down, roaring a thunderous no at the table. Yuri's eyes narrowed with displeasure. Anna was right. This was going to be a total mess from the jump. Duke Chenard sneered. Your Highness, we cannot allow you to study such an unverified mana technique. Yuri scanned the room, realizing every single heavyweight of the Council of Elders was present. This hall was meant for the kingdom's laws, but those days were long gone. It had transformed into a brutal battlefield for the throne. Now he knew why his father stayed away. Chenard pushed further, suggesting Yuri stick to the traditional Briolla arts, instead of some obscure method. Another councilman chimed in, questioning what the Duke was even trying to imply. Unverified. This is the legacy of our ancestors. Chenard just laughed, asking how they could be so certain. Are you questioning the prince's word? The Duke bellowed. Chenard just gave a serpent-like grin in response. I'm simply saying we need cold, hard evidence before validating such a legendary and powerful royal secret. Precision is key. Wasn't this summit summoned purely out of deep concern for the prince's future? Yuri noted they'd even convened the Council of Elders just to dissect his mana cultivation techniques. I'm honored, Duke Chenard, he smirked, crossing his arms. Absolutely disgraceful behavior for a high noble. He was the first coward to kneel when Briolle crumbled. Then as now, he's a master of manipulation. Fair enough, Chenard conceded. Sign, what's your take on this? After a heavy pause, Sign finally spoke. He wasn't about to rush into a verdict. Naturally, the others pressed him for an actual explanation. He explained that every cultivation style has flaws. Suddenly, Chenard stood and roared at the assembly. Shut up and listen. Even Briolle's knight, Captain's son, is doubting this specific mana technique's viability. It's a sham. Reason enough to scrap this entire method immediately, another duke chimed in aggressively. Sign didn't say it was invalid, just that every path holds inherent value. Janard's lackey shouted back. Same difference, he barked. The duke feared this unstable mana method might literally break the prince. The assembly members traded shifty looks, a detail our protagonist didn't miss for a single second. Things were going south fast. The council leaned into the narrative, nodding in collective scripted agreement. Yuri felt the tide turning. A brief study of this method could fundamentally rewrite his energy circuits. Altering the core's mechanics was possible. However, his brutal battles within the illusion world changed everything. After facing the progenitor, the scars were etched into his core. It defied any logical explanation. Panic set in. Suddenly, a mysterious guest smirked, commenting on how perfectly the nobles chose their words. All eyes, including Yuri's, snapped toward him. As the crowd murmured, the man offered a mocking apology. Just one question. Has anyone here actually survived a real orc encounter? It was Lord Calcio Aaron. The room erupted in whispers. Agitated Janard demanded to know this newcomer's identity and noble rank. Standing tall, he introduced himself as Calcio, Aaron bowing slightly while declaring his status as a free lord. A baron. How does a low-ranked noble infiltrate the High Council? Janard spat with pure venom. I was bored, Aaron shrugged. Yuri realized Duke Zendog had sent him. Wait, Zendog is involved. He's the legendary Margrave holding Briol's frontier, a man whose title is forged in border blood. He's a hardened warrior who's lived his entire life in the trenches of the battlefield. Politics bored him to death, so why on earth was he represented at this elite gathering? A duke spoke up, demanding to know Zendog's true motive for this sudden strange interference. Aaron noted he was a man of action watching these highborn puppets play pathetic political games. Seeing their endless, pointless bickering made it crystal clear why the Margrave deployed him here today. In the heat of slaughter, your mana style is irrelevant. Whether it's Briol's ancient way, or the Imperial Lionheart art success depends on the user's grit. Your Highness, your thoughts. Yuri spoke up. As Prince, I fail to see why you're all losing your minds over this. Discussing the progenitor's technique was moot. Regardless of their whining, he was going to master it. This young swordsman chose to embrace the progenitor's legacy, claiming the ancient mana method as his own. Why do those without skin in the game keep meddling in my personal business? Yuri questioned. It's always the desk-bound cowards who've never gripped a blade that scream the loudest. Janard scowled. You're overstepping, Lord Aaron. Aaron shrugged off the warning, claiming he was just a simple soldier. He dealt with border orcs daily. He challenged the room. Has anyone here actually shed blood? A deafening silence filled the chamber. Do you think an orc cares about your perfect mana control? Crickets. Finally, a lone voice admitted that the ragged warrior actually had a valid point. The prince is young, so it's our duty. Before the noble finished his condescension, Yuri cut him off. Are you suggesting I scrap my entire foundation just because you lot think I'm mistaken? If it's necessary, yes. Yuri snapped back, calling out their blatant, calculated, and dangerous hypocrisy. They knew a core reset was impossible. Aaron smirked, knowing the prince wouldn't budge an inch. Unless you plan on ripping the core out of him, the dukes exploded in outraged, panicked shouts. With a sharp smirk, he shrugged. They aren't coming, so why waste breath on this pointless bickering? The king surely agrees, right, Yuri? Locks eyes with him, wearing a knowing, calculated smile. These fools were slowly chipping away at the prince's patience. Ah, the palace, what a truly tranquil hellhole. Janard's face reddened. Gritting his teeth, he let out a thunderous roar. Peaceful. Did he just say peaceful? The audacity. How could he utter such nonsense while the Margrave is out there holding the front lines? Budget in hand. Aaron's voice turned icy. Must hundreds more perish before he admits the world is burning? He's blind to the daily carnage. The very day I departed the border, 4 good men were slaughtered. I buried my own brother in arms, a man I broke bread with every dawn. Orcs don't take breaks, fancy lord. Their lives are nothing but a symphony of bloodshed. The listeners shuddered, their thoughts drifting toward the hero. Analyzing the orc threat, he saw the pattern. Tensions between Briol and Klein were reaching a deadly boiling point. Orc raids were surging, leaving nothing but ruin behind. Had these beasts suddenly evolved, or was it something worse? The conversation shifted to the orcs' newfound cruelty. But what of the Klein Principality's role in this chaos? Aaron's eyes narrowed. Come again, Yuri's reply was a verbal dagger. Klein's army is pulling the strings right. Aaron claimed the guards stepped in. Panic lacing his voice, he pressed. What happened to the border village then? It's a graveyard. Half are dead, the rest are in chains, and the front lines are a bloody mess. He grimaced as history repeated itself perfectly. Is a civil war looming, or is this all a puppet show? Is the Duke's third son behind this? He mused. The room went dead silent as jaws hit the floor. Faced with their shocked stares, Yuri coughed awkwardly. Well, I believe I've said quite enough for one afternoon. Enough, Janard sputtered. He tried to protest, but Yuri cut him off with a gaze that could kill. Mana training is trivial. We need to focus on surviving the Klein invasion and the relentless orc hordes. Janard's fury spiked. Stop meddling in the whims of a brat who clearly doesn't know his place. Blame it on puberty. As dusk fell, Aaron projected Sandok's face through a flickering monocrystal to debrief. So the third prince actually said that. Aaron nodded. The word is out, he's not the boy he used to be. Your thoughts, Sandok probed. Aaron replayed Yuri's warning about Klein's direct involvement in his head. He chuckled. Kid's got more spine than I thought. Sandok narrowed his eyes. Watch him, closely. Sandok ordered a total tale. Aaron shrugged, noting the prince still acted like any other typical royal brat. Want me to dig into his past? If you must, Sandok replied. Aaron stood ready to hunt for secrets. Consider it done. Sandok gave a curt nod before his image vanished into thin air. Aaron stared out at the stillness, disgusted by the prince's calm, while soldiers bled out in the mud. A movement caught his eye. A cloaked figure was slipping through the shadows. It was the third prince himself. He blinked, second-guessing his eyes. Impossible. But Yuri was indeed making a daring escape from the royal grounds. He looked at Hernando, reminiscing. Used to do this a lot as a kid. Kind of pathetic, right? Escaping was practically my cardio, he joked. Yuri raised an eyebrow. So, you're a professional runaway then? I was a real nightmare back then. Heads up, that girl over there is definitely clocking us. Thinks she knows us, and why the messy look? You're royalty. Just walk out the front door. For me, it's a walk. With you, it looks like we're plotting to overthrow the government. So what's the plan? Something scandalous. Yuri turned a flat look on his face. Not even close. If I were doing something scandalous, you're the last person I'd bring. Hernando's ego took a visible hit. Seriously though, where are we headed? Yuri smirked, his eyes gleaming. We're going to the casino. The shadiest underground den in the city. Hernando froze. Wait, didn't you say, no bad things today? Trust me, we're being good. Now lead the way. You know exactly where it is, don't you? I usually only end up there after a few too many drinks. Hernando started, but Yuri cut him off. Yuri stopped and locked eyes with him. Just remember, everything we do tonight is for Briol's future. Hernando blinked in disbelief. Don't even explain. How deep does this plan of yours actually go? The pieces were moving exactly as predicted. Every calculated risk was a gamble for the kingdom's survival. Every detail was meticulously calculated in his mind. With sharp resolve, he finally agreed to fulfill the Emperor's daunting request. The thrill of the gamble surged through him. His plan, to tear this casino apart using memories from his past life in Briol. Whispers of his name haunted the streets. He was the undisputed kingpin, a ruthless loan shark ruling the city's darkest corners. A titan of the merchant world, he dominated the continent's trade. Beside him stood the girl who famously decapitated a mob boss. She was the living nightmare of Briol. More than just a simple assassin, she was the one who ended his previous life. The current king of debt was a man named Goryeo. Trembling with feigned respect, Goryeo bowed low while clutching his chest. He acted shocked that a high-ranking noble would step into his world. Yuri's expression remained cold as he began to speak. Their masks had already slipped. Hernando's voice shook with pure terror, but Goryeo only responded with a chilling, predatory smirk. The king's mage and the third prince themselves, Goryeo chuckled. Even royalty has limits to their power in this place. But someone has to take the fall, right? Yuri snapped back, making it clear he wasn't there for petty games or gambling. Goryeo's eyes gleamed with dark curiosity. He gestured toward the high-stakes tables, inviting them to sit for a much deadlier conversation. They settled into the velvet seats. Hernando leaned in close, his frantic whispering filled with absolute desperation and fear. He begged Yuri to walk away, but the prince silenced him instantly. Goryeo joined them, his presence heavy and suffocating. I hear you're not here for the cards, Goryeo mused. Does that mean you've come to beg for a massive loan? Yuri didn't flinch. He was there to secure capital for a high-risk investment. A wide, mocking grin spread across Goryeo's face. A charity, Your Highness. Skipping the royal banks usually means you're hiding something big from your father, doesn't it? You have dangerous ambitions, Prince. Yuri cut him off sharply. Enough. It's not your place to interrogate your superiors. Yuri's eyes flashed with authority. Goryeo bowed his head in a mock apology, trying to hide the malice in his smile. The prince brushed off the disrespect. He was only there for the gold. Let's skip the small talk and talk business. Goryeo pressed for the motive behind the massive loan. Finally, Yuri decided it was time to reveal a piece of his hand. He intended to buy Mgranja a rare spice from Klein. He knew a massive surge in demand was about to hit. Hernando nearly choked in disbelief. Goryeo let out a short, mocking laugh at the prince's seemingly foolish choice of investment. Mgranja is premium stuff, but is it worth a fortune? Goryeo doubted. Yuri stared him down. Everything will happen as I say. The mage suddenly recalled rumors of a brutal war erupting in the Klein Principality, with chaos spreading across the borders. Orcs were ravaging the lands, making trade impossible. He couldn't understand why spice prices would ever rise during such a massacre. Yuri simply wanted to stockpile every ounce of Klein spice in advance. Goryeo saw a terrifying look in the prince's eyes. He realized in that moment that Yuri Briole was nothing like the useless, pathetic prince from the royal rumors. It was clear the prince was acting on information far more dangerous than what he had just revealed to them. Time to settle the numbers. Yuri leaned forward. As an investor, not a prince, how much are you willing to bet? The tension in the room stayed thick for hours. Suddenly, Goryo slammed his hands onto the table with a loud bang. He officially proposed a high-stakes contract. Yuri's lips curled into a triumphant smile as they finally stepped out into the night. The mage was stunned. Goryo had actually handed over a mountain of gold. Yuri scanned the parchment with cold, calculating eyes. He crushed the contract in his fist and shoved it away. "This is insane, Your Highness," Hernando cried out in panic. "Why didn't you warn me? You actually planned to gamble our entire future on this crazy spice deal, didn't you?" Yuri smirked at his fear. "If I told you the truth, you would have dragged me straight back to my father." Hernando made a disgruntled face before asking their next move. "To the trading floor." "Exactly," Yuri confirmed with a nod. He had a specific mission in mind. Magranja was a guaranteed gold mine, because the only alchemist with the recipe was in danger. Duke Klein's personal physician was destined to die in the coming war. Without him, the spice's price would skyrocket to heaven. He couldn't trust this secret to anyone. They eventually arrived at a desolate, crumbling shack where a single light flickered inside. The mage looked on in total confusion. Yuri stood before the decaying structure and announced they had finally reached their destination. "You're joking," Hernando stammered, pointing at the ruins. "You want to do business in this literal dump of a house." Yuri ignored him and kicked open the door. "Ilian Wood, are you in there?" Hernando looked like he was about to faint. He pleaded to hire a professional firm instead. Then a girl emerged from the darkness. It was the legendary Ilian Wood. The prince introduced himself with total confidence. "I am the third prince of Briol, and I have a job only you can do." Prince Ilian gasped, her eyes wide with shock. Yuri reached out his hand, ready to change her destiny forever. "Are you out of your mind?" Yuri's face darkened as he shut down the conversation. Hernando scoffed, claiming anyone would think the same. He had just blown the Magranda deal. On some dying company, a fortune wasted, but Yuri saw what he couldn't. Ilian was a sleeping giant. Soon she'd be the world's top merchant. Unlike the snake Goryo and his filthy schemes, she valued her word like her own life. In Yuri's past life, she was a legend. This time he'd make her a god. Hernando sighed, done for the day, right? Yuri's gaze pierced the sky. Not yet. One final move. Hernando's blood ran cold. Seconds later, he was screaming, "Your Highness, where on earth are we going?" Silence was his only answer as Yuri walked on. The underworld lords were already in his pocket. Just one piece left. He entered the slums, passing a broken man, rotting in filth. Around him, a sea of beggars clashed in a never-ending shout-fest. Yuri knew he was in the right hellhole. Suddenly, he spotted his target. He saw a group of girls and approached with a greeting. They spun around, and he dropped his name, Yuri Briol, the third prince. The girl froze. A prince. Correct. Yuri stared at the future shadow, who would one day slaughter Goryo effortlessly. Asana. She stared back, stunned. Why would royalty come to a place like this? "Relax," he said smoothly. "Just a prince out on patrol, giving a little back to the poor." She stayed silent. Suddenly, Yuri barked an order to his mage. "Give it to her." Shaking with nerves, the mage handed over the jewels. Yuri noticed a tiny girl hiding. Is that her? In the past, Asana sold her soul to Goryo to save this child. She was buried in debt, just another victim of that monster's greed. That tragedy forged a legendary assassin. Yuri refused to let history repeat. Heal the girl. At the temple, Asana clutched the bag. "What's the catch?" Yuri just chuckled. "There was only one condition. Remember the name Yuri Briol. That is all." He walked away without looking back. Hernando scrambled after him, baffled by the charity. "It's an investment," Yuri replied. Every player he needed was now bound to his fate, but he needed one more soul. He turned to Hernando with a sharp question. "What did you actually see in that dungeon?" A heavy silence fell between them. Hernando grinned. "A gamble." He'd spent his life playing the high-stakes game. At the Basrega casino. It was exactly the answer Yuri wanted to hear. "Keep your head on a swivel today," Yuri warned, clapping him on the chest. A smirk played on his lips. The next morning, Fiore summoned Hernando to the office. Fiore leaned in. "I heard you were out with Yuri last night. Is that true?" "Yes, sir." His father demanded the details. Hernando claimed they simply left the palace and headed straight for the city's biggest casino. The king's eyes narrowed. He gambled. Every penny, Hernando lied. Fiore scoffed. "He always thought he was a pro. But he's trash. He lost everything you gave him." Fiore pushed for more. Hernando remembered Yuri throwing Goryo's money at a random merchant, and the mountain of gold given to an orphan. He'd spent the night studying the commoners. So Hernando told the king that Yuri was just curious about how the poor lived. "Then you came straight back." Hernando bowed low. "Exactly, Your Majesty. Nothing more." Fiore went silent, his mind racing as he stared at the marble floor. "Will you be at the ball?" he asked. Hernando gave a polite yes. Fiore teased him for being boring. Hernando smiled back. "Desire changes. I feel like dancing." A new day arrived, and Yuri was back in the arena, clashing with Saini. Collapsing onto the dirt, he took a breather before gesturing toward the sideline, teasing that Bernard was quite the ladies' man. Really, he pressed. Yuri smirked, noting the maids were practically swooning. He insisted Bernard attend the ball after all. Plenty of admirers were waiting for him there. Bernard just scowled, completely disinterested. Forget that about our discussion on blade techniques, he pivoted. You were spot on, Your Highness. This style, it's formless. Yuri stood up, his gaze sharpening as he agreed. The blade moves like a river's current. Bernard added that mastering mana control, a crucial pillar of their craft, wasn't something he could just figure out solo. To truly evolve, he needed the heat of real battle. Mastery was proving elusive. Surprisingly, his disciples were leveling up fast, showing insane potential for mana manipulation. Bernard was genuinely stunned by his progress. Yuri stared at his blade gilt gnawing at him. He'd tried scrubbing away his past life's Brielle techniques just for a trial run, but the weight of those memories only grew heavier. You need to chill, Bernard warned, his brow furrowed with genuine concern. Worried about me, Yuri echoed. Bernard nodded. Yuri was moving at a breakneck pace, despite being a total prodigy for his age. However, his physical vessel hadn't caught up to his power yet. Yuri just chuckled, promising he'd handle that hurdle eventually. Ready for round 2, Yuri challenged. Bernard blinked in disbelief, asking if he was actually serious. Yuri didn't flinch. Absolutely. Suddenly, he hurled his sword aside, demanding they switch to live steel for this bout. He needed real stakes to truly ascend. Bernard dropped his wooden trainer, his eyes hardening as he accepted the terms. Then came Yuri's wager he'd attend the ball if Bernard could land just one single strike. Bernard's focus tightened instantly. He shot it down instantly. Yuri pressed him, demanding to know why he claimed victory was inevitable when he never honored his word. He was the ultimate wall in any argument, leaving Yuri fuming. Narrowing her eyes, she barked a final command, "Just watch me." In an instant, raw mana surged through his blade. A violent aura erupted, drowning the room before a blinding supernova of light consumed everything. Determination flared as he moved to shatter those expectations. Their steel screamed in a fierce exchange, yet he couldn't land even a single blow. Time skipped forward to the Grand Imperial Ball. Gilded carriages flooded the palace gates, carrying a mysterious young duo toward the festivities. The man chuckled, noting how captivated she was by the opulence. Emerging from the carriage was none other than the Empire's second prince. George Ivana Granzian glanced at Katerina. After years of absence, the heavy atmosphere of the palace had her visibly on edge. A secret longing burned in her heart to see a certain someone. Moments later, Ina chirped, seeking approval for the prince's flamboyant new suit. He grimaced, complaining the look was total overkill. It was a cluttered mess of jewels and silks that needed to be removed immediately. Ina pouted, insisting it was perfect. He used to adore this flashy style, had his legendary taste suddenly shifted overnight. "Preparations are complete, Your Highness," she whispered. Softening his gaze, he used her name and extended a shocking invitation to the dance floor. She spun around, eyes wide with pure disbelief. Stretching out his hand, he casually claimed he just needed a bit of practice. Since he was officially partnerless, she was his only choice. Her heart raced. Was she truly supposed to accept such a request? Yuri's eyebrows shot up at her strange expression. As their hands locked, she suspiciously accused him of planning to stomp on her toes. He scoffed, denying any childish pranks. In a heartbeat, the space between them vanished, leaving them locked in an incredibly intimate gaze. "Just match my pace," he murmured. A tidal wave of shyness crashed over her, paralyzing her mind as the world seemed to slow down. Ina piped up, teasing if his heart was fluttering. Since she was a dancing prodigy, he wondered just how many partners she'd actually had. She smirked, noting that despite her looks, she was actually a hot commodity who was quite popular in the social scene. It was her first time leading such a pint-sized partner. He told her to pipe down height. Didn't matter when you had real skill. "By the way, Ina, you just crushed my foot," he deadpanned. She gasped, a fake apology, blaming a non-existent slip on the floor. Crunch. She did it again, flashing a mischievous grin. Ina claimed it was just another clumsy, totally accidental mistake. The orchestra struck a majestic chord, signaling the start of the gala. Couples swirled across the marble floor, in a sea of elegance. Fior remained perched on his throne, like a silent predator swirling a glass of crimson wine, while observing the unfolding chaos. He tracked Yuri's every move as the boy mingled with the elite. Yuri, however, was laser-focused on the horizon ahead. There he was, Duke St. Dog. The man radiated a lethal pressure that put every ordinary knight in the room to shame. Last time, only the lowly Baron Aaron showed. He was analyzing the Duke when his brother suddenly broke his concentration. Yuri questioned if his vision was failing, noting the sudden and frequent appearance of those spectacles lately. He brushed it off as nothing worth stressing over. Suddenly, a thunderous boom echoed through the grand hall. The massive doors groaned open. George marched in with pure main character energy, heading straight for the king's throne. After a firm handshake, the king welcomed him to their humble abode. George played the part perfectly, returning the royal gratitude. He introduced his younger sister to the court. When Yuri looked over, his heart stopped. It was Katerina. Memories of his tragic past life flooded back. He swore right then, no engagement. He wouldn't repeat that fatal mistake twice. Their eyes locked for a fleeting second. She was breathtaking. Soon, the hall was buzzing with the whispers of 100 guests. Yuri watched Katerina closely, noting how Cedric handled the crowd with the effortless grace of a true respected leader. That was the aura of a future king. Compared to that brilliance, Yuri felt like a mere shadow in the corner. Suddenly, Katerina glided past, her eyes piercing right through him. He managed a stiff formal greeting as she approached. She ignored him, focusing entirely on his brother. Yuri gripped his head. Was he still a slave to these cursed, doomed feelings? Ina skipped over, offering a cookie to break his dark mood. He softened, thanking her for the tireless effort. She shrugged it off like it was nothing. When he asked if she was tired, she joked that this was nothing compared to his messes. The disasters people leave daily are worse, she started. Yuri cut her off, insisting that the details didn't matter. Just hand over the cookie, he grumbled. She smirked, telling him to call her if he needed anything else to survive the night. He watched her leave, sighing as he leaned against the table. Suddenly, a heavy, familiar presence loomed over him. Sensing the pressure, he snapped his eyes open. Standing there was George, the legendary second prince of the Empire, a former god of the battlefield. Yuri bowed low, introducing himself formally as the third prince of Briole, the one and only Yuri Briole. At the same time, he was the man who had personally. Briole was crumbling. He had to suppress his rage. Showing hostility now would be fatal. Precisely, George sneered, suddenly freezing with a chilling grin. Yuri stood paralyzed, completely blindsided by the shift. Unfamiliar mana waves pierced through him. George remarked, he was turning 13, truly the son of Fiore. What spectacular talent, he withdrew, leaving our protagonist fuming with white-knuckled rage. The pressure was lethal. Despite his age, his power was overwhelming. This guy was an absolute monster. Those siblings are cut from the same cloth. Passing by, he intentionally shoved Ina to the floor. Shattered glass and wine flooded the tiles. He sneered, claiming those vessels symbolized the imperial court itself. The damage was done. Ina trembled, pleading for mercy, but George just mocked her with a sigh. Yuri caught their exchange and went cold. He realized she had fallen right into his trap. George leveled his blade at her neck. Under imperial law, this blunder warranted immediate execution. Yuri saw through it. That psycho had targeted Ina just to get under his skin. Fiora stepped in, asking if he intended to ruin the royal gala. If he craved blood, then do it on your own soil. A heavy silence fell before George finally turned his gaze. He bowed, requesting understanding. After all, Briole and the Emperor shared a long history of respect. Fiore agreed, but questioned his sincerity. Tell me, do you still remember the events at Ghent? George smirked while Fiore pressed on. By executing a knight on Briole's soil, you stripped his honor. He was never held accountable. George simply replied that it was a necessary act of duty. To uphold the dignity of both nations, he recalled his father once executing an imperial knight. It wasn't by choice but necessity, so he suggested they settle the matter swiftly. Recalling the past made it clear the imperial family's very honor was at stake here. Bloodshed would be minimal. However, backing down now would be seen as defying the empire. Duties, ideals, and power aside, Briole never abandons its honor even in the face of death. That is the oath of Briole. Suddenly, Yuri shouted that she was his direct subordinate. Why hesitate like a coward? Her failures were his own. He cast his doubts aside instantly. He was still a prince regardless of his standing. If they had only considered his rank, everything would be different. He was a sinner once, and this life was his ultimate penance. He didn't choose this fate. He pleaded for her mercy, offering a duel in exchange. The hall erupted in mockery. George laughed hysterically until he suddenly went cold and agreed. Yuri the third prince, right Yuri, confirmed his title. George then asked another question. Can I just call you Yuri? Absolutely. The surrounding crowd was left utterly speechless. George turned, finding the prince's offer intriguing. Do you truly agree to these terms? Fiore scowled but conceded. It shall be as you wish. George thanked him for complying. George declared he'd usually fight himself, but to preserve the imperial family's dignity, he would choose a champion. He'd send a young knight to duel the prince. Yuri bowed, thanking him for the mercy. George replied that they'd meet at the duel. He glanced at the terrified Ina, who was shivering. He rushed over and took her hand. Stand up, he urged, lifting her. Go rest. Ina asked how she possibly could. This was all her fault. He told her not to worry as servants escorted her away. Yuri turned around only to find Katerina watching him. She stared deeply into his eyes. He brushed the thought aside. As he walked past Hernando, who was drinking nearby and saw everything. Later, Yuri walked the dark corridors alone. His brother was waiting. What were you thinking back there? Yuri turned around. Yuri was surprised. I couldn't just stand by and watch Ina die, he explained. You're truly hopeless, he sighed, patting Yuri's head. Yuri was stunned by the gesture. It had been ages since they'd shared such a moment. Then his brother gripped his hair. He proposed lending a hand, hoping his rival would mistake the move for a genuine peace offering. But it was all a ruse. When power levels are identical, any slip-up becomes a lethal opportunity. Yuri wasn't having it. Cutting him off mid-sentence, the prince made it clear he already saw through the fear. His brother sighed, insisting the debate was over and that he'd shoulder the entire burden himself. Yuri fired back with cold resolve. This was his path, and he refused to hide behind anyone. A subtle smirk played on his brother's lips as he finally yielded, choosing to place faith in him. Fair enough, Yuri grinned before shifting gears to ask about the current leaderboard standings. Things were looking grim, but his brother promised to fix it, urging Yuri to save his energy. He realized then that if the Empire had played their cards right, Brielle's throne would already be theirs. This was the turning point. He had to crush whoever stood in his way to secure their future. Morning light hit the arena as he faced his foe under the watchful eyes of the kingdom's elite. Hernando couldn't believe his eyes. The prince was actually throwing himself into the center of this deadly duel. Sine noted the opponent's icy composure, a seasoned knight of the Empire, with a sword like a razor. The tension was thick. Could their prince really survive a head-on collision with such a master? When Sane questioned Hernando's laughter, the mage simply gestured toward the arena as the carnage began. Unbothered, the protagonist let out a massive yawn and stretched his relaxed posture, radiating total confidence. The title of Great Mage is a myth, a peak that no mortal in the Mystic Tower has ever reached. It is a legendary rank reserved only for those who unlock the forbidden absolute secrets of the mystic arts. This is the study of fate, a path that grants total vision over the world's destiny. Only Hernando succeeded. Chosen by the world itself, he mastered the impossible, yet suddenly he was paralyzed by a chilling realization. What is with the face? The boy mocked. All that big talk, and he could not manage a single win. This was humiliating. For the first time since ascending his mystic path, the master of fate had lost. Was it just a fluke? He could usually read a person's entire life story with a single glance. But this child was a total void. Through the haze of his Sword Mountain illusion, a shadow emerged. Dark hair and piercing eyes, the unmistakable marks of Brielle's royal bloodline, stared back at him. That prideful glare belonged to the third prince. Desperate, he swung his blade one last time, refusing defeat. The illusion shattered. He collapsed, covered in blood and drowning in the crushing weight of total despair. In this new timeline, the chain of events triggered by a simple mistake felt like a dangerous conspiracy. He tried to ignore the suspicion, but the prince's erratic behavior during their patrol was impossible to overlook. Invoking fate investigation, he triggered a miracle he knew would change the course of history forever. The truth was terrifying. Prince Yuri possessed no fate. Hernando's lips curled into a mysterious dark grin. He brushed off the concerns, declaring Yuri harmless, just as the prince signaled his readiness for the clash. "How long are you going to keep playing?" George asked, questioning if the boy needed a moment. Yuri's confidence was unshakable. He was ready to end this, and his opponent mirrored that lethal determination. Fiore gave the signal. The duel was officially live. The atmosphere in the arena turned instantly electric. The knights tightened their grip. Suddenly Yuri blurred, closing the distance with the speed of a predator. He lunged with terrifying force, leaving his opponent wide-eyed and paralyzed by the sheer intensity of the strike. The knight barely parried steel, clashing against steel as the arena shook from their violent, high-speed exchange. Watching with a smirk, Fiore called out to Hernando, who responded with immediate, unwavering loyalty. The king demanded a prediction, but Hernando simply watched the boy, his own certainty beginning to waver. As the bloodbath intensified, Fiore broke his silence, asking about the mage's accidental arrival in the kingdom. When asked if it was time to move on, Hernando's response was a simple, definitive negative. Fiore's relief was palpable. He was glad his guest was staying while Hernando played the humble servant. "Exaggerating my worth only causes trouble," Fiore noted, warning against the dangers of overinflated egos. The mage countered with a final piercing question. "In your eyes, Majesty, who truly holds the power?" He lunged forward with absolute confidence, acknowledging the man's terrifying power. Hernando just smirked, agreeing that his assessment was spot on. "Your Majesty, his arrival in Briole was pure coincidence. Yet fate placed him right before the continent's most formidable warrior, a man whose strength defies logic. This legend could literally rewrite the world's destiny. But despite his sheer presence, the sacred blade refused to budge from its sheath. Believing his business there was finished, he prepared to vanish. He even reached out to Fiore, making his intentions to depart crystal clear. Suddenly, a knight lunged at awaiting Yuri with lethal intent. It looked like his departure would have to wait just a little longer. Yuri's lips curled into a smirk as mana surged through his blade. "I'm done playing around," he declared, his patience finally wearing thin. Raising his weapon, he decided to end the farce. As his overwhelming aura exploded outward, his speed reached levels that left the spectators speechless. Yuri's eyes flashed with a predatory light. Before anyone could blink, his steel was resting effortlessly against his opponent's trembling throat. The opponent felt the cold kiss of death. Within seconds, the duel ended, leaving George and Katerina paralyzed by the sheer impossibility. Fiore stood frozen in shock, while the saint gasped in disbelief. Amidst the erupting chaos of the crowd, Hernando wore a knowing grin. How could he possibly maneuver like that? The crowd watched in awe as the opponent's blade shattered into two useless pieces of metal. With the jagged tip inches from his jugular, Yuri just smiled. His rival finally admitted defeat, sending the entire palace into wild celebration. Hernando knew destiny had guided him. He'd finally found someone who dances on the edge of life and death, completely ignoring fate's rules. The third prince's blade reshaped everyone's future, even the humble maid's. Every step he takes is a direct middle finger to destiny itself. A man living in total rebellion against the world's script. Yuri Briol, the indomitable Hernando, could only marvel at such a magnificent sight. Your Highness, I'll watch you rewrite this world's future. Fast forward 5 years later, and a frantic maid is sprinting through the palace. She was beating herself up. Everything was perfect until she committed a massive career-ending blunder. Getting caught meant instant game over. Suddenly, a voice sliced through the air, asking if she was the new hire. Looking up, she saw the signature raven hair and the prestigious crest of House Briol glaring back at her. "What's your business here?" the prince demanded. Swallowing her panic, she took a shaky breath, trying to summon a coherent response. He repeated the question as she frantically recalled her training. Rule 1, if he looks totally bored and stoic, that's the king. Rule 2, the crown prince is always warm and welcoming. Rule 3, cunning eyes and silent footsteps usually mean. But suddenly, the prince's temper flared. "Are you ghosting me?" That's when it clicked. This was definitely the infamous third prince, and she blurted it out. She stuttered that she had business nearby. He blinked, confused. "Yeah, the third prince. What about it? Do you have no manners? Or am I just on your avoid at all costs list?" The maid trembled, fearing the worst. He declared he'd teach her a lesson she'd never forget. But then a familiar voice cut in, asking what he was doing. Both spun around in surprise. Standing there was a man with a sharp, confident gaze, his hand never far from his blade. Yuri stepped forward with a grin. "Are you really picking on her?" After that little encounter, time skipped forward. Yuri strolled through the royal gardens, munching on cookies. Suddenly, a memory of a past chat with his brother resurfaced. His brother had grilled him for teasing the staff. Yuri denied it loudly, but the maid just smiled and thanked him. He offered her a small gift as a thank you. In return, she handed him the most heavenly cookie imaginable. Dusting the crumbs off his hands, he contemplated his progress. He had finally reached the absolute peak of his current form. By channeling mana through his hands, he could finally swing his blade without shredding his muscles. He'd made incredible strides these past years. Half a decade had vanished since Roland ended his first life. Now, the peaceful days of this regression were fading fast. He felt it. The lords were likely debating the coming storm right now. Heated shouting echoed through the palace corridors. A frustrated voice roared, demanding to know if their words were being ignored. Yuri neared the chambers and knocked, but the yelling inside drowned him out completely. He stood there silently, waiting. One guard whispered that the nobles were probably too busy screaming at each other to notice a simple knock. Yuri's knuckles whitened. The servant suggested that maybe a louder knock would do the trick. That's when it happened. Before the servant could finish, Yuri smashed the door with monstrous force, reducing the heavy wood to mere splinters. He stepped inside as the room fell deathly silent from the explosion. "Sorry, I guess I knocked a bit too hard," he said coolly. Since nobody answered, he added. A knight dropped to his knees, trembling, stammering that this wasn't a knock, it was a crime. Yuri faced his father casually, asking to join the fun. Fiore gave a slight nod, and Yuri took his seat. The meeting resumed. A duke complained that their military was spread too thin to provide any support to the Allied front. So, they challenged, "Are you suggesting we just ghost the Empire's urgent request? Then another house will just send more men. That's reckless." While the nobles barked and bickered, Yuri saw right through their blatant greed. It all traced back to that specific moment. The call for reinforcements. The Empire drafted allies from every corner to purge the orcs in the east, but the trap snapped shut. Enraged orcs flooded across every border except for the Empire's. The betrayal became clear. Great knights were slaughtered, including the Lianas. But this time, Yuri wouldn't let history repeat. A duke barked that they weren't sending a single soul. Another spat back, asking if he really thought their knights were just lounging around doing nothing. Yuri's voice cut through the noise. Enough, he was going. He'd join the Allied front himself. To uphold the Briol legacy, true nobility had to act. Dior watched him wearing a cryptic smile. So that was his play. Later at the arena, Yuri buried himself in combat and grueling training. His brother approached, waving frantically. "Are you seriously heading to the front lines, Yuri?" "Yes," he stated firmly. His brother frowned. "But why royals don't need to bleed for this?" "It's our duty," Yuri countered. His brother went silent, finally sensing Yuri's unshakable conviction. "I get it now," he whispered, clutching his chest. "Just come back to us in one piece. I'll hold down the palace." As he hurried away, Bernard watched the touching exchange. Quite the bond, he mused. Yuri sighed, hoping his brother stayed out of trouble. Worried, Yuri asked. The swordsman shrugged. "You'll be fine if you don't do anything reckless." Yuri grinned at his optimism, but Bernard's face darkened. "Be careful. Orcs aren't just beasts. They're stronger and more savage than you realize, especially the ones carrying those war flags. The Orkvals, pure, bloodthirsty monsters. Yuri didn't flinch. Don't sweat it. I've got this. I can handle it. Bernard hesitated. You have a plan. Suddenly, Ina burst through the doors. Your Highness, she gasped, struggling for air. A guest is here with your requested items. Yuri turned a smug grin playing on his lips. A plan. Oh, I definitely have one. A very special one. He locked eyes with Bernard, brimming with absolute certainty. Shortly after, Guillermo sat tensely at the table. He sipped his drink until Yuri entered. He stood instantly adjusting his suit. Greetings, Your Highness. Vice Master of the Ilian Guild reporting. Yuri sat down. How is Ilian Guillermo's side? She's traveling again, so I'm here instead. Still alone. Tell her to hire a carriage. She shouldn't be wandering the roads like that. You know her. She prefers the solo path. He placed a heavy chest on the table. Is this what you were hunting for? Yuri smirked. Guillermo laughed, shaking his head. We found everything you asked for. Yuri opened the lid, his eyes gleaming. Excellent work, Guillermo. There it was. The legendary sword of the four paths. Guillermo watched him curiously. Is that really worth the trouble, Prince? They look like fancy decorative daggers. Yuri gripped one blade. Looks can be deceiving. He channeled ancient magic into the artifact. Suddenly, Guillermo jumped back in shock. The sword. It's moving on its own. Yuri chuckled. Relax, you're safe. Mana manipulation is a useful trick, isn't it? I had no idea you were this powerful. Yuri crossed his arms, looking bored. Did you think I was just sitting around? Wait. Yuri's gaze suddenly shifted in surprise. It's nothing. Send my thanks to Ilian and keep me updated on our progress. At the branch office next time, Diego bowed low. Understood. I'll take my leave. As soon as the door clicked shut, Yuri leaned back. You can come out now. Asana dissolved from the shadows behind him. What's the word on Goryo? I gave him the warning you ordered. She pulled off her mask, left a note on his pillow. While he slept, Yuri smiled coldly. Perfect. He's still trying to steal from Ilian. Asana hesitated. Your Highness, are you truly going to join the Allied forces? Understood, he muttered, as she offered a cold warning. To him, she sounded completely indifferent. She blinked in confusion. Pack your bags, he smirked. Unless you plan on eating my dust. A thin smile touched her lips. Whatever the cost, this path beat her miserable past life. Perfect. Stay tuned, he said. Suddenly, she dissolved into the shadows, leaving nothing behind. Gone without a trace. Departure day arrived, finding Yuri tightening the straps of his battle-worn armor. Watch your back, Yuri, his brother cautioned. The young prince just flashed a confident grin. Relax, Yuri reassured him. I'm unstoppable, and I'll make the Briol name legendary across the land. He teased his brother to close the books for once, warning him not to ruin his eyesight. Chuckling, his brother nodded and pulled Yuri into a tight embrace. Come back in one piece. Count on it, Yuri promised. Suddenly, the deep blast of a war horn shattered the silence. Fiore took the stage, his voice booming as he officially kicked off the grand departure ceremony. Ascending the dais, Yuri asked if he was nervous. Not quite, Fiore replied. Now, turn around. Yuri gasped at the sea of steel behind him. Every single man you see, his father began, is a life now resting in your hands. Yuri closed his eyes, feeling the crushing weight. He swore they'd return home. He wouldn't let them march toward the same slaughter he once faced. Unlike his tragic past life, he'd protect them. You ready for this? Fiore asked. Yuri nodded firmly. Then prove it. Fiore barked suddenly, unleashing a tidal wave of suffocating raw power. Lethal intent. Yuri froze his body, paralyzed, as the cold shadow of death loomed over him. Dodging was useless. Desperate Yuri channeled his aura into his blade and threw up a defense. Clang, he stopped the strike cold. Fiore smirked, impressed. His son hadn't buckled under the pressure. Yuri stared at his trembling hilt. This trial was his father's way of saying goodbye the warrior's way. No more talk was needed. Survival was the only option. Understood, Yuri shouted, turning to the troops. Thrusting his sword high, he roared, I am Yuri Briol. Put your faith in your prince. March 4th, the army erupted into a thunderous roar, steel clashing against shields in a deafening salute. Deep in the dungeons, a caged orc howled in rage. Hein Theodore stepped out of the shadows. 5 years later, and we finally meet again, Prince Yuri Hein whispered. Meanwhile, the squad halted for rest. Yuri downed some water, wiping his chin as he stood. We've covered some serious ground, he noted. Raymond position. The knight checked the parchment. We're currently crossing into the Sindor region, Your Highness. A few more miles to the border, then through Gid, before hitting the Balshad assembly point. Yuri nodded. They were making incredible time, pushing toward their destination faster than expected. Absolutely, Raymond agreed. Suddenly, a voice called out, and Yuri turned to see a familiar face. The knight looked guilt-ridden. Laurent Flandre Yuri thought darkly. The moron who ended my last life. The Margrave's firstborn dropped to one knee. Meeting you is the greatest honor of my life. Roland, is it? Yuri blinked, caught off guard. The pleasure is all mine, I suppose. Pressing a hand to his heart, the knight admitted he'd been dying to tell Yuri something. Go on, Yuri prompted. The knight's eyes sparkled with pure, unadulterated admiration. I admire you. Wait, what? Yuri stammered. The knight explained he'd heard a story from his father 5 years ago. Since that day 5 years ago, Yuri had become his absolute idol, a hero in his eyes. Protecting that maid showed me what a real knight looks like. He beamed with pure joy. Yuri pulled him up internally, screaming. Right. I've heard things about you too. Good things. Let's work well together. Sir, yes, sir, the knight yelled. Raymond eventually stepped in to interrupt. We need to move, Prince Raymond urged. Yuri agreed, but then received a grim warning. Duke Xandor isn't exactly the welcome with open arms type. He's notoriously cold and inhospitable. Don't take his attitude personally. Shortly after, the massive spires of the palace loomed before them. Welcome, Third Prince soldiers stood in perfect formation. Yuri smirked. Talk about a warm welcome. Hema bowed deeply. He has arrived, Your Highness. At that moment, our protagonist gracefully dismounted from his horse. Thanking him for the warm welcome, Hema noted they were simply honoring someone so young. Despite his age, he was heading to the front lines. Had he ever faced an orc before? Closing his eyes, the prince admitted he hadn't. All his knowledge came from books and scrolls. Turning around, he added that since most soldiers were rookies, he'd have to train them personally. Hema smirked. Very good, Your Highness. He bowed again, sensing the prince's growing resolve. Would you accept a small token? Soon they stopped before a heavy door which the knight unlocked. Cracking the door open, Haim stepped into the darkness with a torch. It's waiting inside, Your Highness. As they entered, the heavy door slammed shut. The prince wondered what Jaime was up to. Jaime set the torch down, urging him not to be shocked. Suddenly the soldiers shrieked in terror. An orc Jaime called it a prisoner, explaining they needed to study its every instinct to survive. They had to learn everything for the upcoming slaughter. The prince asked if this was his gift. Jaime nodded. With a massive battle looming, what better way to prepare than a live specimen? Smiling, the prince thanked him. This was crazier than he imagined, a captive orc as a training tool. He noticed a knight's face twisted in disgust, and asked for the young man's name. He was Simon Reshu, son of Baron Wolf. The prince demanded to know what he was thinking. Simon argued this was too much. In his eyes, even a prisoner of war deserved some dignity. The prince scoffed at his idealism. Open the door, Jaime, he commanded, his voice cold as ice. Confirming Simon's name one last time, the prince prepared the young knight for a brutal wake-up call. Now you'll experience a real fight. Face the beast, the prince declared with a sharp glare. The orc limped out. Simon stood his ground, leveling his weapon at the seemingly broken creature. The beast wailed pathetically, banging its head against the stone floor. Simon watched, completely confused. This is ridiculous, Simon yelled. He refused to strike an enemy who had clearly lost his spirit. He turned his back, but the orc instantly snapped into action, delivering a devastating punch to Simon's head. His helmet shattered. Before anyone could react, the orc's massive hand clamped onto Simon's skull. The knights panicked, drawing their blades, but Hema stepped forward, signaling them to stand down. His tendons are cut, but he's still a killer, Jaime warned. 1 second of weakness is all they need. We have to save him, Your Highness, a knight screamed, desperate to intervene. Hema remained calm. The orc was too crippled to finish him yet, but the lesson was clear. The orc tightened his grip. Hostage situation, the prince mused. Hema called for a translator immediately. Corey stepped out from the shadows. The prince narrowed his eyes, surprised to see him there. Corey nodded. He covered his ears, preparing to relay the orc's brutal demands to the group. If they didn't drop their weapons, the orc would snap the knight's bones like twigs. Simon screamed. Hernando, handle this, the prince ordered. Hernando stepped up, mana swirling around his fingertips. He unleashed his energy, binding the orc's limbs in a magical grip. Now, strike, while he's restrained. The prince lunged forward, snatching Simon from the beast's clutches. The orc roared in pure frustration. This isn't just some random orc, is it? The prince asked, eyeing the monster's scarred skin. Jaime confirmed it. This runt was a seasoned killer who had devoured knights whole in the past. A knight shouted that the beast would kill them all, regardless of being a prisoner. The prince stepped in, telling them to stay cool. Your Highness, the knight stammered. He wasn't stopping them. He was warning them. Enemies are always waiting for a single opening. The foes they'd face were far more wicked. This was a survival lesson. Focus or die. Training resumed. The knights advanced their weapons, humming with lethal energy as they surrounded the beast. The orc hurled a torch, but Hernando instantly erected a shimmering barrier to block the flames. Raymond charged his blade, biting deep into the orc's shoulder. The monster collapsed, gasping for air. The beast lunged, its massive arms blurring in a lethal sweeping arc. Steel met flesh as the knight parried with cold precision. Simon's gaze locked onto the blade buried deep within the monster. A sharp clap echoed. Superb, the protagonist noted. Though his eyes remained hollow, this was merely a warm-up. The foe was annihilated before it could even blink. Brutal as it was, this drill was their only hope. In a real war with the orc hordes, these skills were life-saving. Every soldier owed their life to Sir Jaime. Clutching his chest, Jaime's voice grew heavy. Forget your chivalry and knightly honor for a moment, he warned. Monsters like these don't deserve mercy. He gestured for them to follow, leading them deeper into the darkness. These puppets are nothing compared to the real deal. The true horrors lie within the heart of the orc strongholds. Throwing the heavy doors wide, he spoke solemnly. Bear witness to the true price of war and orcish cruelty. The protagonist's eyes narrowed as reality set in. Beside him, a knight gasped in pure horror. Gods. They're half-orcs. Chained and broken, the hybrids reached out with trembling hands. The protagonist realized the scale of this tragedy was staggering. Years of suffering had birthed these abominations. The orcs had used humans as nothing more than disposable playthings. These creatures were the living scars of orcish brutality. Sickened by the sight, Simon fled the room, barely containing his bile. His hatred runs deep, doesn't it? The protagonist mused. Jaime's gaze remained fixed. Until my very last breath, he vowed. They retreated from the grim chamber, the protagonist's hand instinctively tightening around the hilt of his blade. He appeared eerily composed, as if chaos was his natural habitat. Every man carries a grudge against a sworn foe. For Jaime, it was the orcs who shattered his world. Rumors whispered he had discovered his own son's mangled corpse. That gruesome scene was etched into his soul forever, a haunting mirror to the protagonist's own dark past. The image of his falling kingdom never faded. At dawn's first light, he stood beyond the city walls, ready. Jaime stepped forward, requesting to join the march. He then gestured toward a man named Corey, standing nearby. I recognize him from the dungeons, the protagonist noted. Jaime nodded. This is Corey. A subtle smirk touched the hero's lips. A man who speaks the tongue of the enemy is worth his weight in gold, he praised. Corey bowed low. My lord. Corey opened his mouth to explain, but the protagonist raised a hand, silencing him instantly. Save your breath, he commanded. I already know. Corey's eyes widened in shock. Jaime stepped in, acknowledging the unspoken fear clouding the man's heart. There's no need for anxiety. Handing over a glove, Jaime promised that total honesty would be the foundation of their pact. He hoped for a powerful alliance. Corey stammered, overwhelmed by the gift's value, but the protagonist suddenly barked. Sir Raymond? Raymond hurried over. Are we pushing straight for the border? He asked. The answer was a firm, indeed we are. Monster swarms infest the perimeter, but they won't stop us. The protagonist closed his eyes, his voice turning ice cold. No, you misunderstand. Those beasts are just as dangerous as the orcs. We aren't passing them, we're hunting them down. Suddenly, the caravan screeched to a halt as bandits swarmed the road. Their leader unsheathed his blade with a murderous grin. The bandit struck without mercy, cutting down merchants where they stood. Undeterred, the protagonist led his squad into the fray. He knew the truth was a ticking time bomb. If the men realized Corey was a half-orc, chaos would erupt. With Hernando keeping a watchful eye, the risk was manageable. He turned his focus back to the weathered map in his hands. He signaled for his lieutenant. Jared, over here. The soldier galloped forward, eyes locking onto the marked terrain. You're leading the scouts now, the protagonist declared. Follow my coordinates and don't miss a single detail. Scouting. But sir, that area is crawling with monster hordes. Jared's face paled at the suicidal nature of the mission. They'll scatter the moment they see us coming, Jared argued. But the hero's gaze was unwavering. Then we'll hunt them down. They're choking our trade routes. Are you questioning the order, or is your courage starting to fail you? The rest of the men are jittery. Only a warrior of your caliber can handle the pressure of this vanguard duty. Despite his youth, his swordplay was divine. This was the ultimate test. Could a genius survive where common soldiers fell? Without another word, Jared spurred his horse forward, shouting his resolve. The protagonist watched him go with a knowing smirk. You're surprisingly soft on the boy, Raymond remarked, pulling up alongside him. The hero raised an eyebrow. Is that how it seems? He's just useful to have around. His expression shifted to one of rare seriousness. Tell me something, Sir Raymond. I have a rather cliché question for you. Raymond nodded curiously. In this godforsaken world, what is it you're fighting for? Raymond's eyes widened. A bittersweet smile touched his lips. It's been an eternity since anyone asked me that. Raymond offered a timeless vow. He was listening, but his heart was set on one thing. Briole's safety. Our MC blinked in shock before smirking. Decent answer, he mused. Then he barked. Squad, listen up. Don't fall back, he commanded, bolting forward to find Jared. Cut to the camp where things were heating up. A bound bandit hit the dirt hard. Our lead stepped into his space, whispering, Zip it, unless you've got a death wish. He let the cold steel of his blade do the talking. Simultaneously, Raymond scanned the horizon through his lens. Highness, we've located the rat's nest, Raymond reported. Our MC just gave a satisfied nod. Good man. Seems this kid was on a solo patrol. He stammered that his boss sent him out alone. Yeah, totally, he quivered. He's just a low-level grunt with zero intel. But then a flash of light caught our hero's eye. He yanked a pendant off the kid's neck, inspecting the shine. Spill it. What's this piece of jewelry? Not mine, the boy squealed. Apparently the boss makes everyone wear them during guard duty. Sus right. Gripping his hilt, our lead sensed something off. This reeks of magic. What kind of curse is baked into this artifact? The bandit wailed, swearing ignorance. Our hero sighed. Typical. Guess I'll have to find the answers myself. Time to hunt the big fish. As twilight painted the sky in hues of orange and shadow, our MC was staked out in the brush, eyes glued to the camp. That's when Jared galloped up, breathless. "Prince, we've cut off their escape routes just like you planned," he reported, pride in his voice. "Scouts were already gauging the enemy's power. If you stir the hornet's nest, your highness, we'll sweep up the trash, right?" Jared blinked, totally caught off guard. "Wait, what do you mean?" He vaulted onto his mount. "Move out. If we're late, the fun's over." Jared could only stare in disbelief. "Your highness, hold up. Going solo is straight up suicide," Jared pleaded, trying to stop the madness. But our MC just roared charge. He tore into the camp, sending bandits scrambling from their tents like ants. They were wondering what the ruckus was. One guy looked up only to see a nightmare on horseback. Our hero charged his blade, a blur of steel, as he shattered their table before skidding to a halt. "Evening, fellas. Room for one more," he smirked. By nightfall, Jared and the knights finally caught up. "Your highness," Jared screamed, only to find our MC literally chilling on top of the pinned bandit leader. Sitting by the fire, he noted their tardiness. Jared begged him to stop these dangerous solo stunts. "Then keep up," he joked. "Raymond, any runners? All neutralized, sir," came the crisp reply. "0 casualties, a perfect run." Grinning, he stood up. "Perfect, let's raid their pantry and start the feast." He grabbed a skewer, but Jared wrinkled his nose. "That smell. Are you sure about this?" "You've got no taste, Jared. This is gourmet. We camp here tonight and move at dawn. Plan set." While the bandit leader groaned, Raymond stepped forward. "Sir, a quick heads up on our route. We're hitting Gid next, the final stop before reaching Bolshad and the main allied army. Expect company. Another nation's military is taking the same path. We're bound to cross paths." Our lead's interest peaked. He glanced at the captive. "Oh, and who are we playing nice with?" "The Holy Kingdom," Raymond answered. Our hero mused, the land of divine scripts and prayers. If we play our cards right, their healers could be a huge asset to our squad's recovery. Raymond shook his head. "It's not that simple. Word is, the Holy Princess herself is leading them. She's the new commander. Rumor has it she's desperate for a win after failing to secure the throne. She needs a victory to save her reputation. A cornered princess is unpredictable and dangerous." "A holy princess, huh?" he murmured. "Should I dig up more dirt on her?" Raymond offered. "Don't bother. I'll size her up myself." Fast forward to the Allied assembly point, a massive hub. Gid was a sprawling fortress city, acting as the lifeline and supply hub for the entire coalition. "Keep your heads down," Raymond warned. "Gid doesn't play around with rule breakers. Break their laws and you'll face their local justice. This city is a law unto itself." Our MC nodded. "Make sure our boys are on their best behavior before we pass those gates." "Understood, sir." With the city walls looming ahead, the squad took a final moment to prep. After ensuring his troops were battle-ready, the prince decided it was finally time to pay the lord a visit. With a respectful grin, Philip reached out, declaring it a massive honor to host Prince Brioli. Yuri met his grasp. Yuri expressed his thanks for the warm welcome. Briol returned the gratitude for the backup, but Yuri just shrugged it off. Assisting the alliance was a given. After all, King Briol had built his legend as a young warrior by slaughtering orcs. Those monsters better start running now that he has arrived. Smirking, Yuri strolled over and made himself comfortable on the couch. He promised to go all out. Suddenly, a soldier interrupted, catching the lord's attention with an urgent look. A quick whisper later, Philip turned back, announcing that the Princess of the Holy Kingdom had just graced them with her presence. "Want an audience?" Philip asked. Yuri nodded without hesitation. Moments later, Sybil Arsen stepped into the room. Standing to greet her, Philip welcomed the second princess. Sybil marched forward with a regal air, formally introducing herself. The lord bowed, praising the honor of her visit. Then Sybil shifted her icy gaze toward Yuri and spoke. "Is this man your servant?" she asked. Yuri stared back, stunned. She demanded privacy to discuss official business with the lord. She signaled for him to beat it. The lord tried to intervene awkwardly, but the words died in his throat. Her knight barked, "Know your place. The princess is talking. How dare you remain seated in her presence?" "You should show some respect," the knight hissed. But Yuri calmly dropped a bombshell. He was the third prince of Briol. Everyone froze. A painful, heavy silence filled the air as the knights looked on in pure shock. "I am also leading the Briol army," Yuri added. The knight turned pale, stammering in terror while Yuri just facepalmed. "My bad," Yuri sighed. "I really should have picked out a better outfit for a royal meeting." He currently looked more like a drifter than royalty. The terrified knights hit the floor, begging for their lives after that massive blunder. "Please forgive our ignorance, Prince," they wailed. Later, Yuri couldn't help but ask, "Do I seriously look that sketchy?" Sybil set her teacup down with a light giggle. "Not quite," she teased, offering a soft apology for the misunderstanding. Yuri flashed a grin, suggesting a fresh start. "Let's try this again. I am Yuri Brioli, the third prince." She took his hand, finally acknowledging him. Then, without skipping a beat, Yuri casually asked for her age. Sybil revealed she was 20. Since Yuri was 18, he declared they were basically the same age, making them instant friends. "We can skip the royal titles then." Nice to meet you, Sybil, he chirped. She just stared, completely caught off guard. Perfect, he added. Having a powerful ally before the Orc War is a huge win. We are good, right? Right, Sybil, he pressed. She nodded hesitantly, still trying to process his incredibly casual vibe. Yuri noted the lack of soldiers on his way in. Sybil confirmed she was just the vanguard. The main army arrives tomorrow. Hope they make it safely, Yuri remarked. Sybil frowned, boasting that the Holy Kingdom's strict discipline left no room for failure. Are you doubting us? She asked. Yuri shook his head, clarifying that his concern was the chaos brewing outside the walls. Orcs have been straying from their territories lately. Don't be fooled by their bulk. Those monsters are masters of the ambush. Philip chimed in with a grim smile, agreeing that orcs were far more cunning and dangerous than they looked. Still, with the Holy Kingdom's elite on the move, things should be fine, but he warned her to stay sharp. Their eyes locked. Later, as they strolled through the city, Hernando curiously asked what Yuri thought of the Holy Kingdom's legendary knights. Total dinosaurs? Yuri joked. The princess must be exhausted dealing with such stiffnecks. Hernando went quiet, thinking it over. Find anything impressive about her, Hernando nudged. Yuri gave a mysterious smile. Maybe he teased. Pulling a pendant from his pocket, Yuri double-checked if this was the right place. Hernando nodded firmly. This was the spot. This sketchy shop was the only place that would stock such a rare item. Hernando stood by his previous claim. It was the perfect bait. One whiff of this pendant scent, and every orc in the vicinity would lose their minds. They would launch a suicidal assault on whoever held it. It was a potent artifact, though its power felt a bit overkill. Hernando cut him off, worrying the item was too fragile to actually survive the heat of a real battle. The shopkeeper glared at them for insulting the merchandise, so Hernando stepped in to smooth things over. He scanned the shelves, claiming they must be out of stock. Yuri sighed, acting disappointed that the chance was gone. Suddenly, a loud shout rang out. Your Highness, Hernando yelled, pointing frantically toward a nearby tavern. I think our men are in there gambling, he cried. Yuri's eyes widened. The Brial soldiers are doing what? No way he was letting that slide. Yuri stormed toward the bar, muttering that a real army does not waste time on dice. Amidst the internal disgrace, Nando chimed in. Precisely, Your Highness. Fennec cornered Sybil, asking if the meeting was a success. She gave a curt nod. Rumors say Briol's third prince is shady. As the deputy captain Fennec sneered. A leader, please. Briol's knightly reputation is ancient history, he scoffed. Sybil frowned. Watch your tongue, she warned. But he pointed at the prince's ragged mercenary-like attire. The guy acts like a thug. Once these orcs are dead, Briol loses a prince. He grinned maliciously until Sybil snapped. Enough, stop this chatter. He gave a mocking bow. Are the main forces secure, she pressed. Totally safe, princess. Don't sweat it, he replied. I'll handle the patrol, he added. Sybil watched him go, letting out a heavy sigh. Later, Fennec stormed the tavern. Who's this? Someone asked. Just some Briol grunts, he spat. Fennec fumed. Commoners inside the city. The sheer lack of discipline was absolutely infuriating. Are they gambling? Do they even know the military code? His subordinate muttered behind him. They're mirrors of their captain. Fennec snarled. Unforgivable. I won't stand for this disrespect. He roared. What is this? A playground. Even if it wasn't his unit, it disgusted him. He couldn't ignore this trashy behavior. Pointing a finger, he unleashed a wave of rage. You think this is a joke? Suddenly, a firm hand gripped his shoulder. The MC spoke. Run that by me again, and you are. Fennec slapped the hand away, his lip curling. Your Highness, this pathetic display shames your title and every soldier under your command. Shouldn't you be gripping a blade instead of cards? Or can you even fight? The MC chuckled. Knight was it? Tell me, do holy knights ever learn about hierarchy? He demanded answers. Just then, Sybil swept in her presence, silencing the rising tension. What's the commotion, Fennec? Patrol now. Rebuked, he bowed and retreated out of sight. After the knights cleared out, Sybil turned to the prince with a deep, apologetic sigh. I'm sorry for his behavior. The MC offered a chill grin. Don't sweat it. Managing hotheads is exhausting. At the door, she glanced back. I'll repay this debt later. Sure, later. Suddenly, Raymond's warning flashed through the MC's mind like a premonition. She was desperate to prove herself after that power struggle. So that's the deal, he mused. Shrugging it off, he shoved his hands in his pockets. He headed back to his crew. Ready for round two, he laughed. I'm up first, a soldier cheered. The vibes were peak. Outside, Fennec watched Sybil, his irritation peaking. Is she really getting cozy with him? Is it a crime? She shot back. Fennec grumbled. Princess, that man has zero dignity. Suddenly, a scout sprinted toward them, his face pale. Princess Sir Fennec, urgent news. He scrambled off his horse, dropping to one knee. Forgive the interruption, but this is critical. A frantic message arrived. Sybil stiffened. Speak. The main force, they're under orc ambush. Shock hit them like a physical blow. Sybil mounted up instantly as Philip hurried over. Deployment now. Pardon my boldness, Princess, but you need to reconsider this move. Shouldn't we call Briol? To minimize casualties, they're our best shot. Sybil remained silent. Fennec rode up his face, flushed with rage. What kind of nonsense are you spewing? Holy Kingdom matters are for our knights alone. You think we'd lose to mere orcs? Philip backtracked, but Sybil interjected calmly. I appreciate the concern, but our pride stands. We'll handle this. Advance, she commanded. Philip watched their dust trails with a heavy heart. Roy sighed. Those holy knights are insanely stubborn, especially that deputy captain of theirs. Ride to the Briolle barracks. Find the third prince now, Philip barked. Roy bolted instantly. Time was a luxury they didn't have. Later, Raymond found the MC looking visibly shaken. Your Highness, look at this, he gripped a letter. The Holy Kingdom's main force, their toast. Orcs had launched a brutal assault. The Lord's plea was urgent, clear the area alongside the Allied forces. Raymond spoke up. Wait, is this GID's call? Or the Holy Kingdom's? Yuri's thoughts drifted back to Fennec. He knew those guys were incredibly thick-headed. So Raymond prepped for immediate deployment. Raymond saluted with a crisp nod. Yuri eyed the knight nearby. What's your name, Roy, your Highness? Roy, get to the tavern by the amulet shop. Mobilize the Knights of Briolle. Tell them only the first 10 make the cut. We need to move yesterday. On it, Roy mounted his horse and vanished into the night. Yuri tossed the letter onto the table. He dusted his palms. Looks like we're pulling a late-night ride. The squad galloped out. Yuri glanced back. Are we actually awake or just sleep riding? Wide awake, sir, came the roar. Only Jared looked like a total zombie face, pale as bone. I'm fine, sir, he insisted. Suddenly, Laurent pulled up. Your Highness, what's up, Laurent? I'm in awe of you, Laurent sighed. You didn't just forgive those arrogant holy knights. You're actually rushing to save them. Your kindness is next level, unlike those petty fools. Your Majesty truly sees the grand strategy, while others just focus on their own egos. Yuri gave a strained smile. It's not that deep. Laurent had always been a bit of a fanboy. Your loyalty is top-tier knight, Yuri thought. Man, he really wasn't the same guy he used to be. It felt surreal. He'd changed so much. Sensing the praise, the knight shouted his gratitude at the top of his lungs. I guess I'm a good influence, Yuri smirked. Suddenly, a scout screamed Prince. There they are, he pointed. The holy knights were pinned down. Yuri growled. Listen up. This is your first dance with orcs. I'm the first one in and the last one out. Third, Prince Yuri orders you. Don't you dare die. He flared his aura and spurred his horse into a gallop. Meanwhile, Sybil was drowning in regret. She'd been too reckless. The ambush was a total disaster. Yuri's warning echoed in her head. She should have been more careful. Glaring forward, she barked. Keep swinging. We're still in this, she charged, relieved to see the line hadn't broken yet. Sir Fennec, we're sniping the commander. Understood. Tighten the formation, he roared. They surged forward like a spear. Sybil clutched her holy cross, her heart racing. God, your servants are terrified. Give us strength. Instantly, white-hot energy erupted from her body. Push through, she screamed, only to freeze. Skeletons were clawing their way out of the dirt. Glowing eyes pierced the dark as a massive magic circle ignited. In a heartbeat, the ground gave way. It's a trap, Sybil shrieked, as knights and horses plummeted into the abyss. No, she wailed. Had she failed again, everyone had put their faith in her. Ever since her powers awakened as a kid, she'd trained like a demon just to meet their expectations. But after crushing her brother in a duel, she realized her talent was actually her greatest curse. Sybil joined the alliance. It's God's will, they'd told her. What a lie. Her brother just wanted her gone so he could snatch the throne. He'd patted her head, claiming her soul would find peace in heaven if she died fighting. In the pit, she hissed, damn it. Her hands shook as she gripped her blade. He just wanted me dead. Around her, knights struggled to stand. Regroup now, she ordered, but then she felt something slick on her skin. Is this oil? Her blood ran cold. Looking up, she saw orcs lining the rim with torches. One orc reared back to throw. An ambush, then a fire trap. How was she supposed to survive this? She closed her eyes, wondering if her life was just a joke. Then a roar, Sybil, open your eyes. An orc's head spun through the air. Yuri stood there, torch in hand. Is asking for help really that hard? He tossed down a rope and hauled her out. I owe you everything, she stammered. Don't mention it, he shrugged. As she stood, Fennec rushed over. Your Highness, Deputy Captain Fennec of the Holy Knights. Humbly greets the third prince. Forgive my disrespect at the bar. I'll never forget this moment. With a sharp smirk, he accepts the truce. Now the Holy Kingdom better keep Brielle safe if things get ugly. Suddenly, a war horn pierces the air. Steel rings as he reflexively reaches for his blade. They're falling back. Their goal wasn't a massacre today. Don't let them go, the Holy Knights scream. Seal their escape, the soldiers roar. Amidst the chaos, Yuri stares intensely at the path ahead. It's Orkval. A towering mountain of an orc emerges, and Sybil instantly pales at Yuri's chilling reaction. What's wrong? She gasps. But Orkval is already aiming, launching an arrow surging with devastating mana. Yuri focuses his aura. With a single explosive swing, he cleaves the magical projectile clean in half. Seems the commander is triggered. Time to give him an answer, he thinks, shouldering his sword with a grin. He channels his energy, promising a swift return. Sybil reaches out, her voice trembling behind him. Yuri, wait, you aren't going in alone, right? Before she can finish, he's already a blur of motion. Spears rain down as he charges the horde. His eyes track every incoming point with lethal cold precision. This feels familiar. 5 years ago, Bernard taught him the secrets of the heart and soul strike. Combat is a storm of variables. The environment, the ground beneath you, everything matters in a fight. Normal training just boosts your counterattack odds. But the heart and soul technique, that's next level. It grants instant spatial mastery, finding the one perfect opening amidst the absolute chaos of battle. It transforms instinct into flawless swordsmanship. Back then, Yuri just wanted the simple version of the truth. Bernard told him that when the time was right, he wouldn't need words. He would just know. His body would react naturally, becoming a living weapon designed for the most efficient kills imaginable. In the present, he weaves through a hail of spears, jumping high to dodge a lethal strike. He swings his blade in a wide arc, unleashing a whirlwind of steel upon the orc pack. The forest echoes with the monster's dying screams as he carves a bloody path through their ranks. 3 more, close in. A head-on clash is risky, but his blood is finally starting to boil. He's missed this rush. Suddenly, the lines of fate appear on the orcs' bodies, the perfect kill paths. There it is, the ultimate counter. He strikes with surgical precision, dropping the first beast instantly. 2 more fall in a heartbeat. His physical body is still struggling to keep up with his true power. Orc-Val, he bellows, snatching a fallen spear and locking eyes with the massive orc commander. He hurls the spear with soul-crushing force. Orc-Val barely manages to intercept it with his heavy axes. The spear is deflected, and the orcs growl in fury. Orc-Val barks a command, his eyes burning. They're retreating, the losses are too high. Consider that arrow debt paid. Yuri smirks, watching them go. Sybil sprints toward him, her face full of worry. Yuri, are you hurt? Talk to me. He turns with a relaxed smile. I'm fine. Looks like the trash took itself out. First win for the Alliance, Sybil. Not bad, right? She nods, her eyes shining with pure gratitude. Meanwhile, deep in the shadows of the forest, a humiliated Orc-Val smashes a tree in pure rage. Back at the camp, the knights are buzzing. Is it true? Did he really do that? Jared slams his drink down. His Highness is a total legend, he shouts, recalling the prince's bravery. It's hard to believe. Rumors always said Prince Yuri was just a weakling who gambled his life away. But Roland scoffs at the gossip. He knows the truth. Those rumors are absolute garbage. The prince carries the most potent bloodline in the entire kingdom. He's the real deal. Clutching his chest, his face flushed with booze and pride, he looks ready to fight anyone. No way I'm gonna tell you guys every single epic detail of what His Highness achieved. He's wasted. The others laugh. But nearby, Asana sits in silence, her mind spinning with questions. Yuri is no ordinary noble. He read her secret assassination techniques like they were a child's book. He charges into the heart of death and always comes out 3 steps ahead of everyone else. It's like he sees the future. She signals the innkeeper, her gaze sharp and focused. I'm looking for a man. Dark brown hair, a sword, and skills that shouldn't even be possible. Crossing his arms, the innkeeper drew a total blank. He noted the mystery man couldn't even speak the common tongue. He had a thick accent, he recalled. Suddenly it clicked and he snapped his fingers with a smirk. He couldn't confirm the brown hair, but remembered a guy with a weird accent ordering basic risotto. The traveler had asked for the route to Balshad. Asana tossed him a coin, nodding her gratitude for the intel. Chuckling, he snatched the coin. I wasn't begging, but since you're offering, I won't say no, he joked. Asana stared out the window. Balshad was the Allied staging ground. This mystery man was tracking the prince's exact path. They had to move. This Eastern Bladesman was one of the continent's 10 most legendary monsters. Briefing over, they pushed toward their goal. Even as darkness fell, they prepared to strike camp under the stars. Every detail was double-checked. They wouldn't repeat the horrific fate that decimated the Holy Kingdom's knights. Our hero walked up to Raymond impressed. Looks like the crew knows the drill, he remarked casually. He'd been stressing about micromanaging them, fearing he'd have to explain every single basic step from scratch. These men are veterans, Sir Raymond replied. Establishing a knight perimeter is second nature to them by now. Raymond deserved the credit. Nodding, the main character decided to scout the perimeter himself to ensure their safety. I'm leaving the troops in your hands, the prince declared, before disappearing into the thickening tree line. Stepping into the woods, he felt a chilling silence. Despite their numbers, a night ambush felt dangerously imminent. Suddenly, a harsh shout shattered the quiet. You little brat. He ducked behind the foliage to investigate. He spotted Corey kneeling, surrounded by aggressive knights. They were berating him for supposedly straying too far. As Corey wept, a knight sneered, "This kid's a rat. He's playing the prince just to spy on us." "That's a lie," Corey cried out. But the knight just snarled, grabbing him by the glove with sheer malice. "Like hell it is," the knight ripped off the glove. "I bet you swiped this expensive gear too." Corey begged for it back, insisting he wasn't a thief. The knight just smirked. "Then let's see how it breaks." Right then, the protagonist stepped out. "Mind telling me what's going on here?" His voice was ice cold. While the army works, you're playing games, the knight stammered. Your Highness, this brat is… I see exactly what's happening, he cut him off, his gaze sharp enough to draw blood. Get lost, now. Terrified, the knights barked a yes sir, and scrambled back to camp in a total panic. Squatting beside Corey, he checked for injuries. I'm okay. Thank you for saving me, Your Highness, Corey whispered. The prince offered a gentle smile, sitting comfortably on the grass beside the trembling boy. Want me to handle them for good? Corey shook his head. People just naturally flock to beauty, not this. Ugliness is rejected. Even if you shield me now, it won't change how the world truly sees me. Intervention just delays my goal. When asked about his dream, Corey confessed, I just want to be accepted. I want to belong. Corey looked down, hopeless. The protagonist sighed. Living as an equal was a near impossible wish. He was useful as a translator for now, but once the war ended, his sanctuary would vanish completely. Ruffling Corey's hair, the prince asked, You're training under Hernando, right? Corey gave a small, hesitant nod. Master magic. Unique skills are the only leverage you'll have to earn a place in human society. Under the rising moon, the prince sat in his tent, questioning their readiness for a potential midnight raid. Supplies are secured under flame-retardant tarps, Raymond reported, ensuring their rations wouldn't go up in smoke. We've also doubled the guards at the gates and barracks, Eric added, tightening their defense. Eric wondered if they were overdoing it. But the protagonist just pointed at the map, his expression grim. We're in orc territory now. Expect fire arrows, they love using the same lethal tricks from before. Just as he recalled the Holy Kingdom's defeat, a soldier burst in screaming, Your Highness, emergency. Orcs were under siege. The commanders vaulted over their seats and charged out into the chaos. The prince watched as flames licked the camp. His men were already locked in a desperate, bloody struggle. A barrel soared overhead, detonating in a blinding flash. Wait, are those savages actually using gunpowder? That's no powder, Hernando hissed, sensing the mana surge. This is high-level sorcery. They've gone too far. No time for talk. Hernando, can you counter this? The mage extended his hand, ready to unleash hell. They are likely lobbing mana-infused explosives at us. To end this chaos, we simply need to neutralize those orc throwers immediately. The protagonist's roar echoed across the field, ordering Jared and Sir Raymond to regain composure and lead their scattered units. While they held the line, he would hunt for the mastermind behind these deadly fireworks. Turning to Hernando, he demanded an answer. Where is that mana pulse coming from? Hernando pointed forward into the fray. Right there. With a sharp nod, the MC surged ahead. I will be back soon. He sprinted into the heart of the battle, eyes narrowing as he locked onto his target through the smoke. There stood Orcfall, his gaze burning with defiant resolve. The MC closed the distance, leveling his blade directly at the monster's throat. The orc met the strike with a heavy axe, the impact ringing through the air. Exhaling sharply, the protagonist leaped back to reset. This beast is terrifyingly strong. His movements are sharp, refined by 1,000 battles. He is definitely no ordinary grunt. He refuses to back down, but I need more space. A second later, Orcfall lunged his massive axe, whistling toward the hero's head. Our hero danced through the carnage, narrowly evading every lethal swing. He caught the final blow against his steel, with a grimace. Countering while retreating, he realized the truth. This opponent was on an entirely different level than the others. This orc was leagues above the trash he had fought previously. Fine then, he muttered. It is time to show him real power. He charged with his weapon extended. As Orcfall swung again, the sheer force of the axe pulverizing the earth beneath them. Mana control. The MC froze as a terrifying surge of raw energy suddenly enveloped the orc's massive, hulking frame. He should have realized this the moment he saw them using magic. If their mages are skilled, their elite warriors must be too. So you are an elite warrior. A dark smirk crossed his face before he roared a devastating command, Soul Rip. Glowing lines etched across Orcfall's body. The monster lunged with a brutal palm strike, but the MC's cold expression did not waver. He drove his blade straight toward the enemy's throat. Desperate Orcfall caught the sharp edge with his bare hand to stop the blow. The sword vibrated violently in his grip. The idiot concentrated mana in his neck to minimize the damage. He is actually smart. Howling something incoherent, the orc slid his hand along the blade. The MC pivoted, swinging his steel with everything he had left. Several fingers were severed instantly, but Orcfall countered with a desperate strike, carving a bloody furrow into the protagonist's shoulder. Wiping the blood away, he smiled. It seems weak attacks are useless against you. That means the games are officially over. He funneled every ounce of mana into his blade. Let us settle this at full strength. He braced himself for one final clash. Orcfall mirrored his stance. A heartbeat later, two titanic energies collided, sending a shockwave rippling across the entire battlefield. A blinding explosion tossed them both back. As the dust settled, the MC approached the kneeling orc, whose axe lay shattered. It is over. He plunged his sword through the monster's eye and stood triumphantly atop the fallen beast's massive chest. Stepping aside, he realized the warrior was still breathing. An elite like this knows too much. We cannot kill him just yet. Soldiers rushed to his side, shouting for his highness. They had finally managed to secure the camp's perimeter. The MC ignored the praise, demanding an update on the camp. A knight saluted, hand pressed firmly against his blood-stained armor. "The enemy is nearly wiped out, sir." "Excellent," he replied. "Round up every survivor. We are taking them all prisoner today, including this one. The study of these monsters starts now." With the battle won, they began the long march back to camp. Hernando immediately began treating the wound, nagging that the shoulder is the body's most vulnerable point and needs constant care. Yuri told him to stop his whining. She knew the MC's pride was likely hurting more than his actual shoulder right now. "So even the great hero can be beaten by an orc," she smirked, clearly enjoying the chance to bruise his ego. Hernando finally finished, relieved. The wound was not deep. The MC stretched his shoulder, letting out a satisfied grunt of approval. Just as he prepared to get to work, the mage stopped him. "Wait, Your Highness." He ordered the soldiers to bring something forward. The trio watched in total confusion as a luxurious, ornate chair was hauled out. Why would they need a throne here? The mage insisted he conduct the interrogation in style. He wiped his nose proudly, looking very satisfied with his grand idea. "A commander must always look the part. One of the soldiers was a carpenter, so we had him build this for you." A satisfied grin spread across the MC's face. "Well, since the work is done, I might as well enjoy the comfort." He sank into the soft seat, nodding in approval. "Not bad at all. Now it is time for some long overdue answers." He cleared his throat, regaining his regal composure. "Bring the prisoners in. Let the interrogation begin one by one." The session started brutally for the orcs. The first prisoner was unceremoniously shoved toward a bowl of searing, dancing flames. He screamed in pure agony as the soldiers threw him down. The other orcs watched their previous bravado turning into sheer terror. "You only get one chance to speak. Who ordered this night?" "Ambush." Yuri's voice was ice as an orc roared back furiously. Realizing he'd just accidentally insulted royalty, the translator panicked frantically, trying to reassure His Highness that everything was fine. He gave Jared the signal to finish it. Jared snatched the orc like a rag doll and dragged him toward the roaring flames. He plunged the creature's head into the searing embers, holding it there ruthlessly. Paralyzed with fear, the other orcs watched him suffer. They were just waiting for someone to snap. Jared finally tossed him aside, but unlike the first, this orc was completely broken. Channeling his mana, the youth coated his blade in swirling water, delivering a chilling ultimatum. They only got one chance to speak. Their honesty would decide if they lived or died. He drove the dagger home, the water instantly dousing the orc's burning flesh. He signaled Jared to pull the blade. Suddenly, an orc barked a desperate plea, prompting Yuri to demand a translation from Corey. Corey explained they were just low-level grunts, claiming ignorance, insisting that a leader named Orcfall was pulling all the strings. The coward begged them to punish Orcfall instead. Immediately, the orc standing right behind him started sweating bullets in pure panic. Bingo, he'd found Orcfall. The youth let out a dark, satisfied chuckle, amused that the leader had such pathetic survival instincts. Rising, he loomed over Orcfall with a chilling question. Was this Okwa's command? The mere mention of that name made the beast flinch. Shocked whispers rippled through the soldiers. Okwa, the legendary orc king, was the entire reason this massive alliance had been forged. This was the monster who had slaughtered countless knights in his past life. He had to be eliminated no matter the cost. The translator confirmed Orcfall would talk if his life was guaranteed. The youth gave his word. Total cooperation meant he'd survive. Orcfall grunted another demand. Corey looked at His Highness, explaining that the beast was actually demanding a formal binding oath. Scowling, he demanded to know why that mattered. Corey explained that breaking a sworn oath would permanently destroy his warrior's honor. Yuri's lips curled into a smirk. It was clear this brute had survived countless bloodbaths. Imagine an orc obsessed with raw power, actually demanding a pact like that. Fine, the oath would be made. But Jared immediately voiced his sharp protest. Jared demanded to know the orc's plans once released. Yuri waved him off, signaling for calm before turning back to the translator. "So, was this Okwa's doing?" The man nodded, confirming that from everything he knew, that was exactly the case. The tribal chief issued the command, acting directly under Okwa's authority. And what of the coalition forces he pressed? How could they track our movement? Corey explained that Okwa possessed his own shadowy network for gathering high-level intelligence. The specifics remained a mystery. Jared stepped forward, asking for a moment. "So this Okwa, he's the mastermind behind everything. He tracked our path and orchestrated this entire ambush." A grim nod followed. It was the only logical conclusion. He was definitely behind the massacre at the Holy Kingdom. Now, only one crucial question remained in the air. Just how powerful is this Okwa? Orcfall's face twitched before he let out a jagged, mocking burst of laughter. That laugh sent chills down Corey's spine. Apparently, 10 Orcfalls wouldn't even be enough to scratch the man. He swore Okwa was the most bloodthirsty monster to ever walk the earth. Yuri reached into his pocket and spoke. Perhaps Yuri mused, but you forget something. Humans are far more devious and lethal than you can possibly realize. He revealed a glowing crystal, sending the orc into a blind rage. "What's wrong? Having second thoughts?" Yuri taunted mockingly. He was actually planning to honor the deal. Suddenly, Orkfall snapped his bindings with a violent burst of raw strength. Steel flashed as soldiers drew their blades, but the orc lunged at Yuri with a deafening primal scream. Guards swarmed him instantly, a wall of spears pinning the beast down. Yuri sighed. "You really are a fool. You preach honor while acting like a common animal." With a cold glare, Yuri turned his back and walked away. "End him," he commanded. Hours later, under the shroud of midnight, Germain the priest of Briol remained hard at work. He desperately channeled his magic to close gaping wounds. As another pained cry echoed, he didn't hesitate for a second. He rushed to the next soul. Hernando stepped into the chaos, pointing toward a critical patient who needed immediate attention. "I'll handle this one," Hernando shouted. Germain thanked him just as Corey arrived, clutching containers of fresh water. The priest gave a quick word of praise before chanting, imbuing the liquid with a shimmering, divine, healing radiance. Corey gasped. It looked like normal water, but a powerful, soothing energy was now pulsating from the bucket. "Use this to wash the wounds," Germain instructed. "It's holy water now, it'll purge the rot." Corey dipped a cloth. As the priest hurried away to the next dying soldier, Corey watched in awe. The magic was truly a miracle. Agony vanished from the soldiers' faces, replaced by peace. Corey stared at the cloth, whispering, "So this is magic." At last, dawn broke, ending the nightmarish ordeal. Stepping out into the cool morning air, Hernando breathed a relief. He smiled, glad they had managed to save the victims. The priest turned, offering a sincere word of gratitude. He then looked at Corey, praising his hard work. Flustered, the boy yanked his hood down to hide his blushing. "I barely did anything," he stammered. But Germain just shook his head. "We were incredibly fortunate," the priest remarked. "The casualties could have been much worse. They'd managed to kill the flames before the entire camp turned to ash." "I fear the road ahead will be even darker," the priest whispered, praying. Hernando stepped closer to reassure him. "There's always a glimmer of hope, even in hell." The priest looked up, confused by his sudden optimism. Hernando pointed toward the campfire where soldiers were now sharing laughs. Just a few hours ago, he began. They were fighting for their lives. Now, they're healing together. With a sharp, cinematic snap of his fingers, a brilliant flare shot into the sky, bathing the camp in light. "Magic can heal hearts too," he mused. Every eye turned upward, souls warmed by the sight. Corey watched the lights, mesmerized by the sheer magical beauty. After a long pause, Corey turned to Hernando with burning determination. "Please, teach me how to use magic." Hernando blinked in shock. He hadn't heard a request like that in ages. He reached out and ruffled Corey's hair. "Why the sudden interest?" Hernando asked. Corey fidgeted nervously. "His Majesty. He gave me a whole new perspective. I want to see people smile like that. I just want to be useful." "In my own way," Hernando grinned. A half-orc wizard. Now, that would be a legendary sight. As the morning sun finally arrived, Yuri sat perched on a rock, catching his breath. Suddenly, a scout scrambled up breathless. "The Imperial Knights. They've arrived and are demanding an audience." Yuri stood up, his eyes narrowing as the knight asked for him. He agreed to the meeting. With Bolshad just over the horizon, crossing paths with them now was practically inevitable. Upon his command, the soldiers escorted the newcomers. A knight stepped forward, bowing low as he spoke of the immense honor. This was Rapiot Artem Count Zeno's second son. He flashed a charming smile while offering a formal noble greeting. When asked if the Empire reached Bolshad first, the knight nodded. They were essentially the tip of the spear. With orc sightings confirmed throughout the Bolshad district, they were now scrambling to alert every nearby unit of the looming threat. Our hero's eyes locked onto the silent warrior standing behind Rapio. The mysterious man seemed in no rush to introduce himself. Curious, he prepared to ask, leaving Rapiot stumbling for words. Suddenly, the silent knight stepped into the light. He offered a humble apology for the late introduction. Regrettably, he possessed no noble titles to his name anymore. As the helmet came off, Yuri's breath hitched. Fate had reunited them in the most unexpected way possible. Standing there was Graham Hartfall, a living ghost from a past Yuri refused to erase from his memory. Once a legendary knight, Graham was now stripped of rank. In Yuri's previous life, he had begged this man for mercy. He once pleaded for his life. Now he welcomed Graham warmly, insisting the fallen knight drop the overly formal attitude. Since he lacked official rank, Yuri questioned if he was truly risking his life in this war without a title. Graham gave a pained smile, admitting the truth despite the sting of humiliation. Rapiot quickly jumped in to defend his honor. He simply chose the wrong master. Graham tried to silence him, but Rapiot countered, stubborn in his sense of justice. No warrior was more renowned. Yuri recalled the whispers of how Graham had been stripped of his knighthood by the Empire. Imperial politics had crushed his career. Yuri never imagined their paths would cross again under such chaotic circumstances. Seeing him among the allies sparked a smile, yet it hurt to see such a noble soul doubting his own value. Yuri grinned, expressing how much he'd heard of the man's legend. To him, this meeting was a genuine privilege. Graham brushed off the praise, clearly uncomfortable with flattery. He simply reached out to offer a firm warrior's handshake. Yuri had one burning question. He looked Graham in the eye, and invited him to join the kingdom of Briole. Memories flooded back. Yuri despised Imperial Knights, but he knew Graham was built from a far nobler kind of steel. In another life, Graham had shown him mercy, a choice that cost the knight everything in the end. That debt fueled Yuri's kindness. He promised Graham that in Briole, his skills would finally receive the respect they deserved. With a sad smile, Graham bowed and politely declined. Yuri didn't take offense, respecting the man's steadfast loyalty. He anticipated the rejection. Soon, the massive gates of Bolshad loomed before them, marking the end of their long journey. As the Allied forces gathered, Yuri stared in awe at the colossal walls, protecting the sprawling urban landscape. Hernando noted the sheer scale. It was a massive fortress city, rising defiantly from the center of a vast open plain. Yuri wondered if magic forged these stones. After all, the Bolshad line was legendary for its mastery of the arcane. The mage nodded, but his expression darkened with a warning. Yuri needed to stay sharp in a den of sorcerers. One slip-up could mean being devoured by political schemes. Yuri realized he was being warned about the ruling mage duke. He braced himself for a meeting with some arrogant, crusty old man, feeling a surge of genuine unease. Answers awaited inside. As the gates groaned open, they were swept into the city and straight into a lavish reception. The ballroom buzzed with nobles, until Duchess Mary Rose Entree appeared, commanding the room with her mere presence. Yuri blinked in surprise. She definitely wasn't an old man. Hernando chuckled, noting the new generation had taken the reins. She glided toward them, offering a warm welcome to the Briole Knights before boldly taking the seat right beside Yuri. She inquired about his royal status, but Yuri's response was ice cold. He was here as a commander, not just a prince. Flattery followed as she confirmed the rumors of his looks. Playfully, she pressed him to reveal his true age. When he admitted he was 18, she leaned in. She realized there were only 4 years between them. She sensed a connection, but Yuri wasn't buying it. He saw right through the way she wielded her beauty like a weapon. Her smile was a trap designed to ensnare the weak. Unfortunately for her, Yuri had no interest in playing her games. He argued that shared values mattered more than age. True friendship transcended years or gender, if the soul was right. Amused, she challenged his philosophy before standing to announce a well-deserved break for the exhausted knights. She presented the Briole army and their prince to the crowd. Soon, they would all bleed on the same battlefield. Jared leaned toward Hernando, whispering in confusion about what the Duchess was really planning to do. A chuckle escaped his lips as he explained her motive. She simply lived for the thrill of making new allies. Jared questioned if Brucin, that tiny backwater nation on the Empire's edge, was actually present. Yuri nodded, confirming their arrival. He added that the harsh coastal life bred fierce sailors. Being forged by the ocean made them resilient and unyielding. Suddenly, a man clutching a wine bottle stepped forward, introducing himself as Jonathan Eagle, the commander of Brucin's forces. Jonathan offered a pour, and Yuri obliged with cold grace, claiming he'd be indebted for the gesture. As the liquid filled his glass, Yuri's eyes narrowed. This wasn't what he expected. Was this even real wine? He smirked, mocking the exquisite liqueur, as far too refined for a rustic village like Brucin. The atmosphere instantly turned icy. Jonathan's warmth vanished. He spat back that he was glad the prince finally recognized their true nature. Prowan, a hot-headed soldier, barked in outrage. He realized Yuri was blatantly trash-talking their humble origins. Prowan nearly lunged, but a comrade held him back. Yuri looked down on them with disdain. Jonathan signaled for silence. With a sharp wave, the commander demanded calm. He then stared down the prince, asking if his words were a mockery. Yuri countered with a chilling question. And if they are, do you expect an apology? Jonathan merely smiled through the tension. He figured Yuri had two motives. Either the third prince was truly as arrogant as the rumors claimed, or he was testing their worthiness. Did they actually deserve to stand as his allies in this alliance? Fuming, Prowan ordered his captain to move. He was ready to teach this noble a painful lesson in respect. He was itching for a fight, but Yuri rose his presence, commanding the room's attention instantly. Unreliable allies are a death sentence on the battlefield, Yuri declared. So, are you ready to prove your worth? Jonathan agreed. A knight's value is written in steel. Sensing the hype, the Duchess clapped, stealing the spotlight. She eagerly offered to lead them to the training grounds. The group filed out, anticipation thick in the air. Both knights took their stances ready for war. Yuri, the Duchess, and Jonathan watched from the sidelines. Mary Rose teased Yuri about instigating the duel. Regardless of his intent, she was living for the high-stakes entertainment. Yuri shot her a knowing smirk. Was she seriously playing the innocent bystander after orchestrating this entire drama? She retorted that Yuri was the one who expertly seized the opening she provided. A classic power move. Internalizing his thoughts, Yuri knew gauging Brucin's combat prowess was essential for the battles ahead. But there was more. One of these men was destined to hold a title reserved only for the continent's ultimate elites. A top 10 legend, just like his father. Identifying that future monster now would give Yuri a massive strategic edge. On the field, the duelists squared off. Prowan and Laurent locked eyes as they prepared to clash. After a tense handshake, Prowan sneered that his courtesy ended there. He didn't expect Laurent to put up much struggle. Laurent met the insult with silence. The crowd held its collective breath, waiting for the first strike. After a heartbeat, Laurent calmly stated he hoped to gain some insight from their exchange. Yuri focused on the ranking. Across the vast continent, the top 10 were gods among men, the absolute peak of martial prowess and power. Their names alone carried enough weight to shift the tides of national conflicts and end wars in an instant. Securing their loyalty now would be a game changer. After all, true brotherhood is often forged through the heat of battle. Prowen taunted Laurent, admitting he'd heard the rumors. The so-called genius who dominated every tournament he entered. Was he just a pampered noble who won soft ceremonial games? Prowen intended to expose the truth behind the hype. He lunged forward, mocking Laurent's style as nothing more than a predictable high society dance. Laurent blurred effortlessly, evading the strike and repositioning behind Prowen. The Brucin knight realized he was in trouble. Prowen thought Laurent's textbook movements were too perfect and thus totally predictable. He prepared to end the farce. With a victory smirk, he swung with full force. But Laurent dipped low, delivering a lightning-fast counterstrike. Clang, the sound of steel echoed. Jonathan bolted upright in shock, while Yuri watched with calculated interest. Laurent secured the win, completely outplaying Prowen. Yuri noticed Laurent had been holding back his true power all along. He'd baited Prowen by feigning an opening in his guard. He lured his opponent into a reckless strike toward his shoulder. With a flick of his wrists, Laurent parried the blow, shifted his weight, and neutralized the incoming force. In that same motion, he launched a devastating counter. The Brucin warrior's skill was impressive, but Laurent was different. Any lesser knight would have been crushed by Prowen's speed. Yet Laurent had predicted every move before it even happened. Prowen exploited a fatal gap in his rival's guard to launch a strike. As the knight retreated his blade, Prowen smirked, knowing he'd lured him into a trap. Accepting the loss with grace, Laurent beamed. That session was pure adrenaline, and he'd savored every single second of their intense clash. They locked hands in a firm grip. While Brucin's warriors erupted in cheers, Jonathan admitted that Briel's reputation for elite knights wasn't just empty hype. Yuri shrugged off the compliments like they were nothing. He noted that Brucin's man had guts and held his own impressively throughout the entire bout. The board now showed 1-0. Jonathan wasn't about to let a single setback send him packing. He was just getting started with the competition. Next up was Jose. With a confident nod, he hoisted his massive hunk of steel onto his shoulder like it weighed absolutely nothing at all. Even the main character felt the pressure from Jose's physique, and the Duchess was visibly thirsty for those muscles. Jose stepped into the ring, radiating power. Jonathan hyped him up, calling Jose their division's ultimate powerhouse. Apparently the guy was aiming for the #1 spot in all of Brucin. Yuri grinned mischievously, pointing Jared toward the pit. Stunned and confused, Jared's heart plummeted as he stuttered out a nervous question about the choice. Yuri didn't budge on the order. Letting out a heavy, weary sigh, Jared buckled his helmet and braced himself for the inevitable beatdown ahead. Backed by his cheering comrades, Jose was a literal titan, actually having to stoop down just to reach Jared's hand for the initial greeting. Jose mentioned he was hyped to see what Jared could do. Still reeling from the height difference, Jared managed to mumble his own name back. Anxiety gnawed at Jared's soul. Up close, Jose looked like a demon who had clawed his way through 1,000 bloody life-or-death battlefields. Sensing the intense stare, Jose let out a low, gravelly chuckle. He figured Jared was just another combatant analyzing his target before the kill. Jose swung first, causing Jared to flinch instinctively. Suddenly, the sky was blotted out by the terrifying shadow of the massive warrior looming over him. With a blade poised to crush him, Jared's brain screamed at him to parry. The sheer scale of the incoming attack left him completely dazed. He realized blocking that monster strike was suicide. Diving at the very last millisecond, he barely avoided the impact, nearly tumbling over his own feet. The heavy steel cratered the earth. Before he could even breathe, Jose lunged again, forcing Jared into a desperate and frantic retreat to survive. The edge whistled past his nose, shearing off strands of hair. Jose warned him that losing focus for even a second meant an instant defeat. Terror gripped Jared as a relentless storm of strikes rained down. Somehow, he managed to deflect the onslaught by the absolute skin of his teeth. Stopping that final crushing impact nearly broke his arms. The main character noted that Jose's raw strength was practically on par with a wild orc. It wasn't just brute force. His blade work was flawlessly refined. Every step and shift in his posture was calculated perfection for a warrior his size. This guy was clearly destined for the legendary top 10. Mid-thought, Jose lunged forward and snatched Jared like he was a mere ragdoll. Jared was sent flying, hitting the dirt face first. The duel was over. Coughing up dust, Jared struggled back to his feet to show respect. Jose extended a massive hand with a friendly grin. He admitted that was actually a pretty solid and enjoyable warm-up for the day. He was genuinely impressed by Jared's durability. Grabbing the hand, Jared thanked him, admitting he'd learned a brutal but valuable lesson in combat today. Yuri stood up, declaring the score a dead heat at 1-1. Both sides had shown their mettle, so he proposed calling it a day. While the soldiers celebrated, Mary Rose purred that the ice had finally been broken between their two groups through the heat of battle. Yuri agreed that battlefield trust was everything for allies. However, Mary Rose's expression shifted. She seemed low-key let down by his formal response. She placed a lingering hand on his shoulder, forcing him back into his seat with a playful yet pointed gesture that he couldn't ignore. She pouted that, while he was busy bonding with the men, he'd totally ignored her. Her fingers traced a slow, suggestive path down his cheek. She leaned in close, putting her charms on full display, but he didn't even blink. His stoic reaction left her visibly frustrated and disappointed. Jonathan broke the awkward tension, reminding her that she'd promised to give them a tour of her private office and the facilities. She sighed, messing up her hair in annoyance before admitting she did say that. Jonathan pressed her to lead the way immediately, without delay. Everyone was curious to see her inner sanctum. With a half-hearted shrug, she turned to Yuri and invited him to join the group. Yuri practically bolted, making up a lame excuse about checking on his knights before disappearing into the crowd to escape her clutches. Fuming with rage, her face turned a bright crimson. Jonathan lost it, laughing while she screamed about how incredibly annoying Yuri's behavior was. Soon, the Allied forces converged on Balshad. Once word broke that the Imperial Army's big boss had arrived, the atmosphere turned electric with tension. Every warrior began sizing up their so-called allies, looking for any sign of weakness or hidden strength within the massive gathered ranks. Well, everyone except the Briol squad. While our hero was grinding through his training, Hernando walked up with a concerned look on his face. He asked if they should really be practicing while other captains were already busy forming cliques and plotting secret strategies for the war. The protagonist just smirked at the suggestion. All that political posturing and grouping up, it was nothing more than a pathetic and shallow circus. The elite from each nation were just stroking their own egos. Their pride was so massive that talking was a total waste of breath. In their minds, they were all the main characters. Hernando recalled their arrogant behavior and realized the main character was hitting the nail on the head. He finally agreed with the sentiment. At the end of the day, the only way to earn respect from these guys was a raw display of power. He pivoted toward the knight, challenging him to a duel. Laurent drew closer, declaring it a massive honor to cross blades. Leveling his steel, he commanded him never to retreat. Laurent smirked, dropping into a combat stance. Sensing his surging aura, our hero realized that, as predicted, his energy was incredibly refined. He truly was the ultimate sparring rival. Suddenly, Laurent lunged. He unleashed a heavy swing that was instantly parried, but the knight infused his blade with mana and struck. A flurry of thrusts targeted Yuri. Watching the cold steel dance before his eyes, Yuri admired his insane precision. Flawless technique, zero wasted motion. He'd always been this way. Even when he dealt the fatal blow, his blade remained untainted. Like his purity defied his feelings. Now, he sought a destiny where that same steel would guard his back. Only then could he truly protect him. Yuri exploded into motion, his blade a blur as he forced the knight back. Yet Laurent countered instantly, and Yuri charged with a grin. Their steel and spirits collided. The crowd roared in excitement, rooting for both warriors. Jared wondered if this much intensity was necessary for a simple training session. Suddenly, a voice from behind remarked that the prince was actually cracked. He spun around, eyes popping in shock. Jose stood there, grinning ear to ear before shouting toward the prince, claiming he had a favor to ask. Yuri paused the duel, looking over as Jose requested a turn to spar too. Yuri chuckled, getting the message. He'd lend him Jared instead. Before Jared could react, Jose hoisted him over his shoulder and hauled him off while Jared protested loudly. The prince just waved, wishing him the best of luck. Laurent offered a deep bow, grateful for the chance to gain insight from their intense clash. He expressed his excitement for their next duel before they headed their separate ways. Yuri took a breather under a massive tree. Slumping onto the grass with a heavy sigh, he called out to Asen, demanding an update with a grim look. Her stealth was peaking. She materialized from the darkness, behind the trunk admitting her growth, though she noted her talents worked best in the grimy back alleys. He pressed for info on the mysterious stranger. She reported his trail led to Balshad. Yuri knew this man was an Eastern legend ranked among the continent's top 10 powerhouses. In the previous timeline, he soloed Okwa. The reason remains a mystery, but the enemy of my enemy is an ally. He insisted they track him down before the showdown with Okwa. She gave a sharp nod of understanding, knowing time was running out. In the original history, Okwa's rise would cost him his elite ranking. The Emperor's half-brother and supreme commander of the Allied forces, Ragnar Gustav Granzian. He'd crossed paths with him before. He recalled a day when he and Catherine snuck away for some private time. She panicked about getting caught, but he just smirked, telling her she was overthinking it. They were totally alone. She hesitated, but once he promised to take the heat, she finally let her guard down. Suddenly, a voice cut through the air. Her uncle lounging on a sofa called them brats and told them to get a room. Yuri jumped back instantly, while Catherine stammered in terror. Yuri realized so it was him. Ragnar let out a massive sigh, demanding they shut up. He was visibly annoyed, but he actually had a question for the boy. Yuri's heart raced. Roughing Catherine's hair, Ragnar bluntly asked if he truly had feelings for her. After his confession, Ragnar dropped it, telling them to chill because they'd deal with the consequences later. He took his leave then. Yuri smiled, realizing that the man had seen right through them from the start. A total pro. Cut to the present, everyone was packed into the war room awaiting the Supreme Commander. Someone whispered that meeting him was rare, but having him here was a massive win. It was the perfect chance to suck up to royalty. Yuri noted that even in the heat of war, these guys never stopped playing politics. Suddenly, Ragnar's voice boomed right behind him, making him jump. The commander strode past with a smirk, mocking them for looking so relaxed and happy. Taking his throne, he warned that a single moment of laziness would lead to absolute ruin. He made it clear he despised weaklings. Instantly, a suffocating killing intent flooded the entire chamber. Yuri recognized it, the legendary lion's heart of the prince. What an insane display of power. Ragnar growled that if anyone dared to desert, he'd execute them himself. To him, they were all just knights. Prowess and deeds would dictate their rewards. Any questions, the voice boomed across the silent ranks. The knights traded hesitant glances, swallowed by a tense silence. But Yuri, reading the room perfectly, stepped forward. Ragnar respected the bold, those who radiated absolute confidence, even without god-tier skills. Yuri questioned how the Empire gauges orc power. Ragnar smirked, intrigued. "And who are you exactly?" Introducing himself with a matching grin, Yuri knew calmness and power were the ultimate combination. Ragnar's interest peaked instantly. He'd heard Jorg's high praise, and finally met the legend in person. Rising Ragnar praised the sharp inquiry. Currently, a monster named Okwa had emerged, claiming his own throne. After devouring 3 rival tribes, Ragnar loomed over Yuri, his hand gripping his shoulder with heavy authority. Gesturing to the map, he warned that the enemy's power was skyrocketing at a lethal, terrifying pace. The orc vanguard is camped near Bolshad. In 2 days, the allied forces face their first bloodbath. "Will you spearhead the vanguard?" Ragnar challenged. Yuri met his gaze in dead silence. Tension choked the room until Yuri exhaled, accepting the offer. This was the moment he desired. Leading the vanguard was a supreme honor. Later, by the flickering campfire, Yuri's thoughts drifted deep. Spotting the Duchess, he questioned her motives. She took a seat, eyes reflecting the dancing flames. "You snatched the spot everyone craved," she teased. "Yet you don't exactly look like a beast." Her curiosity was piquing. Yuri felt her intense gaze, realizing she was deeply intrigued by his mystery. She smiled playfully. "I can't help it. You've been playing hard to get this entire time. Bolshad's survival hangs in the balance." She couldn't blindly trust a stranger while everyone's lives were staked. "Drop the axe and give me the truth," she demanded. A real answer would earn his reward. A promise of aid on the front lines. How Yuri countered. She smirked. "Did you seriously forget?" Flames licked her fingertips as she flexed her magical prowess. She was a true powerhouse mage. "I'm way more clutch than Hernando," she boasted. Yuri stared into the embers, his voice turning icy. "Blood will be spilled," he muttered, rising. "The vanguard is where the Reaper strikes first and hardest. It's the most exposed graveyard. The men laughing and eating today won't see tomorrow's sunset. Their deaths are on his hands now. It's not sentiment, it's the weight of a true leader's soul." Shocked, she bolted up. His conviction hit her like a physical blow, stirring something deep within. Still, his eyes were on his men, not her. A small sting of jealousy pricked her heart. Offering her hand, she vowed to watch his back. Yuri gripped it firmly, offering a rare thanks. "I'm holding you to that." Days passed and the war horns finally screamed. The grand clash began. Ragnar and Mary Rose held the rear. Meanwhile, Yuri and his elite knights stood at the precipice. The tip of the spear. "Ready weapons," Yuri roared as Ragnar watched from the command post. "The vanguard's moment is here," Ragnar noted, glancing at the Duchess lurking nearby. "Why are you here?" he asked. She grinned. "Just fulfilling a special request for Prince Briel." A horn blast shattered the air. The enemy tide was coming, a wave of pure, concentrated orc malice. Staring down the charging horde, Yuri checked his men. Their war cries confirmed they were beyond ready. "Let's move." Yuri kicked his horse into a gallop, charging headlong. Ragnar's eyes never left them. Briel was way too far ahead, reckless, suicidal even. Mary Rose barked at Ragnar to step back. Hoisting her staff, she conjured a massive sun of fire. "This is my mission," she yelled, aiming. The inferno roared toward the orcs, but Yuri's men were dangerously close to the impact zone. Ragnar panicked. "They're too close. You'll incinerate our own men." The disaster felt inevitable. The Duchess just smirked. This is exactly what Yuri ordered. As the fireball descended, Yuri dove into the orc ranks, grinning as his blade drew first blood. Then he paused. Boom! The explosion erupted. Yuri channeled mana, drenching his knights in protective torrents of water, a shield against the flames. Ragnar watched in awe as the battlefield turned into a miracle. Through the hellscape of fire, they charged. Yuri's roar echoed, "Annihilate them all." Our warriors tore through the blast-dazed orcs, though several monsters still surged with lethal energy. Yuri snatched a stray spear, sniping a beast's skull just as a lizard man lunged from his blind side. His men intercepted the strike instantly. Jose smirked, noting they truly lived up to the legendary National Knight title. Time to show their worth. He leaped into the fray blade, flashing as Sibel rallied her elite squad. Acting as Briol's iron shield, their synchronized assault shattered the enemy lines into bloody remnants. The commander-in-chief watched with a grin, intrigued by Yuri's raw power as he pulverized the opposition. Morale hit fever pitch on the front lines. Seizing the momentum, he signaled the Duchess to unleash magical devastation. Casting a tidal shield around his men, he warned the Duchess that her current play was beyond reckless. Did she back him, knowing the risk? She admitted she'd initially tried to shut his wild plan down, but his execution was flawless. A man full of surprises is charming, right? The commander had to agree. Not a bad debut for the Allied forces. By sunset, the enemy was in a state of total humiliating retreat. Darkness descended. As Mary Rose toiled in her office, a sudden, chilling presence prickled her skin. Turning with a scowl, she muttered that while Prince Briol's victory was impressive, manners were still a thing. Who gave him permission to intrude? Hernando manifested from the shadows, sheepishly rubbing the back of his head. Don't be so cold, he was her mentor after all. Didn't she even care how he was doing? After all this time, she flashed a sharp smile, asking what mentor ghosts their only student like that. Why was he here? He sank into the sofa across from her and finally gave her an answer. He wanted to witness her growth, specifically her progress on the complex transcendental interpretation formula. She'd cracked a major lead. This magic was originally designed to bridge languages and decode their hidden meanings. They'd finally bridged modern speech with ancient magic. Hernando urged her to push even deeper into the unknown. She huffed, asking why she should bother. He countered with a smirk, "Aren't you curious about Prince Yuri?" This was the key to Yuri's fate, and he needed her. A flicker of anxiety crossed her face. He was obsessed with fate, yet knew a Grand Magus must never meddle in the flow of history. He knew the rules, but too many players, including the Imperial Knight Commander, were already tangled in Yuri's web. Meanwhile, the Commander-in-Chief called Yuri to his war room, assigning him a high-stakes scouting op. Yuri was baffled. Moving into the Eastern Orc territories meant walking straight into a meat grinder of ambushes. With the main army under immense pressure, Yuri realized the commander wanted specialized strike teams for protection. Ragnar gave a nod of approval at Yuri's sharp intuition, pausing a beat to let it sink in. He was grateful but pointed out that Briol's men had already bled on the vanguard in the last battle. Fairness dictated another faction should step up. But Ragnar countered they were simply the best tools for the job. He only gambled on proven talent, and Briol's track record was the only one he trusted for this mission. Yuri interjected with a bold counter-proposal. Soon, whispers of a newly formed elite recon unit rippled through the camp. To safeguard the alliance, this wasn't an open invite, only the absolute cream of the crop would be chosen. A brutal trial was announced for all hopefuls. Sibel was genuinely stunned by Yuri's unconventional high-stakes recruitment method. Jonathan and Jose were instantly hooked. Over a round of drinks, Jose noted the prince wasn't playing around. His Highness was dead serious. Jonathan realized Yuri was weeding out the weak to build a team of monsters. No room for scrubs in this unit. For the first time in ages, the fires of competition were roaring. Hernando delivered the news to Yuri. His Highness ordered them to locate every orc along the march route. The bounty, a right ear from every kill. Their performance here would dictate their entire future. Staring at the official decree, he looked at Yuri in disbelief. "Don't tell me. This was your idea." Yuri confirmed it. Since it was an official mandate, every nation's finest would be forced to show their hand. This wasn't just a mission, it was a chance to measure the raw power of every ally on the board. Jared voiced his nerves. Scouting was a different beast than open warfare. They were stepping out of their lane. Yuri just smirked, "Trust me, I've got a plan." At dawn, the commander-in-chief summoned the entire assembly. The main army would advance, but the chosen few were to strike first and clear the orcish filth. Whoever claims the most trophies earns the leading edge. The three rivals braced themselves for the coming hunt. The commander flipped the hourglass, igniting the race. Instantly, the factions scattered into the unforgiving wilderness. Ragnar wore a smug grin, while his soldier noted his massive reliance on Prince Briol's hidden talents. "Is it that?" Blatant Ragnar laughed. The kid's raw potential was undeniable, especially if he pulled this off. He'd be watching closely now. Meanwhile, Yuri's squad surged forward, while Jared voiced his mounting anxiety. "Got a plan," Yuri dryly replied. They needed to track the orcs first, clearly annoyed by the question. Locating them was only half the battle. Yuri just chuckled, assuring his comrade that everything was under control. He had a trick up his sleeve. Suddenly, a scout spotted orc signatures lurking to the northeast. The beasts sprinted past, completely oblivious, until Yuri revealed a glowing lure crystal to bait them in. The dazzling light froze the orcs in their tracks, their eyes glued to the mesmerizing enchanted gem. They charged straight into the trap. As the horde approached, Yuri reminded his men of one vital rule. Right ears only, boys. Don't get messy. With a roar, he launched the first devastating strike. Jared vaulted from his saddle, intercepting an airborne rider and skewering him before he even hit the ground. Jared rejoined the fray while Yuri locked eyes with the enemy leader, closing the distance instantly on horseback. Before the orc could swing, Yuri's blade flashed, claiming its head. He stood still, surveying the bloody aftermath. Not a single monster remained. Yuri's secret weapons were working perfectly, starting with that enchanted crystal necklace. Recovered from bandits, it was just the beginning. Jared hauled over a heavy sack, confirming 10 kills. Victory seemed certain at this pace, but Yuri pulled a dagger and smirked. 10 was nowhere near enough. Before Jared could even process the words, Yuri slammed the enchanted blade deep into the earth. A pillar of light erupted skyward, finally revealing the grand plan. Yuri turned to his battle-hardened soldiers. They weren't leaving until every orc in the region was dead. Soul Rupture was a terrifyingly versatile power. It bent to the user's will. By channeling vibrations through his earthquake sword, Yuri sensed everything. Infused with Soul Rupture, the seismic energy allowed him to map every heartbeat across the vast terrain. No enemy could hide from him. As dusk settled, the commander checked the final grains of sand. It was time for the final tally. Nations stepped forward, presenting their gruesome sacks of trophies for inspection. They approached with hesitance. Opening the first bag, the commander found the contents pathetic and entirely empty. "Is this a joke?" he spat. Scouting required killers, not cowards. He discarded the trash in pure disgust. The next few results were just as embarrassing. It was a disgrace that so many nations failed today. Not a single kill was recorded. Finally, Bruce's team stepped up, dumping their harvest onto the counting table. 6 years, a meager win, but currently the lead. Jonathan played it cool, claiming it was just luck. They'd intercepted some scouts. Ragnar smirked, noting that in the heat of war, luck is a skill. Fate is cruel to the unlucky. The Imperial Army couldn't just watch. They had to show their dominance. They joined the fray, revealing 12 trophies. Jonathan realized the massive power gap between their elite forces. The Empire was truly elite, doubling the count of the nearest competitor with effortless ease. Worse yet, they'd started an hour late. Sybil gritted her teeth, feeling the sting of their blatant arrogance. Were they being mocked as mere cannon fodder? Ragnar caught their bitter glares and laughed it off. He told them to stay focused on future results instead of sulking over a single minor defeat. "Is that it?" Ragnar asked. One nation remained. Suddenly, Yuri stepped forward and slammed his heavy bag down. The room went silent as they saw the bulging sack. Ragnar's smile faltered. "How is this possible? What was the trick?" Yuri simply shrugged, claiming they just put in a little extra effort today. As night fell, the squad returned. Jared oversaw the logistics, managing the haul of heavy supply boxes. A foreign knight stomped past intentionally, slamming his shoulder into Jared. Jared whirled around, completely stunned. The knight's gaze was pure venom. Confused by the sudden hostility, Jared immediately went to report to Yuri. Tensions were peaking. Foreign knights were itching for a brawl. Yuri stood up, his eyes narrowing dangerously. "Is that so?" As they moved out, news arrived. Nasty rumors were being spread to sabotage their reputation. Their killing intent was unmistakable. Yuri realized there was no avoiding the drama, since they were now the center of attention. They're likely just salty about them scoring a prime spot in intelligence. He decided to ignore the haters and keep moving. Right now, interrogating the captured orc mage took priority. They headed toward the massive cage where Corey was already waiting. Our hero asked for an update, but the mage immediately cut him off with a deafening guttural roar. A nervous Corey translated the scream, "Black Dog." Apparently a rumor was spreading among the ranks about a legendary knight, a man who could sniff out orcs like a bloodhound. Jared nearly lost it laughing, but barely kept his composure. Yuri wondered if that was his new street name. Corey joked that the mage thought he should be proud of himself. Getting a nickname from the enemy is a total flex, but Yuri was offended. Why a dog and not a wolf? Hearing a snicker behind him, he whipped around to the knight. "Oh, you think this is funny?" he snapped. Jared looked away, playing it cool. MC smirked. Had his terrifying reputation really reached the orcish front lines already? It made sense he'd been absolutely cracked lately. Corey confirmed it, adding that the rumors were actually quite specific. "They say the Black Dog of the Empire is hunting for Okwa's head." Mentioning the Empire instantly killed Yuri's vibe. "They think I'm the Empire's lapdog," he roared. Fuming, he reached for his blade to silence them for good. Jared scrambled to de-escalate frantically, offering to handle the interrogation himself before Yuri caught a case. At this rate, the orcs would be dead before they talked. Yuri finally cooled off, letting the knight breathe again. Corey dropped the real intel orc barracks were spotted in Gurang. It's the territory of Kurui Okwa's most lethal subordinate. Kurui had already mobilized his forces for a counterattack. This guy was a beast who ruled his tribe through pure violence. He's a top-tier warrior who claims he'll crush the Alliance before they even lay eyes on the big boss Okwa. Yuri gave Corey a head pat for the solid work. He then told Jared to handle the rest of the dirty work. He had to brief the commander-in-chief, but the second he entered the tent, the general hit him with a curveball. "Are you single?" Yuri blinked, completely caught off guard. He awkwardly confirmed he didn't have a girlfriend. Then came the age check 18. Yuri was officially suspicious. "Sir, what's with all the personal questions?" Ragnar admitted war isn't for romance, but then mentioned his stunningly beautiful niece. The ultimate marriage trap. Yuri was shook. Ragnar just patted his shoulder and dismissed him, leaving the awkward proposal hanging in the air. He stumbled out of the tent, his brain short-circuiting. Pretty niece. The image of Catherine immediately flashed in his mind. He aggressively messed up his hair. No way, absolutely not. He needed to dodge this situation at all costs. Seeing him spiral, Sybil checked in. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. That's when the light bulb went off. She gave him a suspicious side-eye. To dodge the general's niece, Yuri needed a fake relationship, and he needed it now. He needed someone loyal, someone who owed him one, someone who literally couldn't say no to his crazy plan. Sybil was the perfect candidate. He grabbed her shoulders with a mischievous grin that definitely meant trouble. "Remember how I saved your life?" he asked. She nodded, and he dropped the bomb. He needed a massive favor. "You're the only one who can help me," he whispered before vanishing. Sybil was left standing there, totally lost. She shouted for an explanation, but he was already gone. She stood there bewildered, trying to process the chaos. Suddenly, Sir Fennec appeared behind her with a smirk. She nearly jumped out of her skin from the jump scare. He grinned wide, teasing that they looked like a power couple, and promised to ship them. The ultimate wingman. The realization hit her like a truck, and she felt physically ill. The next day, the troop moved out. Jared dropped some gossip. He knew why the prince kept summoning Yuri. The marriage rumors were spreading like wildfire. "Stop capping," Yuri snapped. He told Jared to snap out of it and stop listening to the camp drama. He glared at the other smirking knights. "Are you guys really that bored? Stop believing every Delulu rumor you hear." Suddenly, a lone raven soared past, followed by a dark cloud of them. The horses began to panic and rear. Yuri sensed the shift in the air. Jared offered to scout ahead, and Yuri decided to join him for backup. They galloped toward the narrow gorge, but the sight waiting for them turned their stomachs into knots. A forest of stakes lined the path, each one topped with a grisly impaled corpse. The scene was straight out of a nightmare, and a suffocating silence settled over the entire valley. Jared's expression turned cold and dark. This wasn't just war, it was a message from hell itself. Ragnar let out a tense laugh, muttering that this was one hell of a twisted welcome party. Yuri gagged as the stench of rot hit him, realizing the orcs had used human corpses as sick ornaments. They hadn't even finished their meal. This was a pure, savage flex to show off their dominance. Turning to the prince, he warned that this would shatter the men's spirit and asked to handle the situation. Ragnar gave the nod, and Yuri immediately barked orders for his soldiers to light their torches. They hopped off their mounts, piling the remains into a pyre. One soldier's face went pale at the sight. As the man spiraled into horror, Yuri told him to shut his brain off and just keep moving. Spotting Guinness and Duke nearby, he shouted for them to stay close, but they promised a quick return. While scavenging for arrows, one of them paused, sensing something was dead wrong about the terrain. The arrows weren't piercing the bodies. They were embedded in the dirt as if someone had missed on purpose. He looked up just as a squad of orcs appeared on the ridge, an archer already letting one fly. A sickening wheeze caught Duke's attention. He watched blood spray from his friend's mouth before screaming in pure terror. Jared's blade was out in a flash, roaring that they were under fire as the orc snipers stepped into view. Paralyzed by the carnage, Duke felt his heart sink. He wanted to bolt, but he couldn't leave Guinness behind. Yuri charged into the chaos, shoving Duke aside and swinging his steel to swat the arrows out of the air. He checked Guinness's pulse and confirmed he was still breathing before turning back to his unit with a sharp gaze. He commanded them to escort the wounded to the Holy Kingdom, telling them to use his name for priority entry. As they dragged Guinness to safety, Yuri's eyes burned with pure hatred. The orcs had successfully baited them. It was their arrogant vibe that ticked him off. They were retreating as if they'd already delivered their warning. They were basically saying they could kill them whenever they wanted. Gritting his teeth, Yuri accepted the challenge. There was no way he was letting this slide. He marched back to camp and briefed the commander on the ambush. The commander sighed, admitting the situation was grim. They had no choice but to wipe the orcs out completely. When asked for a plan, Yuri just smirked and threw the question back at the old man. He just needed his archers to pin down the cowards while he and the knights seized the high ground. Minutes later, the heat of battle returned. An orc scout suddenly sensed a shift in the wind and looked out. A volley of arrows whistled past the creature's head. It shrieked in panic as the knights began their counter-assault. Ragnar roared for them to hold the line, knowing that if a single orc escaped, they were all dead meat. With that, the knights began scaling the vertical cliff. Yuri moved with terrifying speed, scaling the rock like a predator. A knight shouted to the prince that he was moving too fast, heading straight into the belly of the beast. They needed to pace themselves, but the man was already gasping for air, his lungs burning from the climb. Yuri realized he'd have to carry the weight. These young soldiers had zero stamina compared to him. He knew the students were only buying them a small window. If they didn't hurry, the mission would fail. Suddenly, a shadow loomed over them. "Your Highness, look out! A massive boulder!" a knight screamed. A giant rock was hurtling down from the summit. Thinking fast, Yuri's magical aura flared to life. He summoned a ring of daggers, slamming them into the cliffside to create a makeshift anchor for his men. By arranging them in a perfect circle, he fashioned a ladder to reach the top and intercept the falling death. Eyes locked on the prize, he dangled by one hand, swinging himself upward from one blade to the next. Drenched in sweat, he bellowed down to check on his knights, breathing a sigh of relief when they confirmed they were okay. With a final explosive surge of strength, he launched himself over the ledge and landed on the summit. Pushing himself up, he dusted off his hands and sarcastically thanked the orcs for the warm reception. He was instantly surrounded by dozens of snarling monsters, their numbers growing by the second. The orcs let out blood-curdling growls, but Yuri just stood there with a cold, confident smirk. "So it was you bastards," he muttered. As the lead orc lunged, Yuri vanished into a blur of motion. He tore through their ranks, painting the snow crimson as he slit throats with surgical precision. He didn't stop dancing through the carnage until every single monster lay dead in the dirt. Yuri hissed, thinking the fool expected to only lose an arm. How does total despair taste now? Even holding back the impact was crushing. With a chilling smirk, Yuri cut through the chaos effortlessly. He carved through the monstrosities like a whirlwind of blades until a sudden chill signaled approaching danger. An orc lunged from the shadow's spear aimed at his spine. Yuri's blade flashed, parrying the strike. Gripping his sword through pure exhaustion, he growled at the knights, demanding to know their arrival time. His muscles screamed in protest, but the knights' roars echoed. Finally, a gauntleted hand gripped the cliff. Dragging their weary bodies upward, the knights gasped for air before immediately diving into the orcish horde. Protecting their lord Yuri fueled his resolve. "No breaks," he thundered. "We strike until they fall." The assault was relentless. With war cries shaking the earth, the knights swarmed the monsters with fury. As reinforcements swelled the ranks, the monsters broke. High above, Ragnar observed the carnage with cold calculation. Victory was written in his eyes. Hours later, the blood-soaked regiment finally retreated to their camp. By the flickering campfire, Yuri confirmed the success. With the ambushers neutralized, their main army crossed safely. The gorge was conquered without a single casualty. Ahead lay their next nightmare, the impenetrable Kurui fortress. Yuri praised their valiance, but the knight's expression shifted. "The princess has a message for you, Highness." "Sybil," he blinked. Her letter revealed her heartache. She hated that he shouldered these heavy burdens alone. She offered divine support through her priests. Then the knight smirked, asking if things were getting serious. "A mere guess," Yuri snapped, freezing the air. "You're mistaken. Now, unless there's actual news to report, get lost." As Yuri's temper flared, the knight bowed deeply, excusing himself to let the prince recover. Studying the map, Yuri hoped for sleep, but a sudden presence materialized. Asana stood in the shadows. "How long have you been lurking?" he asked. Her answer stopped his heart. "I've located the pagan." "Perfect timing," Yuri grinned. "Where is he?" She pointed a slender finger toward the jagged mountain peaks. "Orc territory," Yuri's brow furrowed. "Has that heretic actually sold his soul to those green-skinned monsters?" "Doubtful," she whispered. Danger prevented a closer look, but it appeared the power dynamic was reversed. "The pagan is currently a prisoner. I know you're curious, Highness, but please stay extremely cautious. His capture feels calculated. Had our allies intervened sooner, he likely would have turned on them instead. So he chose to be their captive," she mused. "Should I return for a deeper investigation?" "Negative," Yuri countered. "Leave it. I'll handle this meeting personally and see what he's playing at. He's hunting the Okwa just like us. Since our paths align, perhaps I can reel him in." At dawn's first strike, Yuri ordered Slip into the orc lines. "Move like a silent ghost. Observe and wait for my signal." But Asana remained motionless, her eyes fixed on the cold ground. Yuri sensed her hesitation. "What's wrong?" She looked up, insisting on joining him for this lethal encounter. "That man is a monster," she pleaded. "Let me be your shield." Yuri stared at her, stunned. "Asana," he said firmly, standing tall. "I value you, but I am no helpless prince. I guard myself." She retreated into her hood, the silence stretching long, before she finally whispered her quiet submission. Relieved, Yuri softened his tone. "Before you go care for a snack, I have something truly amazing. These treats are legendary," he chuckled, presenting a plate of delicacies he'd been gifted earlier. But as he reached for the table, she vanished. "Blink and you miss her," he muttered, alone. Nearby knights huddled around the embers. One began boasting about a fabled encounter with a death knight. He claimed he'd charged into certain death, offering his own soul just to keep the prince safe. "Only a true warrior could survive," he crowed. His comrades cheered, absolutely captivated by the heroic lie. Yuri smirked, remembering the coward shaking on the ground, until he literally kicked him out of the way. He kept eating unfazed. "Is Jared full of it?" a knight whispered. Yuri nodded. "Total nonsense." The men were hyped, oblivious to the truth. How did he even face such a terrifying beast? "How did you stare down that monster?" they asked. Jared puffed his chest, describing the undead's horrific aura. "It's solid steel and pure malice. It parries just like a master swordsman. But the true nightmare is a foe without a physical body. Spectral entities that defy every blade. Useless efforts." Watching their growing bond, Yuri felt a brief surge of relief until his gaze snapped elsewhere. Shock painted his face. Who still dresses in such filthy rags? Behind Jared, a nameless shadow crept closer. A monstrous ogre with glowing crimson eyes loomed, paralyzing Yuri with dread. He lunged to his feet instantly. He screamed for everyone to unsheath their steel. Confused by his panic, the knights demanded an explanation. Yuri gestured wildly at an orc, but the woods were empty. Jared stared back, gripped by sheer horror. Lost in the confusion, he stammered, "Your Majesty, exhaustion is playing tricks on you. There is nothing there." Yuri gasped for air, his mind reeling from the phantom threat. Suddenly, Jared collapsed, and Yuri shrieked. Is he blind? The beast was literally right there. To Yuri, the monster remained terrifyingly visible. Then it blinked out of existence. Yuri bolted after the phantom, while the knights shouted in confusion. He yelled that he was hunting that orc. Clearly only he could track this invisible supernatural scout. Igniting his mana, he swung his blade at the horror. Letting this thing escape was not an option. Jagged fangs glistened as the beast snapped its gaze toward him, putting Yuri on high alert. Shielding his eyes from a sudden blinding flash, he hissed, "What the hell is this?" Raw magic surged through the trees, bathing everything in light. Was this some form of corrupted energy? It crawled under his skin, forcing him to channel his own mana flow to purge the invasion. Something was wrong. He stared at his blackened hands, paralyzed by the unknown corruption. Back at camp, the interrogation began. An invisible orc. The claim sounded like pure madness. Suspicion hung heavy in the air. Yuri scowled, confirming that the threat was both real and lethal. An unseen predator was stalking their lines. This dire news led him straight to his trusted subordinate. He rushed to the house of Briol, but clearly his timing was trash. He slumped into a chair. Ignoring the poker game, he laughed. Hernando suggested the orc was cloaked by high-level sorcery. Only Yuri's sharp instincts had pierced the veil. But if it strikes during the next clash, they are doomed. Could he take it down? Perhaps a Marie Rose-style fireball would do the trick. It was possible. Near the bullshods, such raw magic is hard to stop. Yuri pressed for more details about their power. What is the deal with their weird spells? Hernando sighed, admitting things looked darker than they seemed. They were tapping into forbidden dark sources. Yuri tensed up. Isn't that straight up suicidal? Chill, Hernando replied. The magic tower has studied this for ages. We just need to strike fast. He would focus on breaking the enemy's illusions. Yuri nodded, accepting the plan for now. One more thing crossed Yuri's mind as he turned back. Hernando raised an eyebrow in curiosity. I will let the gambling slide today, Yuri joked, but next time, you better deal me in. Hernando grinned at the offer. Nearby, the knights gathered around the fire, bragging about their winnings. One knight boasted about cleaning house. His buddy scoffed, wondering how he had lost to such a loser. He laughed it off, claiming he was only playing half-heartedly. Then the shadows of night fell. Carrion birds circled a forest of bones. Chanting foul spells, the orcs converged on their sovereign. A massive lich sat upon a throne of human remains. The orcs hung on his every silent word. With a skeletal gesture, he unleashed a wave of corruption, drawing the monstrous horde closer. The dark energy consumed them. They hissed back, in a guttural tongue, bound to his wicked will. Tomorrow, they would strike. At dawn, the war horn echoed through the Kari base, signaling the assault. Ragnar stood like a statue, ready for blood. Yuri matched his intensity, roaring Briol charge. The cavalry thundered toward the orc stronghold, but the enemy was already prepared to strike. A hail of black arrows rained down on the riders. Panic flared in Yuri's chest as the sky darkened. Fall back, he screamed. But it was too late. His men were being impaled by the deadly volley. Retreat was not an option. They had to push. As the bait, they were the only distraction left. Ragnar bellowed for the breakthrough. With a final battle cry, they unleashed their secret weapon. A colossal siege engine thundered forward, obliterating the main gate with bone-shaking force. Battle cries for the Empire echoed, but Yuri suddenly signaled his squad to halt mid-stride. His Majesty had breached the gates. Their mission as decoys was finally over. Time to regroup. Back into that hellhole, Commander the Knights questioned. With the front gate under siege, Jose knew the orcs' rear was completely exposed. A pincer attack would crush them instantly. Yuri smirked. I like your style. No rams, though. And these back walls were built like iron fortresses. Rams. We don't need them, Yuri chuckled. Jose gripped his blade, mana swirling violently. Cloaked in pure energy, he advanced solo. Yuri watched, absolutely mesmerized by the pressure. Glowing like a god, he unleashed a slash. A literal tidal wave of mana erupted. Total obliteration. The wall exploded into 1,000 jagged shards of stone and debris. As the smoke cleared, furious orcish bellows filled the air. Impressive work, Jose Yuri praised. The gates fell. Soldiers flooded in, tearing through enemy lines like a harvesting blade. Yuri roared, igniting their spirits. Brielle, take them down. He raised his gore-stained steel. His men surged forward. Exterminate every single one of these beasts, he bellowed. Allied forces breached the heart of the fort, crashing into orcs already braced for impact. In a blur, Yuri shattered the oncoming spearheads, neutralizing the monster's lethal reach instantly. A knight streaked past. For the pride of Brielle, victory was their only option now. Relax, Jared, Yuri noted. You're hyped up. That's not like you at all. Jared went quiet before charging back in. Yuri's eyes narrowed on Laurent, coming to a stop. Beams of radiance scorched the orcs as Jared carved through his foes with effortless lethality. His blade dripped crimson. For the prince, he screamed, fist raised high in defiance. All for his highness, Jose chuckled. Brielle sure is stealing the show today. We won't be outdone, the knights roared, butchering every beast in their path. The local orcs lay dead. Yuri surveyed the carnage. Good. We're making progress. Enemy lines were crumbling. The tide of battle was finally shifting in their favor. But something felt off. Where were the main units? They should have hit the camp. Suddenly, fresh orc banners emerged. These weren't grunts, they were elite warriors hungry for blood. Watch out, the elite struck, picking off knights with terrifying surgical precision. As allies fell, Jared's voice shook. How? Where did this army even come from? The monsters pressed the attack. Suddenly, a massive shadow loomed over Jared's weapon mid-swing. It was a trap. Snap out of it, Jared. Yuri's voice cut through the chaos. Protecting his friend Yuri, unleashed a blinding flash, disorienting the beast. Your Highness, Jared gasped. Got a death wish, Yuri snapped. Wake up, Jared's rage flared as he gritted his teeth. Shaking off the shock, Jared roared back at the beast, diving back into the fray. A quick nod between them, and the orc fell. But the slaughter was far from over. My apologies, Jared muttered. Don't let up, Yuri warned, sensing a darker presence nearby. A monstrous aura radiated from the hut where knights were being torn apart like paper. A skeletal orc monstrosity emerged, drenched in gore. Jose saw their line begin to crumble. Push them back, he roared. He wouldn't let Brielle's crew show them up. Yuri sensed the malice. You feel that? We're going in. On me. They breached the structure. You think the main force is dealing with this thing, Jared whispered. Pray we aren't too late to find survivors, Yuri replied grimly. Suddenly, a knight's body plummeted from the shadows, crashing down right between them. He slammed into the stone wall, tossed aside like a rag doll by a massive orc. The beast lunged its massive frame, obliterating the earth as it soared. Jared froze, unable to process the monster's sheer speed. Yuri spat a curse, realization hitting like a brick. They had let the terrifying nightmare slip through their fingers at the worst moment. The creature tore through the ranks, seeking to erase the knights. Panicked screams filled the air before the soldiers were completely annihilated. The orc's axe dripped with the lifeblood of fallen warriors. It pivoted slowly, a mountain of gore rising once more to face them. Corpses of destroyed knights littered the mud. Yuri turned to Jared, his voice a sharp, desperate command. Everyone fall back right now. His aura was peaking into an unstable storm he couldn't control. Sword gripped tight, he charged the Titan alone to end the carnage. Your Highness, Jared's plea was desperate. But Jose shook his head. The prince was already too lost in the heat of the battle. What do you mean? Jared pressed. Jose didn't blink. I'm joining the prince. Within seconds, Yuri collided with the terrifying demon. Steel met scale in a deafening crash as their forces collided. Yuri locked eyes with the monster, a fierce, confident grin spreading. A blinding pillar of light erupted toward the beast. Yuri knew the stakes. One clean hit from that monster meant instant death. The pressure was suffocating. Suddenly, Jose slid into the fray with a smirk. Looks like you're in a bit of trouble, kid. I'm not too proud to turn down backup, Yuri retorted. Side by side, the two legends prepared for a final dance of death. In that moment, Yuri saw it, the ferocious look of a mother pushed to the edge, with everything left to protect. Those were the eyes of a survivor drowning out internal terror. Young as it was, this beast already understood the brutality of war. The monster bared its fangs in a twisted grin, pointing a jagged finger toward them. The hunt was officially on. Jose and Yuri traded a silent, knowing nod. They launched their assault together, flanking the beast to trap it in a pincer. Jose lunged from the left, his blade screaming through the air. Sparks flew as the monster intercepted his strike with brutal force. A brilliant explosion of energy threw Jose back. This wasn't just a beast. It was a screaming force of nature defending its life. Capitalizing on the chaos, Yuri materialized behind the Titan. He moved like a shadow, aiming for a lethal, soul-shattering strike. The blade whistled toward its skull, but the monster blurred. It twisted sharply, its massive hand crushing Yuri in a vice grip. Your Highness, the knights shrieked in horror. With zero effort, the beast hurled Yuri across the battlefield like a broken ragdoll. Skidding through the dirt, Yuri wiped blood from his lip and smirked. It was all clear now, despite the massive trouble they faced. Our knights will wipe out your pathetic orc legions, Yuri taunted. Let's see how long you last against the both of us. Jose's grin matched Yuri's. Mana surged through their veins as they launched a dual assault, fueled by pure destructive magical power. The orc shrugged off the magical barrage as if it were a breeze. It laughed until the air itself began to tremble. A bone-chilling howl ripped from the orc's throat, summoning thunder from the heavens. Jose looked up, his blood running cold. Yuri's heart hammered against his ribs. A sinister neon blue mana began to swirl around the orc, twisting the very atmosphere. This was the real deal. "Jose, get out of there." Yuri's voice cracked with urgency as the danger reached a breaking point. Before the warning landed, another knight's head was severed in a clean, brutal arc. Yuri watched in pure, helpless terror. Dodge Yuri roared his eyes, a cocktail of fury and paralysis. He knew deep down they were completely outclassed. Jose raised his sword in a desperate guard, gasping in agony. Just then, Yuri descended like a vengeful god from the shadows. Intervening to save Jose's life, Yuri met the orc's gaze. He struck with everything he had, forcing the monster to yield. Creating some distance, Yuri breathed out, "Jose, talk to me, I'm still in this." Jose yelled back, reassuming his combat stance. They stood breathless, staring at the mountain of muscle they couldn't seem to topple. It was an impossible, terrifying wall. "That black smoke changed everything," Jose hissed. Yuri agreed. The creature's physical stats had just jumped into another dimension. It was a chillingly familiar sensation. It felt exactly like the lingering foul malice of that shaman ghost from before. He needed to dispel the black magic, but the darkness was spreading fast. Shadowy tendrils began to envelop them, one by one. A soldier watched in paralyzed horror as the monster's eyes ignited with a hellish, incinerating flame. Death was staring them down. Yuri couldn't fathom what was happening. Suddenly, lightning tore the heavens apart, and the orcs surged back into the fray. Something strange was happening. Eerie molecules began to leak from their bodies as the lead monster stomped the ground. The beast zeroed in on a trembling soldier. It lunged its jagged blade, whistling toward the man's throat as he screamed. Yuri spotted the opening. "Jose, lead them to me," he barked. Jose didn't hesitate for a second. "Consider it done." Yuri threw himself in front of the doomed soldier, intercepting the blow. He rose, his eyes burning with a lethal fury. Steel shrieked against steel, sending sparks flying like dying stars. The monster howled in agony as Yuri finally found his opening. With a savage arc, Yuri carved the creature into bloody remnants. Crimson sprayed everywhere as he shielded his face from the gore. Shadows swirled as a mangled orc loomed over him, paralyzing the boy with pure dread. Something was wrong. Was this forbidden regeneration or dark sorcery before he could even think? A second beast lunged forward. It raised a clawed hand and began chanting a sinister incantation. Abyssal energy surged around him, and Yuri realized he was trapped in a living nightmare. A phantom voice hissed, "Don't resist." This aura was far more malevolent than anything he'd felt. It was definitely black magic. The voice taunted him, asking why only he deserved to survive. Ghostly figures appeared as the voice pleaded for His Highness to be saved at any cost. Why did he abandon them? The kingdom's ruin was his fault, and his survival was a disgrace. He was a stain on the Brielle name, a coward who traded his honor for a life of hiding. "You are a failure, Yuri Brielle. This is your fate." Yuri listened, remaining eerily calm. What a load of trash, he spat. As magic spiraled around him, he stood his ground defiantly. Predetermined fate, he gripped his blade alongside his friends. "Do you even know what era this is? Stop babbling about destiny." With one lightning movement, he forced the massive ogre to freeze. A blinding beam of light exploded past them. Yuri weathered the shockwave and launched himself skyward. The beast unleashed its mana at him. Mid-flight, Yuri swung his sword to shatter the incoming attack. He cleaved the monster in two, landing amidst the agonizing wails of his dying enemies. A mangled, bloody corpse twitched before him, roaring as crimson sprayed from its shredded mouth. It collapsed face first into the dirt. Yuri watched the scene, sensing the dark energy finally fading. This was his chance. He signaled that the spell was broken, leaving the orcs confused and hesitant. The knights didn't hesitate. They charged into the fray, ready to slaughter the remaining ogre horde. They fought with relentless fury, but the ogres were savage. One knight fell, bleeding into the snow. "Sir Jose," Yuri screamed. The monster tossed him aside and prepared to crush him with a massive paw. The ogre lunged again, but Yuri commanded the others to halt. "Get back right now." Jose bled out as the ogre pivoted, aiming its lethal strike directly at Yuri's throat. He was done running. Even if death took him, he wouldn't look away until the very end. He locked eyes with the beast. A second later, blood erupted as the creature's arm was severed. The monster wailed in agony. Watching from the side, Mo Yunshan smirked, calling the kid a genius. Yuri looked at him in shock. Mo Yunshan simply grinned, clearly impressed by the boy's potential. Mo Yunshan continued his path of destruction, pausing to admire the carnage of severed ogre limbs. He snatched a monster by the throat. "Shut up," he growled. "You're not even entertaining." Yuri was baffled. This man had a bizarre accent, a massive build, and an alien fighting style. His sword techniques were completely different from the kingdom's. Yuri could only watch in awe. Another beast approached, but he vaporized it instantly. This man was exactly who Yuri needed. As the monsters fell, Yuri watched in silence. Mo Yunshan finally stopped and looked back. He admitted he only helped because Yuri did something impressive. Though things had gotten messy, Yuri bowed deeply. "Thank you for saving me." This man had subdued a general with one blow. He was the peak of masculinity and power. Mo Yunshan tilted his head, observing the boy curiously. "You're one of the continent's top 10, aren't you?" Yuri asked. Mo Yunchun raised an eyebrow. Yuri admitted his plan. He had allowed the orcs to capture him for a very specific reason. You're hunting the orc king, Okwua. Let's team up. Mo Yunchun was stunned by the proposal. With Kuru dead, orc morale shattered. The creatures were wiped out in a one-sided massacre. After the Uruks were slaughtered, Ragma hoisted Kuru's severed head high in a grim victory. Haunted by past failures, the allied forces had never tasted such a dominant victory. The very threads of history were unraveling. They performed brilliantly, Your Highness. Yuri stepped into the tent, immediately questioning Jared about the final casualty count. Jared reported they were still tallying the fallen, but numbers remained low. However, a much more disturbing issue was emerging. The soldiers who had witnessed the horrors inside the orc barracks were returning with severe psychological scars and trauma. Yuri knew this was inevitable, mirroring the tragedy at the Cedar Domain. Too many innocent souls had been lost there. Broken men stood amongst the monsters, screaming for their lives and begging for the mercy of a quick death. Yet it could have been far worse. Yuri commanded his officers to soothe the troops and prevent a total panic. After Jared acknowledged the orders, Yuri shifted his focus. By the way, what's the status of our mysterious guest? Jared confirmed all demands were met. Surprisingly, after a massive meal, the stranger bathed, shaved, and started eating all over again. Yuri was speechless. This man was the definition of unpredictable, possessing a level of audacity he had never seen. Jared explained the chaos. First, the soup was cold. Then, once heated, the stranger claimed it was far too salty. He actually flipped the table in a rage, refusing to eat unless 5 different plates were served at once. This bizarre behavior left Yuri deep in thought. Fine, I will handle him myself. Where is he lurking now? Jared pointed toward the center of the camp. You'll find him right where you expect, staring into the central fire. Sure enough, Mo Yunchen was outside, mesmerized by the flames. Yuri approached as the man chewed his food with visible discontent. Yuri asked if the feast was satisfactory. Mo shrugged, leaning back with a sigh, declaring he was finally somewhat full. Since the meal was over, Yuri moved to interrogate him, but Mo Yunchen cut him off with a sharp glare. I ask first, Mo demanded. How exactly did you track down that orc mage? Yuri stood frozen, completely caught off guard. Before Yuri could respond, Mo warned him to hide nothing. I know your target, so give me the truth immediately. His hand gripped his sword, hilt a silent threat of death. Yuri merely smirked, unfazed by the sudden shift in tension. Yuri noticed the man's accent had vanished. He wasn't entirely sure how he tracked the mage, only that his mana reacted. A mana technique, Mo mused. That means it is an internal art. He watched as magical rays began to swirl. As Yuri's aura intensified, he revealed the truth. This was a secret mana technique inherited from his legendary ancestor. Eric Briol Yuri stated. Mo was visibly shaken, turning away as he muttered about their fated meeting in the stars. Yuri pressed for an explanation. Mo described his own internal chi technique, rooted deeply in the legacy of his ancestors. Suddenly, Mo slammed his fist into his palm. He declared himself the final disciple and protector of the Chongsong school. Mo Yunchen paid a formal tribute to Yuri, honoring the ancient bond shared with their old benefactor from years ago. The Chongsong school still remembered the friendship of the legendary swordsman. Yuri stared in shock. Benefactor Mo. Mo waved off the surprise. That history was ancient. His ancestor Eric was known as the swordsman who conquered the heavens. He was a brother in arms to the Pure Star sect leader, dedicated to wiping the demonic cult from the face of the earth. A demonic cult, Yuri whispered. Mo's expression turned cold, his eyes burning with a righteous ancient fury. They sacrifice human lives for power, Mo explained. My sect exists only to purge such darkness and rid the world of evil. He had traveled across the world to strike down the ominous star rising in the west, dropping his accent for seriousness. Everything clicked for Yuri. This obsession with demon hunting explained Mo's ruthless orc slaughter in his previous life. But Mo's sect was gone. Yuri realized he couldn't let such a powerful ally wander off into danger alone. If that is your mission, Yuri declared, then you have every reason to join our cause and fight together. Mo Yunchen was stunned by the sudden proposal. What he stammered, his tough exterior momentarily cracking in surprise. Yuri offered him the prestigious title of Honorary Knight of Briol. Join the allied forces and finish your demon hunt. To sweeten the deal, Yuri promised endless food, luxury baths, and total respect. His knighthood would carry immense weight. Mo was clearly embarrassed, but his eyes sparkled with interest. Yuri then dropped the final hook, a trade caravan position. The prospect of wealth and status delighted him. Mo cleared his throat, trying to maintain his dignity while hiding his joy. Since you insist, Mo agreed, I shall accept. But I have one non-negotiable condition for our partnership. I like your spirit, Mo grinned. From this day forward, you shall address me as your mentor, Mo Yunchen. Yuri was speechless as Mo declared him the newest disciple of the Chongsong sect. His world was turning upside down. Disciple Yuri stammered in confusion. Mo simply smirked. That's right, and being a disciple is going to cost you. Normally, he'd never offer twice. Yuri declined. His loyalty belonged to one man, the legendary sword demon. Mo Yunshan barked a laugh, suggesting Yuri simply serve two masters at once. The man scoffed at Yuri's luck, demanding to meet the allied commander immediately. Yuri stared in disbelief, but Mo Yunshan shrugged. He'd promised to help reach the goal. The focus shifted to the orcs. Inside the command tent, grim news of human sacrifice emerged. Ragnar's face darkened. Sacrificing lives for magic. Mo Yunshan nodded. It was their dark fuel. These bloody rituals proved the orcs were drowning in forbidden arts. In the last clash, their power spiked unnaturally. Magic was the key. If they mastered it, disaster awaited. Ragnar sensed a trap. Mo Yunshan smirked, revealing his original twisted plan. He'd intended to infiltrate as a fake victim, but their interference had botched everything. Yuri addressed the general, presenting the stranger as a lethal weapon for the Alliance. Total orc annihilation was the mission. But suddenly, an icy chill gripped Yuri's soul. After a tense silence, the commander nodded. They would hunt the source of this magic. He placed the stranger in Yuri's hands. Yuri exhaled his gamble, finally paying off. He'd successfully recruited a powerhouse. Suddenly, Ragnar turned, eyes flashing with concern. Word had arrived of a crisis in the Briol army. Ragnar sighed, feeling the weight. The captured half-orcs were Graham's problem now, but their fate remained a bloody question mark. Ragnar's trust felt like a blessing and a curse. He'd just dumped the filthiest job on Yuri. "Will we let Briol outshine us?" a voice bellowed, sparking a fire among the knights. The camp erupted in debate. Why the shouting? One knight snapped at another. Use them as translators, or kill them for their crimes. The survivors' scars ran deep. The victims' screams echoed against cold military logic. Terror hung heavy in the air. Yuri stepped forward, his voice cutting through the noise with a single sharp question. "Can you trust these monsters in the heat of battle?" A knight sneered, claiming they were tamed. Yuri's eyes turned cold. "Really? Would you bet your life on their loyalty when steel clashes?" The knight choked on his words. Yuri pressed on. "The battlefield is built on absolute trust. Without it, you're just waiting to be stabbed in the back." Silence smothered the camp. Yuri's gaze locked onto a trembling girl. "Tell them," he whispered. "Tell them what you saw." She spoke of demons and despair. Her crippled sister, unable to run, was butchered for sport. The memory was a nightmare of blood. They didn't just kill her, they unraveled her. Like pulling wings off a fly, they laughed at her agony. She was just a toy. "They aren't human," she shrieked through a mask of tears. Yuri asked for her name. "Jane of Cedar," she sobbed, looking up. "Are you really the Prince of Briol?" "I am." Her plea was simple: vengeance. Yuri's answer was a vow: consider it done. He turned to Graham. No longer a soldier, but a prince demanding blood for his people. These monsters left wounds that would never heal. Mercy for such evil was an insult. "Exterminate them all," Yuri commanded. Graham bowed. The prince's word was now law. By royal decree, the half-orcs faced the blade. At dawn, a horn blasted. The orcs were here. Fear rippled through the ranks as the enemy's banners crested the horizon. What was their play? Ragnar frowned. Have they come to surrender or talk? "Your Majesty, they demand entry to deliver a message." Ragnar's jaw tightened. "Open the gates." An orc sauntered in a mocking smirk, plastered across its hideous face. Yuri and Ragnar burned holes through the beast. The orcs just chuckled, unfazed by the steel. Yuri leaned in. "What's the move, Highness?" Ragnar clutched his head in frustration. "Why do you think I'm the one in charge?" Yuri smiled. It was Ragnar's tactical genius. Ragnar shrugged, calling it common sense. Yuri questioned the political motives behind it, but Ragnar just shook his head, clueless. Whether the truth was known or not didn't matter. His relationship with the Emperor was already at a breaking point. As a prince, commanding the allied forces leading them seemed logical, but imperial politics were never that simple. Even when victory felt certain, the Emperor's shadow loomed over every move. His schemes were everywhere, lurking in the dark. Success meant legendary status across the continent. A path paved with golden glory and absolute support awaited him. Only if he won. Yuri remembered the past, how Ragnar took the fall for the failed invasion in another life. After that crushing defeat, Ragnar was forced to resign in total disgrace, stripped of his dignity. That was the Emperor's endgame, seizing total power. The entire allied force was a setup designed to fail from day one. He was tossed aside. "A trap?" Yuri asked. Ragnar silently slid a secret document toward him for inspection. Yuri's eyes widened in shock. The Emperor had signed a secret pact with the Oqua Pure Madness. The man was a lunatic. Was this war rigged from the very beginning? Yuri's mind raced with dark possibilities. What a low blow. Rage boiled inside him. Ragnar noted that others only saw the conflict as mere theater. The Oqua, using that letter, was a total ruse. The allied forces were never meant to survive this onslaught. So what now? Yuri stared at the evidence and whispered, "Your Majesty, may I suggest a counter-strategy?" "Speak," Ragnar smirked. Yuri snatched the paper, threw it down, and crushed it under his boot defiantly. Fake or not, this scheme didn't change one thing. They had to come back as conquerors no matter what. The grind just got a little tougher, that's all. Ragnar burst into a sudden boisterous laugh at the audacity. "Spot on," he roared. He stood up, leaning over the table with a sharp, determined gaze. Whatever the Emperor is plotting, the goal remains the same. Absolute victory is our only option now. We need to deal with the messengers. Your Highness, can I handle this? Yuri asked with chilling calm. Ragnar nodded, entrusting him with the task. Outside, the orcs were already causing a loud, guttural ruckus. Their roars filled the air as they spotted Yuri approaching, pointing their jagged fingers in open defiance. Shut it, Yuri snapped. His blade blurred through the air, sending monster heads flying in a single instant. One swing, multiple kills. The corpses hit the dirt simultaneously. The watching knights stood frozen in absolute shock. 3 orcs downed in a single flash. They never knew Prince Briol possessed such monstrous strength. Even Ragnar looked impressed. 18 years old and already this deadly, he'd clearly evolved into something far more dangerous than before. Is he being too ruthless? They say he swore an oath of vengeance after slaying those foul beasts. Staring through the gates, he vowed to make them bleed. As dusk fell, a heavy silence followed the carnage. Ragnar gazed into the horizon with absolute certainty. Bring Eisen to me, he commanded his subordinate sharply. Eisen stepped forward, bowing low. Brief me on everything concerning the dark arts, Ragnar demanded without hesitation. It is a forbidden taboo now, Eisen explained. Scarcely any masters remain, and it is quite simple to counter. Ragnar leaned in closer. What is the absolute pinnacle of this dark forbidden power? Ancient whispers speak of resurrecting the dead, though most experts dismiss it as mere superstition today. Ragnar mentioned reports of the Okwa performing dark rituals. The tension in the room spiked instantly. They use human sacrifices to buff their ranks. Having faced it once, they knew the orcs were evolving rapidly. The orcs are getting more dangerous. Eisen theorized they might have uncovered lost ancient spellbooks of shadow. Ragnar's brow furrowed. You mean grimoires of forgotten, forbidden magic? Many lands remain shrouded in mystery, like the ghost nation of Adalwine, where shadows truly dwell in silence. It is the cradle of dark arts, guarded still by the legendary Death Knight Gert even now. If Okwa is truly dabbling in this darkness, what is his ultimate goal? Ragnar pressed for answers. It is just a hunch, but he might be trying to summon something truly horrific, Eisen warned. Summoning, so he is sacrificing his own fodder just to buy time for the ritual. Precisely. With that book, he is likely scouring the Old Kingdom ruins for a specific hidden dungeon entrance. Ragnar sensed something sinister lurking below. At dawn, the sun rose on a new day of battle. As Yuri's army marched out, an officer approached. Your Highness, an urgent message just arrived for you. So the Bolshad supply line is dead, he pressed his voice tight. It was a cold reality they couldn't escape. Ambushed at every turn, he confirmed. The High Command had already dialed up the heat. Even with stocked rations, Yuri knew their primary mission was holding the line. They were deep in the lion's den now, and things were about to get messy. With Okwa nearby, an orc raid was imminent. If this turned into a grind, they were finished. They needed a decisive strike. Suddenly, the mounts began to lose their minds. The knights couldn't restrain the beasts. Everyone off your horses now, Yuri barked. As his boots hit the dirt, a knight gasped. Is this a quake? Yuri shook his head. No, it is worse. Beneath the surface, a surge of raw mana screamed. Something massive was clawing its way up. From the planet's dark core, the ground shattered, and a tangent-sized fortress erupted from the abyss. The gargantuan structure blocked their path. Mages and warriors stood frozen in sheer disbelief. Yuri turned to the king, his voice steady. Your Majesty, we have arrived. Ragnar stared at the ancient monolith. What is this tomb? He doubted the orcs were behind it. It looked like a relic of a forgotten age, yet its walls felt strangely impenetrable. Only one way to find out, Yuri noted. We are going in. It didn't just pop up for a photo op. There was something vital locked inside those walls. I will see for myself, Yuri smiled. Ragnar nodded. Take the Imperial Knights with you. A high-ranking Rodent Empire knight stepped forward, bowing low to the prince. An honor to serve, he said. But Yuri's subordinate leaned in, whispering suspiciously. Are we really doing this? He hissed. Yuri sighed. Orders are orders, no matter how sketchy. This sudden help felt off. He just hoped the Empire was not playing a double game. At the fortress gates, they halted. The massive entrance stood solid, refusing to budge. The search for a hidden lever began as the knights scoured the perimeter. Yuri brushed the cold stone. Clear out. If there is no key, I will just blast it open. He pressed his palm against the wall, white-hot mana swirling around his fingers. Suddenly, a chill ran down his spine. What did you do? The knights shouted in panic. I didn't do anything, Yuri yelled back. The massive doors were swinging open on their own. It felt like the ruins were inviting them in. Silent and wary, they stepped into the maw. The darkness was absolute. Jared, a light. Sorry, sir, I did not pack any torches. Yuri groaned. Did no one bring a light? Then he felt a strange resonance. The ruins were reacting to his specific mana flow. If the internal systems worked the same way, then his jaw dropped before he could finish. Have you visited this place before? A knight asked. Never, Yuri breathed. Suddenly, rows of spectral torches flickered to life, bathing the hall in blue fire. Stay sharp, Yuri commanded. We move as one. No distractions. They pushed forward, and the sound of a dry snap echoed through the hall. Yuri Boot had crushed a rib. The floor was carpeted in ancient skeletons and orc skulls. The atmosphere turned suffocating. One brave soul stepped ahead to scout the gloom. "Path is dead, Your Highness," he called, knocking on a sealed door beside a corpse. Human and orc bones lay mingled together. Someone had fought a desperate last stand here. "The door won't take my mana," a knight reported. It was a complete dead end. "Then we backtrack," Yuri decided. "We must have missed a switch somewhere." "Stay frosty, danger could be anywhere," Yuri started, but he was cut short by a sudden movement. A skeletal hand shot out, gripping his arm. The knight shrieked, "What the hell is that?" Chaos erupted as a blinding pillar of light engulfed Yuri and the undead remain. Shielding his eyes, a ghostly whisper echoed in his mind. "Remember, this is your salvation." The skeleton lunged forward, its hollow chant echoing as Yuri was pulled into a void. He gazed around the strange dimension, spotting a young boy shouting for his mentor's attention. The child claimed he was just reading, and Yuri froze as he noticed a chilling detail. The skeleton's armor. These were his memories etched into reality by high-tier ancient magic. What did this ghost want to show him? The master then called for the lesson to begin. "Are you prepared?" the man barked. The boy looked away, sparking his teacher's sudden fury. "Don't you dare change the subject," he snapped. The boy grumbled that reading was just boring. "Then how will you ever hunt?" Yuri felt a sharp pang of nostalgia at the words. It was just like his own master. Suddenly, the teacher revealed the legendary orc hunter mark. A crimson stone ignited in his palm, its blinding glow signaling the path to true power. The puzzle pieces finally clicked for Yuri. Then the boy asked a haunting, innocent question. "Why must we kill them? Can't we just talk?" The man paused before unveiling the truth. "Listen well," he whispered, "for you must understand the sin that birthed these monsters. Orcs were once human, corrupted by the filth of black magic." Yuri stood there absolutely floored. "What?" he gasped. "Long ago, a bloodthirsty noble spent his days slaughtering his own subjects. When the king banned the murders, a wicked sorcerer offered the noble a terrifying loophole. The law forbade killing people, but it said nothing about transforming them into beasts first. The nobleman grinned, obsessed with a hunt where he could kill without any fear or consequence. He forced his people to embrace the darkness, their humanity rotting under the sorcerer's twisted spells. They warped into grotesque, absurd creatures, monsters that no longer held a shred of human spirit. Driven by bloodlust, the first orcs were born. That is the tragic origin of our enemies." Yuri's mind raced in horror. Were orcs really human once? Every kill he'd ever made. Were they all just descendants of man? Was the sorcerer punished? The boy asked quietly. "He vanished," the teacher sighed. "They tried to reverse the curse, but the kingdom eventually fell." As the boy's heart broke, the master explained their mission to grant these cursed souls peace. Their duty as hunters was to end the suffering and send those trapped spirits to rest. Yuri finally connected the dots between black magic and the horrific sacrifices the stranger mentioned. Suddenly the vision began to fray, the figures dissolving into mist right before his eyes. Time leaped forward, and Yuri found himself standing within the grand halls of a majestic palace. "Are we in the ruins now?" he wondered, watching the pair navigate the crumbling fortress. The boy suddenly lunged, begging his teacher to stop, but the man pushed him away harshly. "You'll die alone," the boy screamed. "So be it," the master roared, eyes blazing with resolve. Reinforcements weren't coming, and the kingdom of Adelwine was already on the brink of total collapse. Adelwine. Yuri recognized the name of that fallen nation. There was no more time for hesitation. They were the bait. If they didn't distract the orcs now, everything would be lost forever. The teacher gripped the boy's shoulders, pleading with him to survive and carry their legacy. "I won't run," the student cried. "I'll seal our destiny right here within these ruins." He would leave his memories as a guide for the warriors who would follow them. "Stubborn kid," the master chuckled. Yuri realized the weight of the gift he had inherited. Secret techniques and the combat wisdom of the strongest hunters Adelwine had ever produced. Even if they fell today, their burning desire for justice would never be forgotten by history. Mana surged as they prepared for their final stand. "May our sacrifice not be in vain." The boy turned to Yuri, trembling. "Beware the devil's tome," he warned before the vision shattered. Shards of blue crystal exploded everywhere. Yuri's consciousness snapped back as the knights rushed forward. Gasping for air, he clutched his throbbing head, the boy's final warning echoing in his soul. Any sign of them, deep in the ruins, he noted. Suddenly, the skeleton pulsed with light before vanishing into thin air. Relief washed over them as they realized everyone was safe. Yuri smiled back, genuinely glad to see his comrades alive. These weren't just the hunter's memories. It felt like he was reclaiming a past life, unlocking secrets buried in his soul. Echoes of an ancient era lingered. Speaking of which, did he cause that? Just how much power did he unleash earlier? He chuckled, admitting it was no walk in the park. The knight pressed him. Did he see something? Yuri just shrugged noncommittally. He could have played it off as a hallucination. Then the earth shuddered again, and the knights froze in pure terror. "This isn't another tremor," Yuri warned, his voice sharp. "The orcs are here. This is a full-scale invasion. A soldier stumbled into the room, gasping for air. The orc onslaught had begun. Jared cursed. The timing couldn't be worse. How did they track them? Was this a setup? MC snapped at him to stay focused as he felt the atmosphere shift. He revealed this place was once an orc hunter stronghold. Naturally, their ancient enemies would want to erase it from existence. The ground rhythmically throbbed. They were riding Komodo dragons, a specialized scout unit closing in fast. 10 orcs give or take. Laurent urged an immediate retreat to the main army, but Yuri told them to follow his lead. It was time for a bloody reception. Rodan questioned the lack of a retreat, but the MC had zero intention of running. He leaned over the remains, placing his blade within the skeleton's bony grip. With a knowing smirk, he finally turned back. The secret to slaying orcs was finally clear. Meanwhile, the monsters moved through the brush, closing in on their prey. Suddenly, blinding flashes erupted from the foliage. The orcs screeched in confusion, completely blindsided by the sudden trap. Crimson energy surged across the clearing, tearing through their ranks. The monsters howled in agony as the power battered them. Yuri roared, "Strike now!" The knights burst from the shadows, tearing into the orc squad with lethal precision. As the last orc fell, the MC surveyed the carnage. His tactical gamble had paid off perfectly. He hadn't expected the hunter's mark left in these ruins to be this potent. The sheer power was absolutely insane. Sensing numbers through vibrations and using ancient traps. Was this why the memories were shown to him? He readied his blade just as an orc charged with a blood-curdling roar, interrupting his train of thought. Muscle memory from a forgotten age took over. He pinpointed the beast's weakness and struck without a second of hesitation. He sliced through the monster's arm with ease. Yuri didn't even need soul slash, the sword moved as if it were alive. After the kill, MC vowed to honor the Adelwine hunter's legacy. Later that night, the camp was finally quiet. Ragnar commended the protagonist's skill. Thanks to his quick thinking, the ruins were secured. He'd done an incredible job. So this was a hunter haven? Ragnar asked. Yuri nodded, having found the grim remains of their final stand. But one mystery remained. Did Ragnar know of the Devil's Tomb? The commander shook his head. He'd never heard of it. Did it link back to the ruins? MC suspected as much, though clues were scarce. The commander promised to dig deeper. Yuri thanked him, grateful for any lead that could shed light on the dark secret. Leaving the tent, he encountered an Imperial knight named Rodan. The man looked absolutely formidable. Rodan praised his combat style, but wondered why he was so stern earlier. Yuri seemed like a different person now. The knight blamed the Empire's suffocating military discipline. It was enough to turn any soldier into a statue. Most rookies would have crumbled on their first deployment, but Yuri fought like a veteran who had seen 1,000 wars. He teased Yuri about having a girl waiting at home. MC shot back, asking if this was an Imperial interrogation. Rodan looked confused, but the MC kept pushing. It felt like the knight was digging into his private life. "Are you checking my relationship status?" Yuri asked, annoyed. Rodan didn't deny it, which only made things more awkward. "Look, I'm not interested in the Imperial princess," Yuri stated bluntly. Rodan couldn't believe his ears. To the Empire, she was the ultimate prize, gorgeous, kind, and beloved by every citizen in the land. But Yuri saw through it. That kindness was just a tool Catherine used to manipulate those around her. Maintaining his Sybil persona, he claimed he already had a girlfriend back home. They were head over heels for each other. That was all the Empire needed to know. Surprisingly, Rodan seemed relieved. Rodan admitted he was planning to propose soon too. Yuri winced. Talking about marriage on the front lines is a massive death flag. Right on cue, an explosive barrel crashed down behind them. Yuri's prediction came true instantly. The enemy was attacking. The peace was shattered. The invasion was here. Yuri pointed toward the chaos as the real battle finally began. Hellfire consumed the camp as desperate screams pierced the air. The tents were nothing but blazing pyres. They had to secure the supplies at all costs. Amidst the chaos, Hernando's eyes widened in shock, realizing the threat was emerging from below. Suddenly, hundreds of orcs swarmed the camp like a tidal wave. They were completely surrounded. To make matters worse, Hernando's dispel magic was failing, completely neutralized. The enemy was dampening their mana. Yuri felt the surge in his palm, realizing their magic was being choked out. "Your Highness," Hernando cried out. But Yuri was already channeling every ounce of energy into his core, bracing for the clash. Hernando warned that the enemy mages were ready, but Yuri just smirked, vowing to crush them. He told the mage to hold his breath and wait for the perfect opening to unleash his dispel spell. "I'm betting on you," Yuri grinned before catapulting himself directly into the heart of the fray. Hernando reached out in panic, shouting, "Wait, how will you even find the mages in this mess?" Yuri didn't skip a beat. Lucas's training flashed through his mind. He knew exactly what to look for. Orc mages were blinded by their own dark arts. Their clumsy, irregular movements would give them away. It was all down to memory now. Suddenly, his eyes locked onto a target. "Gotcha," he hissed. Squaring his shoulders, he launched his blade like a guided missile, piercing the mage as the orcs wailed. He lunged at the dying monster, delivering a final bone-crushing blow before reclaiming his blood-stained steel. He slung the sword over his shoulder, satisfied with the kill, yet finding himself boxed in by monsters. The horde closed in, ready to tear him apart. They really think they've caught me, Hernando, he muttered. Instantly, he ignited the mana in his palm, unleashing a devastating torrent of flames that incinerated the front line. With a violent swing, Yuri redirected the inferno, carving a path of destruction through the enemy ranks. Scanning the charred remains, he mocked, "Well, do these monsters still feel like they're winning?" A massive blast rocked the ground behind him. Yuri turned with a wild grin. The slaughter wasn't over. He barked at Hernando to drop another fireball, but the mage was clearly running on fumes. "Forgive me, Highness," Hernando gasped. Yuri cursed under his breath, turning back to the approaching orc tide. "Go easy on me, will ya?" he joked, realizing he might have bitten off more than he could chew. Hunting a mage was never easy, but hey, he'd already faced death once. He gripped his sword tight. "Yuri Briole, if this is the end, make it legendary." He roared at the shadows, "Come and get it." Suddenly, Yunchong soared into the fray, praising Yuri's grit as he unleashed a shockwave of pure power. "Master Yuri," cried out. Yunchong looked back, telling him to fight like there was no tomorrow. "Leave the rest to fate," he said. "The man who embraces death is the only one who truly survives. Cling to life and you'll lose it instantly. Only those who master this fear can succeed, are worthy of being my disciple." Today witnessed the true power of the Chong Song blade. Mana flooded his steel as he invoked the lethal Azure Sky Sword Art Crescent Pulse. A blinding arc of energy tore through the horde, leaving Yuri speechless at the sheer scale of destruction. So this is the might of a top 10 ranker, Yuri realized. But Yunchong had only cleared half. "The rest are yours," he commanded. On it, Yuri roared, charging back in as his master watched. His style was unpolished and wild, yet strangely efficient, a true diamond in the rough who would draw allies. He was a leader in the making. Yet the stars were whispering of a growing darkness threatening the heavens. Amidst that void, a tiny flicker of light remained. Was this a blessing? He could only watch and wonder. Would this boy be swallowed by the coming eclipse, or would he evolve into a star outshining the dark? Only time would tell. Meanwhile, the knights threw themselves into the meat grinder of battle without hesitation. Suddenly, the earth erupted behind them as more orcs swarmed out. "Jared, Laurent, look out!" Yuri screamed. They had to shut them down. They dove into the frenzy blades, flashing as they carved through the enemies. Jared wiped sweat from his brow, cursing the endless maze of tunnels the monsters were using. Their speed was unnatural. Yuri nodded grimly. A horde this massive shouldn't be able to move like ghosts. Suddenly, the ground vibrated. Yuri knelt, pressing his palm to the dirt. "Are we really just fighting orcs?" "Your Highness Mage," Jared queried, eyes wide. Meanwhile, the prince sank into a deep focus, his mind racing. Where are those tunnels hiding? Suddenly, a jagged, toothy maw surfaced. "Gotcha," he roared, lunging toward the breach. "Are you certain they're heading that way?" Jared yelled. Laurent didn't hesitate, sprinting right behind his lord. "Never doubt the prince's intuition," Laurent barked. The main character nodded, sensing the rhythmic thrumming beneath his boots. The earth was trembling violently. Ahead, an orc shaman leveled a gnarled hand at them and the soil fractured. The ground erupted as orcs swarmed out like a tidal wave. The prince smirked. So, they've still got spirit. A tense standoff ensued, the orcs howling guttural war cries. Jared stepped closer to the prince's side. "It seems that beast has singled you out, sire," Jared whispered. The prince's gaze sharpened. "He certainly has. Pick your targets, one-on-one, and don't you dare fall," he commanded. "Understood," the squad bellowed back. Coating his blade in mana, the prince realized something darker lurked beneath. To end this, he had to dig deeper. "Move, you filthy greenskins," he snarled, unleashing a flurry of devastating strikes that carved through the front lines. Steel clashed against steel as the beast parried every swing. After a brutal trade of blows, the prince vaulted aside. "This thing's a master with that saber," he thought, impressed. Suddenly, frantic shouts erupted from his rear. "They need to yield." Wiping crimson from his cheek, he muttered, "I need to regroup with the others. Fast. Time to end this." He coiled his muscles and lunged his blade a blur, but he cursed inwardly. He's countering everything without even breaking a sweat. It's like he's already seen every move I'm going to make. Is he just buying time? While the orcs pushed forward, a memory of Master Bernard's wisdom suddenly flashed. "If you hesitate for even a heartbeat, your blade will waver, regardless of your strength," Bernard had warned. "A trembling hand can never land a fatal blow." "Then how do I overcome it?" the young prince had asked. Bernard didn't waste words. He simply swung his massive weapon, letting his actions be the ultimate lesson. "Decide now," Bernard stated, tossing him a sword. "Combat is a raging river, boy. Never let the current take you. Look beyond what's visible. Battle is full of hidden variables. Therefore, your highness, never forget why you wield that blade." Spoken like a true master. Finally, the prince's fog of doubt cleared. Returning to his senses, a golden aura flared around him. He launched himself off the dirt like a rocket. He soared above the battlefield, leaving the orcs staring in shock. Mid-air, he steadied his grip for a final strike. "You wanted to provoke me, didn't you? Well, you succeeded," he yelled, channeling his boiling rage. He plummeted down, smashing the earth into 1,000 pieces. From the crater, a monstrous, toothy worm erupted. The shockwave tore through the creature's hide. "Direct hits work best," he shouted amidst the mana explosion. Jared, mid-block against another beast, frantically turned his head. "Your Highness," he cried out, searching for the prince. The prince was slumped over his sword, gasping for air as he dropped to one knee in the dust. "I'm completely drained. Mana depletion is a nightmare. If I don't recover soon, we're finished. These damn tunnels make resting impossible." He looked up, spotting Laurent, still locked in a desperate struggle. "Stay sharp, Your Highness," Laurent roared. Suddenly the earth hissed as more toothy worms breached the surface. They were right behind him. "Crap," he hissed, but Jared swept in, grabbing the prince and vaulting to safety. Laurent charged the swarm, his blade a whirlwind of destruction that cleaved through several monsters in one go. The prince flashed Jared a grateful smirk. "Don't thank me yet," Jared huffed. "Just give me a heads up next time. Warn me before you pull another stunt like that." The prince struggled to his feet, jaw set. "Can you still move?" Jared asked. The prince shook his head. His spirit was willing, but his body failing. "This looks grim." "Will we make it?" Laurent stepped forward, hand over his heart in a solemn salute. "I'd gladly lay down my life for you, sire." But the prince scoffed. "Who said anything about dying? We fight." Though his legs trembled, his gaze was steel. "We hold this line until our very last breath. Scatter now," he commanded. "Understood." As they split up, the prince charged ahead to carve an escape route. "Don't push yourself too hard," a familiar voice rang out. Graham surged past him, leaving the prince in shock. "Mana exploded," as Graham explained. "Prince Ragnar sent us. Reinforcements have arrived." The tide had finally turned. "Back at camp?" Graham asked in disbelief. "They just retreated." Ragnar crossed his arms, nodding grimly. "They fled." Graham reported that by the time they arrived, Prince Yuri had already soloed a massive sandworm. The orcs likely realized they were cooked and retreated. Ragnar thoughtfully rubbed his chin. He muttered that it was a total waste. Had they captured them, they could have interrogated them. Turning to Sir Graham, he praised him. A minute late and the Allied corps would have been wiped out. Graham nodded in thanks and was dismissed. Ragnar then shifted his seat, preparing for what was next. He sighed that the guy always creates a scene. Sitting by the bed, he felt the alliance existed. Solely to hype Yuri up. Catherine's future groom indeed. Suddenly the protagonist bolted upright in bed. Letting out a sharp gasp, he clutched his throbbing head, wondering what kind of cursed dream that was. It felt like a grim prophecy had been foretold. Just then, Sybil entered, asking if he was finally awake. He noticed her as she pulled up a chair. "The others," he croaked, "are they still alive?" "Chill, we won," she assured him. Sitting down, she explained what happened during his 2-day blackout. The Allied army had been advancing for 2 days while everyone ensured he could recover in total peace. "How's the body?" As he started channeling mana into his palm, she noticed his recovery was working. His mana reserves were finally refilling. He owed her big time. It was not every single day that the Holy Kingdom's princess personally healed someone. He chuckled weakly. "All right, I'm grateful, Sybil. Where are we now?" She stood up, teasing him to see for himself. He was in for a shock. She offered her hand. Stepping out of the tent, the protagonist froze, staring at the massive fortress ahead. Sybil squeezed his hand. "Impressive, right? This is Okwa Fortress, the stage for our final showdown. We finally made it," he breathed. Sybil nodded softly, then turned to him. "Yuri, thank you." He looked startled, but she continued. "Without his strength, reaching this point would have been impossible. The death toll would have been astronomical without him. We're beyond lucky to have you, Yuri." She beamed at him, prompting his sudden question. "If you're that thankful, how about a small favor?" "A favor?" he smirked. "Sybil, if you don't mind, let's pretend that we're actually dating." Her eyes widened as she balled her fists. "Wait, what?" He just awkwardly scratched his neck. He figured the higher-ups would soon try to force him into some annoying political marriage. "It helps you too. Won't your brother try to marry you off the second you're back home?" "Fine, I'm in," she conceded. "Wait, really?" She pointed a sharp finger directly at his chest. "Under one condition." When he asked what, she nodded firmly. "This deal is strictly on my terms. I need a guarantee." "So, how do you feel about granting me one wish?"